A message came from Riemann, who called the goddess and asked if the young man could save Eden for her, and it sounded more than strange. The guy immediately nodded in consent, thinking that under the name Eden was meant some kind of virtual game. For him, this was not a problem. The next second, a strange girl from the screen reported that Kim Siva had just concluded a contract with her, and this contract has no reverse action. So far, the guy did not even understand anything, but he did not feel much concern. He knew how to, and loved to play computer games, so there were no problems. But the next moment, the interlocutor stopped writing from the other side, and Kim simply heard her voice from the screen of her computer. The voice repeated that Eden had to be saved. Then the young man saw a strange picture. It seemed to him that the system shows some kind of fight with strange creatures, and it was he who participated in this battle. Further, an even more terrifying picture appeared on the screen, where Kim stood opposite the devil himself and held his heart in his hand, which pulled out of Lucifer's chest. The dark power in the image of a terrible monster with red burning eyes looked directly into the soul and promised to take revenge, so Kim realized that the game began. Slowly, to his consciousness, it began to reach the fact that he was already in the game. Only one donut turned his life upside down, and the situation did not seem so simple. He gripped. That donut was a divorce, and now Kim is called up to Eden. He is forced to fight for his life, having only a mace in his hands. Riemann turned out to be a really powerful goddess. She promised to give him his strength, and all that the guy had to do was defeat enemies, and the system will help him become better. Kim asked the goddess why she chose him. It was necessary to take someone more suitable for such work, for example, some killer. But she only smiled mysteriously and told the guy that he was chosen by the higher forces, and he is the only one who could save Eden. The fact is that it is only a guide in this system and is responsible for the help of the hero who will be engaged in the salvation of the Paradise Garden. Riemann also hopes that Kim Siva understands what he has signed up and the fact that now the life of his loved ones, but also the life of the whole continent depends on his actions. Only now the guy fully realized that he was now in some kind of parallel reality, and this is no longer a regular computer game where you can make a superhero out of himself. Then Riemann explained to the guy that if he saves the Garden of Hands from all kinds of evil spirits, then she would definitely return him to the ground to his grandmother, brother and sister, otherwise he would not see them. There was no road back, so Kim simply asked the girl to take care of his relatives while he would be absent in the city and indeed on the planet. And he put forward one condition. Upon returning to Earth, Riemann will have to provide him with normal work with a decent salary. Otherwise, he will not do anything at all. Here was such a strange way, without expecting it, Kim concluded a contract with the goddess of the other world named Riemann. The goddess said that all the monsters in this strange parallel reality are his fierce enemies, so he had no choice but to destroy them one after another. Kim promised to help, so he had to restrain his word and fulfill tasks with all the dedication. He hoped that the goddess would hold back his word. In such a strange way, Kim Siva was enrolled in the otherworldly order, who served the goddess Riemann, and became pope in another world. But it turned out that these are not all surprises, because once the wonderful Eden was full of demons and enemies, and he had to kill each of the 7 kings of demons. He killed them all, only in order to save the Garden of Sciences, but it is worth noting that the guy had a whole 10 long years. It seemed that he did not see his relatives for an eternity. Kim no longer even imagined what his brother and sister looked like, and whether his beloved grandmother was still alive. Another question that tormented him is whether he can live an ordinary life when he returned from parallel reality back to his ordinary world. The goddess Riemann, as promised, restrained her word. At the end of the mission, she thanked the brave knight Siva for the service and sent back to the ground. In the next second, the guy remembered his native planet and her indescribable beauty, a riot of colors, where green grass grows, birds sing, and flowers bloom. Although in the world that he had to save, now everything was calm and beautiful. Residents of otherworldly civilization will now also live in normal conditions. Kim looked around, realized that he tried not in vain and fought all these 10 years. He saw the result, and honestly enjoyed him. The guy, in turn, thanked the goddess of the other world for giving him a chance to test his strength and become much stronger. Now he is more confident in himself. The image of Riemann began to dissolve gradually, and Kim again could not distinguish the features of her face. It seemed to him that she was just evaporating. He still could not believe that he would soon return to his home. Most of all, the guy wanted to hug his relatives and then tell in detail about all his adventures in Eden. All these 10 long years he missed his native land. He lacked the atmosphere that he was used to, loved ones, friends, and the noise of a big city. But unfortunately, the guy was waiting for a huge disappointment. Kim could not believe that he returned to his beloved and such peaceful city in Seoul. This place became a real zone of some cruel military operations, and in the sky, instead of beautiful and singing birds, some terrible dragons or pterodactyls flew. Kim could not believe his eyes. Entire detachments of the equipped special forces right in his eyes fought with these flying monsters, and it was not clear which of them wins. The soul became completely Tosno because the guy thought that he would return to his usual atmosphere, where comfort was waiting for him, and not special forces in uniform. Kim was madly bored around the native city, wanted to hear the noise of the streets and laughter of children, but instead he hears only the curse of professional military. He was not 10 years old, and what Kim sees upon return does not suit him at all. He wants to see his peaceful and happy soul. In the first minutes, Kim thought that this was a terrible nightmare and he dreamed of an apocalypse, or maybe he became a victim of some next scam. And now what should he do with all this? How to find his family? How to help the native city get rid of these mutants? Suddenly, behind his back, the guy heard a familiar voice. He heard him every day for the past 10 years. It was Ariman. Kim turned around and looked at the goddess. She looked strange in her white robe against the backdrop of brutal military operations. Well, what is she doing here on his native planet, directly in his beloved city? Why appeared here? Riemann seemed to read the guy's thoughts. She looked at him with a smile, which more expressed not joy, but a deep regret. The goddess concluded that the guy does not look happy at all. It seems to send him back to the ground was pointless. Kim recalled that his contract ended a few days ago, but the goddess recalled that it was thanks to her that he managed to return to the ground safe and preservation. But the guy became furious because if it were not for the Riemann who dragged him to Eden, he would not have to fight for his return. But the goddess only smiled sadly again and said that if Kim stayed in Seoul 10 years ago, he would certainly die during the disaster. These words began to annoy the guy. How this self-confident woman knows that he would happen to him. Perhaps he would have managed to survive. But she recalled with a malicious smile that she was still a powerful goddess, and she better know to happen to the guy if he stayed in the city. Suddenly, the voice of the system said that a foreign power was interfering with the Earth's administration, and it is very powerful, so it will have to be submitted and promoted. Riemann herself did not understand how this could happen. Most likely this is due to the fact that it was in this dimension that the main event takes place, and it seems that this is the limit of its influence. The guy looked at the goddess very carefully and tried to understand what was happening now, because he definitely felt that there was some kind of catch, not promising anything good. And Riemann did not force her to wait long for the denouement. She smiled sweetly again and asked if the guy wanted to make a deal with her again, because she needs him. Kim frowned, as she could again offer him to get involved in such a thing. She wants to use him again as her personal slave. But the goddess insisted, because he depends on him the fate of the whole city, his hometown. Besides, he will be able to use all those forces, which he used in the other world in the struggle for Eden. Not everyone can move between worlds, especially to transfer divine powers from the world to the world, but it gives him such an ability. Kim Sona stood like an idol. Not so he imagined a return to his native land, to his native people. But this goddess seems to want to drive him crazy and completely powder his brains. But at that moment, the rhetoric of the goddess changed dramatically. She said that she again wanted to ask the guy to conclude a contract with her, which was why Kim's eyes climbed on his forehead. The guy could not endure the first. The goddess's behavior was infuriated. She simply brazenly manipulated him with consciousness, so he asked to quickly give him this features a contract. Riemann said that she was opening the portal to the ground, and that she would help him in the struggle for peaceful land, and after 5 minutes the passage will be restored and the mission may begin. But unfortunately, the goddess has no support here, so she will not be able to be on Earth for a long time. So now she will give him the most valuable instructions so that the guy can start a struggle. Divine power is mainly created on faith in another creature, and if there is no strong faith, then Siva will not have strength to struggle for peace in soul. Therefore, in order to maintain his strength, Kim must make people believe in the existence of the goddess Riemann, and this guy can easily do, because in a parallel world, he was a pope. Further, the goddess Riemann said goodbye to the guy very quickly, finally asked him not to get bored, and like the last time, simply dissolved in the air, leaving Kim alone. Kim understood that in this world there are no sufficient number of people who believe in some otherworldly goddesses, so it would be very difficult for him, and for everything about everything the guy has 90 days. Consciousness gradually came in order, and finally Siva realized that he had a difficult task. In other words, he would have to become the leader of an incomprehensible cult. Well, now what should he do? Where to start freeing his hometown? He has strange and terrible dragons, flying lizards and some other incomprehensible creatures. But the guy reassured himself with the thought that nevertheless the goddess did not leave him himself with the problem and decided to leave him divine powers from the other world. This time the guy hoped that he would not need 10 years to save his hometown of all evil spirits. In the end, he already wanted an elementary calm. Then Kim decided just in case to check how his magical ability works on Earth. And it turned out that the goddess did not deceive him. He could really engage in battle with the monsters. This more than reassured him and gave strength. A wild desire to finish this mission appeared as soon as possible and return to the usual lifestyle. As it turned out, these terrible monsters, which now settled on Earth, were no different from their own in the other world. They were insanely strong and hardy in physical terms, but stupid enough to fight correctly, choose the tactics and strategy of the battle. After a couple of hours, the situation changed dramatically. The warriors of the special forces looked at the guy and could not believe their eyes. He chopped monsters into pieces in a matter of minutes. And Kim Siva did not even notice that they were watching his work intently. He simply did what he agreed with the goddess Riemann. He put things in order in the city. Having dealt with the next batch of monsters, Kim decided to rest a little and look. It was necessary to decide how to proceed and calculate his forces for further battles. Seeing the amazed views of the special forces on himself, the guy decided to use this moment and asked if they would talk about the goddess Riemann for a minute. The eyes of the soldiers seemed to become even more in surprise, because it seemed that the guy was definitely not in himself. He was talking about some kind of goddess. He was probably wounded, and he was raving. Kim dawned that everyone thinks that he was crazy, and not a single special forces in the 21st century would believe that the goddesses still exist, only in parallel reality. While the guy stood and examined the special forces, a new batch of dragons flew up, and it was necessary to use magical power again, so that these creatures were scattered in different directions. He understood that it would be much easier to cope with dragons and flying lizards than to convince people that he signed a contract with the goddess from Edom. After 5 minutes, the last dragon was destroyed and with a roar fell to the ground, taking the horror of everyone who looked at this terrible sight. The whole detachment of warriors watched this battle, afraid even to blink, and the detachment captain decided to get to know this guy at all costs. The partner said that the detector did not find the presence of magical energy. The image of this returning private could be so strong. The captain also could not explain this fact, because he could not return, capable of lowering the dragon like this, to have a number of ordinary. This fact alone is already more than completely enough to award the rank of returning disaster. In accordance with the instructions on emergency situations in the country directly in the city of Seoul, the captain requested an immediate convocation of the entire secret bureau. The man said that he discovered the presence of an incredibly strong returned, not reflected on the sensors of magic, should be outside the standards. The captain really wanted to talk to him, but without a detachment of reinforcements he did not dare to do this, since he was afraid of the consequences. He stood calmly and watched the soldiers and their captain, but he was more interested in where the rest of the people from the city had gone. After a few more minutes, the captain of the detachment nevertheless found the strength in himself and went to the unknown guy. It was necessary to find out who he was and where he came from. Kim examined the man from head to toe and decided that such a person was worthy to be a captain. There was no fear in his eyes, and he felt quite confident. After a few minutes of the conversation, the men realized that they could find a common language and decided to get to know each other better. The captain, finding out a little about a strange guy, realized that he was uncomfortable here, despite all his strength, and offered to help get a job in the city. Such words made the guy think about it, because he spent his whole life in this place. This is his hometown. He does not need to be offered to get here. He decided that he had to take care of himself. Therefore, saying goodbye to the military, he went to his area. It was necessary to find out the situation. Before entering his apartment, he stood for a long time, not daring to open the door, because he knew exactly that there was emptiness and no one was waiting for him. Therefore, the next morning he called the station and made an appointment with the captain. It was necessary to find out what happened to his family. The man said that, according to the latest information, the brother and sister of Kim is in full safety and currently live in the Gyeonggi district. Grandmother Siva is now traveling around America, and if the guy has any questions, then the Department of Management of Abilities will help the guy to figure out everything. Kim Siva breathed a sigh of relief, because if you think about it, then 10 years have passed. His brother should now be in the region of 27. But the captain dumbfounded the guy. Only 5 years have passed on Earth, so now Kimu was only 32 years old. He is in full height. He thought, because he did not know how much the Earth had changed over these 5 years, but it seemed that people relate well to those who returned from the other world. His family, by which he was so missing in Eden, is safe, and now he really wants to see his brother and sister again after a long separation. He reached the area where his relatives were now and again stood at the door, afraid to click on the call and not to hear anyone outside the door. But what if his brother and sister do not know him at all? How he can prove that he is their brother, and that all this was in parallel reality for a long time? Behind the door, cautious steps were heard, and a quiet voice asked who came, and Kim only smiled and loudly called his name, in the hope that he was still remembered. But the voice behind the door said that they were not waiting for anyone, and not happy preachers at all, because they are not religious people. But Kim Siva was persistent. He was not going to leave just like that, so he shouted so that this little splinter would quickly open the door for him. And the door really swung open, and on the threshold appeared an evil and nervous guy, Inva, the younger brother of Kim. In total, he laughed because there was an iron bit to get out in his hand, which he was going to scare the preacher. The reunification of the family was not the warmest, but after 10 minutes, Inva stood at the stove and prepared a delicious and delightfully smelling ramp for his brother. And after half an hour, pleased and finally well-fed Kimsiva already ate the third portion of ramen and asked his brother to do more. It seemed to the guy that he would never be able to eat and satisfy his hunger on Korean food, because this was the first ramen over the past 10 years. Inva was easy to prepare more and more portions for his brother. After what Kim said, he even wanted to help the savior. Indeed, in fact, the Invo all these 5 years believed that his brother has long been dead, and today a miracle happened. Kim returned home. But now he looks completely different. His clothes looked like a preacher's robe, but his faces spoke about something completely different. The two of them needed to tell each other so much, and the brothers understood that one evening, of course, it would not be enough for a full conversation. Invo was terribly surprised by the story that his brother spent 10 years in the other world and saved Eden from imminent destruction. In this case, Kim can be proudly called the hero who saved the garden from the death and safely returned to the ground in order to deal with enemies here. Probably his brother had to not be easy to fulfill the mission to save the whole paradise garden. This is still the task, but Kim coped. But what exactly did his brother do in the other world, with whom he fought, and how he could return back, the elder did not tell. And Inva madly wanted to hear this particular part of the story, so Siva gave up and decided that the younger brother should know everything. But the next moment, the guy thought that it would be better if Inv does not hear the whole story, so his brother would feel calm and safe. Do not tell how much he shed blood in order to save Eden, and the world saturated with demons is very terrible, and no one needs to see it. He sighed and thought to himself that he had spent so much time, effort, and energy to put things in order on an alien planet and returning home. He went through so many tests that a simple, ordinary person was unlikely to endure, and now he can lose his abilities, if not completed the task. Inva realized that the conversation was finished on this, and the brother would not tell where he was and what he was doing, so he just went to his room and decided to work a little. When asked by Kim who he works, the guy replied that he was doing installation in Mitube. He began with his disappearance and thus earns money for life. Kim did not stop admiring his brother because he did not give up, but he himself began to support his grandmother and sister. Besides, things are going well with him. Inva showed one of the video, the installation of which he did. It was about the so-called players who are dealing with the gates, dungeons, and monsters climbing out of them. Kim lingered for a minute and attentively examined the players who use system windows and skills. This concept was well known to him. The number of subscribers from Inv continued to increase, as well as the number of work offered to him, so the guy was sitting at the computer for hours. Perhaps becoming Mituber, Kim will be able to fulfill the order of Riemann and dial subscribers who in the future could become followers of her faith. It was necessary to open new opportunities for the religious order. And here, as for something by something, this window jumped on the screen and issued a list of all available options. Inva laughed merrily and asked his brother if he also wanted to open his own channel, but warned that it would hardly work. If Kim decided to make any content on the players, then first you need to get permission from the government, and this is by no means everyone. Plus, the guy has not been on Earth for a very long time, and he does not understand the novelties, but Inva is happy to help his brother because he knows this system well. Kim stopped his brother's cheerful laughter, said that he was very grateful for the offer, but Invu should not be lifted up so high his nose because he does not understand anything. Indeed, Inva had no idea how Kim Siva found his relative so quickly. In a situation that developed in the city, it was extremely difficult to find someone. The captain, with whom the guy managed to make friends well, was worried about the young man and constantly asked what he plans to do next. Kim did not quite understand this interest in his person, but still replied that he was planning to expand his order in the near future. The major was only surprised whether he asked if Kim's beliefs were going against public norms, but he assured that Riemann was a merciful goddess. Then the man noticed that now Kim is a very important person for the Department of Management of Abilities, so he must constantly keep in touch with their superiors. At this moment, Kim Siva was the first anomaly of Korea, so the second team of the department will constantly follow him in order to observe and help in case of need. Brother Inva's brother was surprised most of all. His eyes climbed on his forehead, because this is Kim, his brother, and not some kind of anomaly. The guy began to reach the guy that his life would not be the same as it was before disappeared, because now too much extraneous attention is riveted to him. It seemed that Inva could not place such news in his head, too much information for a young man. Kim Siva stood and smiled, probably looked stupid at the same time, but could not tell his brother that he would lose his strength if he did not gain 10,000 followers. Finally, Inva realized that in Eden his brother was a dad, and now on Earth he needs to gain a lot of followers, and for this, he wants to start a channel on Mitube. The guy warned that in this image it would be very difficult to do. Moreover, on Earth, no one has the concept of who the goddess Riemann is. But Kim asked his brother to carefully listen to him, that if he had a unique ability to awaken ordinary people and turn them into faith. Inva warned that absolutely everyone who has the power of the country will be tracking for the ability to create players in Kim-sevu. In addition, such abilities simply do not exist, and if they exist, they are able to bring a fortune, because everyone is ready to believe in anyone for the possibility of awakening. Further, Inva heard what was surprised at the same time as I was interested in. It turns out that he could become a player, and if he simply believes. Kim corrected the guy a little while. He cannot do this, but when he gains enough followers, everything is possible. Inva proposed to make an advertising move and announced that every purposeful person could awaken when they find their audience. Inva shouted that he was burning with the desire to spread this good news among the population, for he believed in the omnipotent goddess Riemann. So far, who has planned something like an online service that would work through MTube, but it was necessary to think over everything to the details, and his brother would help him in this. Inva was not mind. On the contrary, he really wanted to help his brother realize his plan, so he promised to help with ideas. But Inva immediately warned that it would be difficult. Besides, it was necessary to take into account the fact that they still have a younger sister. The guys were so inspired and spoke that they did not even hear the girl entered the room, and for several minutes listened carefully to them. Suddenly, Kim heard a quiet coughing. He turned around and finally saw that his younger sister Zion was in the doorway. The girl could not understand for a long time whether she was in a dream or this is still a reality, and her brother Kim is sitting in the kitchen. The young man immediately rushed to the girl. He did not think that his sister grew up. She was very sweet and calm, which could not be said about the girls of her age. The guy madly wanted to press her to him and burst into tears, because when he went to Eden, his sister was only 3 years old. The girl said that all this time she thought that her older brother had died. Now it is simply difficult for her to believe that her beloved Kim was returning. Also, the baby, through tears, said that in spite of everything she dreamed about this moment every night, and now he finally happened. 2 brothers and sister were sitting in the kitchen until night and could not talk in any way. In 5 years a whole bunch of interesting news gathered, and only in the windows of their apartment the light burned. The next morning, as in the good old days, they threw it off on his fingers who would prepare breakfast for the whole family. Of course Kim lost. Sienna had breakfast, once again hugged her brother to make sure that he was real, and quickly ran away to school, waved his guys with his hand. Kim also waved his sister in response. He knew that she would look back several times and watch if he had left. The guy exhaled. He thought that at last in their small family everything would fall into place. Zion would stop crying, Inva would take work, and he would complete the mission. In total, he went to the main directorate to tell what he talked to his brother, but in order to be awakened to maintain activity on the MTube channel, a certain degree of recognition is needed. It turned out that the guy's department was so interested in that the most important boss promised to support the guys with everything necessary, which would only be needed. The captain, along with the boss, even began to quickly apologize and ask for forgiveness for finding a guy so late. The guy understood that the minister of the Department of Management of Sasha's abilities was a big bump, and this person appointed him a personal meeting. Sasha asked if the missionary activity was the reason for the activity of Kim of this, and he nodded in the affirmative in response. It turned out that in the disclosure of the status that returned to MyTube, there is nothing like that, but the ministry asked to reveal the status of the anomaly of Kim at a special press conference. The guy asked the employees of the ministry if those videos from MTube saw, because as far as he understood, they tried to block him so that it would not leak into the network. Kim thought that Inva had long looked at him, because such a specialist as his brother receives all the information first. The minister said that since South Korea still did not have his abnormal return, the department does not have a large number of specialists. Kim Siva did not see a particular problem in this. Coming home, he finally decided to contact his beloved granny. Grandmother was madly glad to hear the voice of her beloved grandson. She promised to quickly finish with business and return to Korea. For a minute, it seemed to the guy that his grandmother probably knew that Kim would return back to the ground, and Inva said that she saw him in dreams. According to the Inv, the woman saw him walking along an endless horizon and sometimes fighting with winged monsters. That is why an elderly woman always believed that her grandson was alive, simply performed some important task in parallel reality. What could not be said about the Invu himself, who still could not believe in the return of his brother, and even abnormal, it was above his strength. He and his brother and sister have always had good friendly relations, especially during the school years, and if not for the grandmother, their upbringing would be much worse. Inva probably waited for him for a long time, hoping that Kim was alive, but in the end he had to give up and engage in work. The youngest said that they even arranged the funeral of Kim, and in honor of him, they planted a tree that Cien adorned with different toys. But Kim wanted to hear about this now. He was most interested in what a cunning plan this time came up with his smart brother Inva. The brother showed one of the players on the screen. This player talked about the dungeons, where the orcs are most often, as well as about their weaknesses. The guys evaluated the player. He was quite attractive, and also had a good character, and did not do any conflicting actions. Inva said that the easiest way to gain fame for those who just started to lead the channel is to enlist the support of large corporations. Now there is just something that the guy is working on, and what Kim can take part in. This is the so-called Newcomer Academy. The Ministry of Council made a video with the training of newcomers and earned a lot of views on this. Sometimes a simple thing happened if the newcomer was wounded during the hunt. And then Inva mentioned Kim, who was immediately invited to an interview, because new faces always attracted a lot of attention. This is the whole plan of Inva. In such a mild way, a guy can attract a sufficient number of followers, because it is actually a superpower anomaly. They will participate under a simple scenario, where the protagonist very skillfully hides his strength. This plan is absolutely simple, but at the same time brilliant. Inva had not yet told the details of the plan to his friend, but thought that he would agree, although for a start he needed to conduct an interview, and then everything would be decided by itself. Kim could not believe in his luck, really. With his simple actions, he aroused the shark of capitalism and forced her to play in a new way. The next day the guys went to the set, which turned out to be far enough from their house. I had to go for more than an hour. The location was located near the well-known mountain by magicians, but having reached their destination, the guys did not find any traces of the presence of the film crew. In general, the atmosphere there was quite strange and a little frightening. There was a forest around, and the guys already doubted the reliability of the address. Even mobile phones stopped catching in touch, and this made the guys get nervous. None of them thought that there were places where the internet did not catch in Korea. Kim felt that something was wrong in this situation. He could not explain, but decided that he had to get out of this place as soon as possible. He suggested that the INV return back and for some time to suspend the guy's plan with a concealment of strength, because this could end poorly. But the brother began to object, explained that Minsk was now on the set, and therefore did not answer. It is just that you need to walk around the territory and find a group. But Kim flatly refused, because thanks to endless battles in Eden, his instinct was extremely intensified, and he sensed something was amiss. Already in the next minutes, the guy felt the presence of demonic energy, such exclusively monsters and demons owned. Who again asked his brother whether he was sure to Minsk, as in a person. Maybe some bad rumors go about him, and he is unreliable in such a matter. But Inva only laughed in response, saying that he was sure of his friend, and that Minsk is simply the famous Matuber. Kim carefully looked at his brother, and asked if he understood that if the power was the usual returning, then they would have died here. But the stubborn brother continued to repeat only one thing, that his friend is a very good and honest person, and cannot be otherwise. Kima began to enrage this situation, like his stupid brother can be so gullible. If this goes on, they will simply die, and it will be the fault of the INV. The guy suddenly remembered how he himself turned out to be a victim of scammers, and the main fraudster was the well-known goddess Riemann. Inva suddenly said that 3 years ago, when his grandmother got to the hospital, he paid all their bills. Brother and sister did not have absolutely no money for treatment. The guy's opinion about the mines has changed sharply, because it is not easy to suspect someone who is ready to help his neighbor and really helped Minsk. But now with whom he asked his brother to return back home, which brought them here, because this place is really very dangerous. Kim will remain here, and since the plan of INV did not work, then the bypass will have to solve this problem as soon as possible. He struggled to gather his thoughts and decide how he needed to act further without getting into the situation of his younger brother. Kim firmly decided for himself that if his online propaganda would not give results, he will change tactics and will work offline. But the guy did not really want to devote his younger brother to all the nuances of work. Therefore, in orderly, he sent Inva home to dinner. He was still too weak for such things. When a taxi with Inva left, Kim thought about the fact that his brother was completely different before, and this is all his fault. He goes to the subsequent struggle himself and will not get his relatives into these problems. The system said that he is included in the zone of the abyss, and a special task was created for this. He goes to the dungeon of the abyss, and at first glance it is a completely ordinary mountain. But given the amount of demonic energy around, the worst should be located inside it. Kim had completely absent fear, because after Eden the guy was no longer afraid of anything, only the absolute silence around was alarming. The absence of any sound surprised the guy, but perhaps now just an evening, so the birds and animals went to bed. But having gone a few tens of meters, Kim heard a rustle in the bushes, and approaching closer, he saw a whole group of young people. They were all with cameras. When asked by Kim what they are doing here, they replied that they were simply engaged in filming for their channel MTube. One of the guys asked a counter question why Kim Siva is here, because given the presence of a dungeon, it is quite dangerous here. Kim said that his younger brother Invu had to warn Minsk about the meeting, which is why he was here. And since the phone does not work due to the lack of communication, it is simply not possible to get through to Minsk, so he decides what to do next. Having understood the situation, the young people decided to send Kim directly to Minsk because he planned a huge event for his channel. The kid suddenly examined Kim from head to toe and asked in surprise why the priest's costume. Perhaps this is his scenario image. but Kim shook his head. The guy was immediately upset. He believed that Kim looks great in the image of a priest. This suit is crazy for him. There would be a great idea. The situation began to anger the guy, because this young interlocutor dangled his young interlocutor, and this was pretty strained. The three other members of the group simply stood aside and watched the situation. Kim asked why the other members of the group were silent, but the guy replied that he did not understand the question asked because all these people are constantly chatting among themselves. The situation began to go into a deaf corner. In order to give her a little to discharge, Kim asked the guy what his name was. He replied that his name, Semyon. Finally, Kim reached that this guy was very lucky because some people have increased resistance to demonic energy, even without being awakened. But the poor Semyon did not even suspect that he had such an ability, so now the guy listened and did not really understand what Kim explains to him. Then he warned the young man with him that if he was able to survive today, he must definitely thank his parents for this. Immediately after this conversation, everything around the guys changed radically. A terrible wind began to blow, and it seemed that lightning was hit with terrible force around them. Kim knew that he would begin now, unlike the young Semyon, whose eyes, with fear, immediately climbed onto his forehead, and he began to tremble with his whole body. Suddenly, the rest of the three members of the team took their heads off their shoulders somewhere. Black holes remained instead of them, from which terrible black smoke began to stand out. Semyon immediately froze for a few minutes from deep shock, then jerked to run away, but Kim stopped him in time, otherwise it would be worse. The guy began to scream with the horror. What the hell was going on here and why he sees it? But Kim jerked his hand and ordered him to calm down with his gaze. The remaining monsters should be a little further, so this place was more or less safe. Semyon should stay here so as not to harm himself. Finally, he was speechless to the guy. He came to his senses a little and asked Kim who he was and what was happening here. Siva was even at a loss for a minute. Now he needs to correctly and intelligibly convey information about his goddess, because not only his fate depends on this. He once again looked at the guy, tried to smile, and calmly said that he was here in order to spread the word of his goddess. The system gave a hint that Kim has just entered the right dungeon. It is a secret laboratory of the necromancer, and is now in the process of absorption of the abyss. Further, the name of the dungeon was changed to the Bridgehead of Pride, but the situation from this was unlikely to change. Everything further remained in the most unpleasant colors and the terrible demonic atmosphere. If Kima does not manage to defeat the main boss of the dungeon, then the whole land within a radius of 5 kilometers will be distorted to the abyss. For this, he has only 2 hours and 7 minutes. The guy immediately felt something was wrong, because the demonic energy in the dungeon became more and more, and he also began to feel the magical energy of the players. It seems that those who tried to resist demonic energy remained here. Looking a little, Kim Siva finally saw 2 men who were sitting near the wall. They were scared and terribly exhausted. But what surprised the guy was the lack of faces of these men. They had no eyes, no mouths, no nose, and it seemed a strange and very terrible phenomenon. But a minute later, the guy realized that this clarifies the main essence of those creatures that he killed on the way to the dungeon. These were facial expressions, strange and mysterious monsters who stunned their victim, and then took her appearance and completely depicted her behavior. Kim Siva knew very well that facial expressions could only stun their victims because they were not able to turn into dead people. Since facial expressions were low-level monsters, and they do not have vocal cords, so they cannot speak, as a result, they are not able to survive on their own. It became clear that the boss of these monsters is a doppelganger, who was also called a proud shooter. This monster was vile and very cunning. The system again gave a hint that the keyword of the doppelganger was recently used, and the essence of the boss of the Dungeon of the Abyss was disclosed, but Kim expected it. It is very difficult to fight monsters like facial expressions that can interact with other monsters, even if you have the right knowledge, because they can easily turn into your allies. Therefore, now it was not so important whether a person is opposite you survivors, or is it a doppelganger. It was simply impossible to distinguish who is standing in front of you. Therefore, the first thing that occurred to Kim was just to run to hell, so he will win at least a little time and change the location to a more profitable one. Having run a little more, Kim finally saw the light and then the monsters, who gathered in a whole crowd on the site near the entrance to the tunnel. But then the guy was a little taken aback. Other people's voices were heard, so fights and several cameras turned on, and someone shouted loudly behind his back that the video was shot. When Kim looked around, he saw a director who was terribly angry at the guy and shouted that Siva could not just jump out onto the set. At first, Kim Siva did not quite understand what was happening in the end, because everything went well. Did he really get to the team of survivors? But it was strange that there were so many survivors here. This could not be. And the director, in turn, shouted that the guy ruined the double and would have to start all over again. Further, the director began to ask Kim who even let him here, because they booked this dungeon for filming, and someone is simply forbidden to break here. He explained all that he was lowered into the dungeon because it was here to Minsk who appointed him a meeting, and since he heard screams, he began to act without hesitation. The meeting with the Ministry of Council was supposed to go face to face, but now Kim understood that it would not be so easy to arrange it, because there is a lot of people here. There was simply nowhere to retire. The director nodded and apologized. Finally dawned on him that this guy was returning, and that is why he was so strangely dressed. The guy called to him a young girl and asked her to take Kim to Minsk, who was somewhere nearby. The girl nodded, smiled at Kim, and asked the guy to follow her. He, in turn, realized that he was attracting too many extraneous eyes. This is probably because of the costume. Some actresses whispered to each other that this time no one was subject to demonic corruption, but still the local atmosphere is not trustworthy. Kim Siva pretended that he was not interested in anything, and he was just following the girl who should take him towards Minsk, but in fact the guy captured every sound. With lateral vision, he saw a teenager who was also without a face. This teenager said that he also really wanted to go home because he was tired of filming. This was the group illusion of a doppelganger, and its secret meaning was very difficult to solve, or rather almost impossible. It was like a strange theater, rather, where a skilled actor, a doppelganger, plays the role of a protagonist and also closely monitors other videos. Kim Siva understood that even those present, who were not spoiled, were still under his deep influence, and this problem had to be solved somehow. Since Doping Hunter uses a group illusion for his dark games, it means that in recent years he has accumulated enough strength in order to act now. Most likely, this is why huge demonic energy seeps a little outside. When it will be enough, trouble will come to the ground. Kim thought that he should not be very worried about being in the dungeon, because this is exactly the mysterious place is now under their control. His thoughts were confirmed by the girl, a guide, who said that a few hours ago they grabbed the dungeon's boss, and now it was the crew that has completely owed the situation here. At first the guy thought that the girl was carrying some kind of nonsense. Well, Yes smiled and said that only in this way they could get permission to make shooting in this dungeon. Further, the girl explained that if you kill the boss, the dungeon would collapse, but it was too dangerous to leave it alive, so they wounded him and tied it. It was a turn. Kim did not even expect this from the film crew. They beat the dungeon's boss to half to death, but decided to leave him alive. So, this is how they carry out their shootings. This time was not lucky with the fact that the boss is the doppelganger himself, and this very complicates the situation. Young people approached the massive iron door. The girl said that this is a room with the boss of the dungeon, and Minzu should also be inside. Outside the door, Kim expected to see something terrible and incomprehensible, but opening the door, the guy saw the scene near which a group of young people stood. They actively discussed something among themselves. Kim realized that they decided how it was better to mount the video that they had just shot. One of the group turned around, hearing other people's steps at the entrance. Then he examined the arrogant Kim Siva from his head to go with a gaze and appreciative. Further, the guy asked Kim who he was and why appeared here, to which Kim replied that he was his brother Inva, and he was here at the invitation of Minsk. The guy finally smiled and held out his hand to Kim for greeting. It turned out that this was Gyu Minsu himself, the most popular MTuber soul. For you, Kim noted that this guy radiates positive energy and literally shines with kindness, and he is also a real handsome man with a pleasant voice. Further, Minzu asked his team to work for a while without him, because he needs to talk with his brother Inva and discuss very important things. Finally, the guys were left alone and could drink a cup of soluble coffee and chat a little without unnecessary witnesses. Minz asked if Kim had problems on the way here. Kim replied that everything was normal. He simply did not expect that there were so many people here. But Minsku explained that all these people were players. These are awakened, but they are too weak to be real hunters in this game, because not all players are the same, in the end, but everyone has a decent salary. Kim remembered that his brother also hinted that he wanted to become a professional player, and probably the size of the fee played an important role here. Minsk asked Kim why he did not bring Inva with him, because he had the last information. The younger brother Siva also had to come to the meeting today. But he just smiled and said that he did not feel bad for you, to which Minso replied that this was not news for him, because this happens to Inva quite often. Minsk said that he considers the Inva a real professional as well as a very good and reliable person, and this is not a flattery, but pure truth. The most effective way to start a conversation with a stranger is to find common topics, and, as it turned out, it was an Inva that the guys talked about almost half an hour about. He also noticed to the Ministry of Council that Inva is often sick due to the fact that he works a lot, but this is not surprising, because he had to support his sister and grandmother. Minsk once again carefully looked at Kim, and also noticed that the guy had a very attractive appearance, but it was clear that he was very worried about something. And in the end, Kim voiced his concern. He was worried whether this place is safe for such a filming, because monsters are obviously found here. Minsk nodded. He understood the concern of the guy who was in the dungeon for the first time, so he invited Kim to personally see what was behind the scenes. Without hesitation for a long time, Kim pushed back the heavy screen and looked inside. The owner of the dungeon himself was in the metal cage. He was chained with heavy chains, so he was not dangerous. The Ministry of Council said that in the future several dangerous scenes are planned, but they carefully check the safety before each shooting with the team. Several people really want to leave the project, but this is not at all because of the danger, but because they just got sick even before the filming, and they just got worse in the dungeon. MITuber invited Kim a little more to look around and decide whether to join their project or not. He perfectly understood that the guy recently returned and still feel discomfort. Kim seemed to be waiting for such a proposal. He really wanted to look around in the dungeon more, look at each corner, and only then make a decision regarding his participation in the filming. After some time, Seva went around the whole dungeon and returned to the Ministry of Council to make a deal and later work together on the project. The guys shook hands in conclusion of the contract, and Minsk expressed extreme joy about the fact that such a person as Kim would now work with him in the team. But only the palms of the guys touched. Something unimaginable began. Both of them seemed to hit lightning, and the bright blue light scattered from it in all directions of the dungeon. Information about the passive skill of Holy Fire was synchronized, and the Minus seemed to begin to shine with some kind of black and incomprehensible energy, but he could not remove his hand. Kim said that if the Minds does not stop deceiving him, then their cooperation will not be so pleasant, because there should be some kind of unexpected turn in the plot. Seva was not even going to let MITuber's hand, and she gradually turned into coal and blackened before her eyes. Gradually, the eyes of the mouth and nose began to disappear from the face. All parts of his body began to merge with some kind of demonic energy, and something incredible was happening around the guys. Kim smiled angrily, realizing that he easily managed to eliminate the demon, then thought that his acting abilities were not so bad, but it was still worth training. When he realized that the boss was a doppelganger, he was immediately delighted, because this battle would be a light walk for his and the team. But to the minute he had no idea how much he was mistaken about the doppelganger, because he turned out to be a real monster, and the guy was not ready for this. Only now did Minzu realize what a fatal mistake he made, and now in danger is not only he, but the whole team of the guy. After a few minutes of struggle, the monster easily defeated MITuber and immediately took his appearance. So the result of the struggle was originally a foregone conclusion. After another half an hour, the monster already called the entire crew in the Minsk body to show the guys what a monster he managed to catch. And no matter how much the imaginary doppelganger shouted and explains that he is not a monster at all, and the monster is actually the one who is in the body of Minsu, but he was not heard. And while the guys from the film crew, Enjoy, entangled the monster with chains so that he could not run away, the real doppelganger enjoyed the picture. No one even noticed that in front of the monster, which could not move due to chains, real tears performed. It is interesting how he felt when the people with whom he completely trusted looked at him as a real monster. The group did not understand anything. Everyone looked with a puzzled gaze, either at the Minds, then at the doppelganger. Something was alarming in this situation. Something was wrong. The connected monster continued to cry, no longer restraining tears and screams. The doppelganger shouted to Mincy, "Spare the guys from the team." Then the monster generally fell to his knees and burst into tears aloud. He prayed that MITuber would not touch anyone from the film crew, but took him. But here, by a successful coincidence, Kim's son appeared in the dungeon, and the situation again turned 360 degrees. Kim heard the quiet moan of the monster, and then he managed to understand what the doppelganger says, because he asked for help, and the guy immediately understood everything. And now Minsk himself was already lying on the floor and praying for mercy. He was shrouded in a strange blue color, from which he blew with magic. Sona came closer to the monster. There was not a drop of fear in his eyes, only pure self, confidence, and absolute determination. Minsk still did not understand that this guy hears him and was fully aware of the situation. Besides, he was trying to help him and return to his body. The monster tried to lean closer to Kim, but he was interfered with chains. Did this guy hear him and understands that he is not a doppelganger? MITuber nearly burst into tears, but with joy, because the curtains of the closest guys from his filming team could not see a person in him. Further, Kim decided not to delay this stupid situation and explained that he was an Inva brother and they have a meeting here. The imaginary monster said that Inva is a very good guy. He works a lot to provide his younger sister, and as for his brother, everyone knows that he has long disappeared. It is interesting how everyone knows that he disappeared 5 years ago, and it is also interesting that everyone he met here is praised by the Inva, and this is damn nice. Therefore, Kim came closer to the monster and said that he would give him a choice, because the minds in the dungeon suffered the most as the leader of the team. The doppelganger rose from his knees and listened carefully to the guy, and then decided that he would destroy him anyway, but it was better to lose his life at the hands of a person and not from the demon. Therefore, the minds asked Kim to deprive him of his life in some quick and most painless way, which Kim only laughed. Well, the imagination of this famous MITuber, why he decided that he needed to say goodbye to this world, would be better to listen to the end. And Kim actually offers MITuber to break the head of this monster. Well, another option, it's just to burn it with a holy flame. The second option is much larger. When Minsk agreed to the second option, Kim winked at him cheerfully, because there is nothing better than burning nasty demons. And then something incredible began. The blue fire was growing around a fake MTuber at an incredible speed and simply burned it from head to toe, illuminating everything around with a strange light. At the same time, all the chains that were entangled in the minus seemed to dissolve in the air. They simply disappeared, allowing MTuber to move freely. There was a voice from the system that Minso received salvation through the holy flame, and the goddess of another world responds to his tears. She asked the young man not to blame himself for anything, because his guilt is absolutely no. The highest forces of the universe monitor the whole process. For a second, Minsk thought that he did not believe in religion or in any miracles. Well, what to call his salvation, if not a real miracle? Kim fulfilled the task of atonement and received 100 divine glasses, and yet, as if everything had passed if he came to the dungeon a little earlier. After a few minutes, the blue light scattered. Ming was lying on the floor in a half-fainting state, but he did not receive serious injuries and had to wake up soon. Then the guy turned to the goddess Riemann, who reappeared in his life. She fell like snow on his head, and he did not expect to meet her in Seoul. The goddess recalled that she told Kim that they would soon see herself, but did not expect at all that the meeting would take place after 3 days. Riemann really was very glad to see his ward, whom she considered a real friend, and Kim was experiencing how long the goddess could be on Earth. The girl said that she would stay here no more than 5 minutes, since the dungeon is in a spatial hole that makes it possible to travel between worlds. But you can use it only once. Then the goddess began to ask the guy why he was so thoughtful. He behaves quite strangely, as if they were not happy with their meeting. Kim looked at Minsk, who still could not recover. He lost consciousness, as he was exposed to the divinity of the goddess. The girl just smiled and explained that Minsk really liked it. She considers him a kind person, and therefore decided to help with the elimination of the monster. A person who reproaches himself for the fact that his team has suffered, in principle, to be bad, in addition to the Ministry of Economic Council, will be those who will help Kima are founded again in Seoul. Riemann perfectly saw how hard he was working on a set of followers for her in this unfamiliar world, and therefore helps people who will later help the guy. The goddess also asked how relatives reacted to his return home, because so much time has passed, and Kima now, it is probably difficult to get used to the new circumstances of life. And because of the limited time, she could not tell the guy something important, so now she asked Kim to recall the time when they entered into a contract on Earth. The causality, which leads all the measurements in the universe, turns out to be applicable to the gods. Precisely because of this, she, who came from another world, cannot at all affect things from this. Kima very surprised this news. He even got up and began to actively gesticulate, because the guy did not expect such a turn of events. Well, how can he now use his magical forces on Earth? Besides, Riemann somehow was able to heal Minkum with his strength. The goddess explained that this is why Kimu needs to be careful. The land allowed their contract, and therefore, there should be something heavy that will balance the scales. Of course, this must be put on the second bowl of weights, but of course the goddess cannot answer the question of what should lie there. Only one thing was clear to him, that there was something completely unknown to him. He should replace Riemann on Earth, and he would have to find out about this soon. The guy had not a minute of peace since he returned to Seoul. Now he should figure out the appearance of a monster on Earth, because this fact looked strange enough. For a second, the goddess felt her guilt in this situation. She had little time, and finally the girl decided to ask Kim Siva forgiveness. Well, he politely said that he had no right to be offended by the goddess. He understands that the girl wanted to do, how better. The guy once again reminded the goddess that what happened to his land was not her fault. He would not be angry with Riemann, because he does not consider himself so evil and vile. The goddess smiled sweetly and said goodbye once again, and Kim caught himself thinking that over these 10 years he became very attached to Riemann and would be madly bored with her. It occurred to him to take a picture with Riemann. Maybe people who will see the photo will immediately become followers of the goddess, only because of her beauty. The girl once again thanked Siva for the compliments and asked not to forget to make the most important thing. The guy asked what he should also do, and in response heard that he would have to build the Riemann temple in order to make it easier for her to be embodied on the ground and collect more followers. After some time, Minsu gradually began to recover, and in the end, finally woke up, after which Kim asked the guy how he felt. He further continued to sit on the floor and perplex the room. Ming tried to stumble upon the goddess, who helped him stay alive. To his great disappointment, there was no girl anywhere, and Kim, with sadness in his voice, said that Riemann went back to his dimension a few minutes ago. Already soon the guys calmly returned home from the dungeon. On their account were already 4 followers of the goddess Riemann, but it was just a drop in the sea. The situation with the doppelganger, which happened a few hours ago in the mountains between magicians, fortunately for everyone, ended without deaths, but there were 12 wounded people in the Minsk team. No one had physical damage, but due to brainwashing by facial expressions and a doppelganger, all the victims had a very strong migraine. Kim thought that a great relief was that Minsk himself was not seriously injured. He is now in the hospital, but the guy should be written out in a few days. For a moment, it became interesting for him to happen if the doppelganger still succeeded in his plans and destroyed the Minsk and his entire film crew. If Kim came to the dungeon a few hours later, then there would already be no one to save, and now no one would suffer from strong migraine. Inva, who was sitting nearby, asked if Kim saw the demonic gates in the dungeon. He nodded and said something had the opportunity to call for demons. There is a reason because of which doppelgangers are called proud shooters, and this is not a joke or fiction at all. When Kim was in Eden, he saw how the doppelganger sacrificed a whole village, and after that he called on huge demonic gates, through which pride legions burst into Eden. The doppelganger, who recently appeared in Korea, most likely planned to sacrifice the entire film crew of Minsk, which was in the dungeon. That is how he wanted to call on a high-ranking demon. They were very lucky that Kim and the goddess were able to stop the monster in time before it would achieve the desired misfortune, but only one did not give Kim rest. Why demonic gates appeared right in front of him, it is just a coincidence, or it is due to the mentioned causality. If this is a case of an incident, then it needs to collect the required number of believers as soon as possible, and the Invam plan is spoiled by an incident with an additional minister. But Inva was sure that in the dungeon Kima managed to somehow wash the brains of the minds and attract Mituber millionaire to his side. It was already beginning to seem to the younger brother that his elder is some kind of inhabited leader of the forbidden cult, and now Kim is trying to attract as many people as possible to his organization. Kim could not even think that for such a short moment his newly made friend Taming would be imbued with deep faith to the omnipotent goddess Riemann. Then he looked at the Inva, who was sitting in complete bewilderment, and thought that Riemann, of course, was the goddess of mercy. But he himself had some problems with this. And by the way, he understood that expression on his face to Minsk when he first woke up, because everyone who first saw Riemann, whether such a shock was experiencing, he himself was like that. The goddess is so beautiful that anyone can lose consciousness from only her species, and she also radiates holy power, which shows better than any words that she is a real goddess. Inva expressed the idea that it would be nice if the goddess Riemann starred on their channel in YouTube. Then the number of their subscribers would have increased several times. And the younger brother was not at all worried that 5 years ago it was this goddess who abducted Kim and sent somewhere in parallel reality to protect Eden. He simply admired this woman. Inva decided to open his laptop and watch the news, and there were a lot of them. For example, the Minus was uploaded to a new video to his channel, and there was already unremarking views. The video was Minska himself. He was broadcasting from the hospital ward and talked about what happened to him a few hours ago, and this story attracted the attention of thousands of Koreans. In the introductory part, the guy thanked the man who personally saved him and his entire filming group from the terrible demon of the dungeon. If not for Kim Siva, then they would have been in the next world. Without hesitation, the brothers decided that they should urgently go to the hospital and visit the Minsk, and they had many those that had to be discussed. Half an hour later, Kim and Inva paced the long corridors of the hospital in search of the desired chamber, and only they found the right door and opened it, immediately saw the smiling minds. The guy was sitting on a hospital bed and smiling in his mouth, but Kim had such an impression. He saw only his brother. He did not pay attention to Kim at all. He has not yet recovered, but still shows anxiety for the invoice. What a pleasant person. And he also looks stylish even in a hospital shirt. Well, then the impossible happened. The Ministry of Council turned to Kim and thanked him personally for his help, calling the guy Your Holiness. The last eye climbed onto his forehead. He did not understand where such an appeal came from, and when Ming managed to learn such a stupid term, well, the victim sincerely said that he spied it on Wikipedia, but if Kim doesn't fit so, then he would like to call him just Dad. Siva decided that it was useless to fight the guy and simply nodded his head. Then he asked Minsk why he suddenly decided to download this video to YouTube. The guy said that in this way, he decided to tell people about his acquaintance with the goddess Riemann. Besides, this video had already gained more than 2 million views. Here with whom he did not argue, because in this short video, people learned about both himself and the goddess Riemann. A great unplanned advertising turned out. Of course, Kim wanted something more dramatic and more pathos words about the order of the goddess, but even so, it turned out well, and Kim asked to read comments. The comments were disappointed, because for some reason they thought that the video is staged from beginning to end, and how now to convince them in the opposite and prove that this is not installation. Mituber himself was also a little disappointed. He swore to Kim that he did everything sincerely and from pure heart thanked his saviors, but comments speak the opposite. The guy really wanted to send sincere words of gratitude, and he also did not like to see in MyTube how really strange cults behave. Now the Ministry of Council said in full seriously that he was ready to give his whole fortune for the sake of the goddess Riemann and the dissemination of information about her order. Kim looked at the strange MANHUA for a long time and could not understand whether he was always like that or this situation with the goddess made him an absolute fool with a good heart. Kim decided to check the system where there was a message that Kim Mintz unlocks the special profession of an inquisitor. But according to the guy, in modern Korea, this profession is somewhat outdated. And the problem was that Kim was so poor that he could not purchase this profession for Minsk. There were too few points earned on his account, and the inquisitor cost as many as 500 divine points. Minsk decided to reassure him and asked not to worry so much because he had a great experience of MANHUA, and he knew that such a reaction of Riemann was quite possible. Those who see Kim's affairs will stop doubting him. I'm just sure of this, as a young guy named Semyon is sure. But Siva decided not to listen to the guy more. Apparently he was still in a state of affect and could not think completely sensibly. He still needs time to relax. In parallel reality, a meeting of priests was held at this time. As always, the whole process was accompanied by a strange blue radiance. The chief priest went to the guy and said that he dedicated him to the warriors this minute, and that now this guy would use his heart and soul to participate in a great plan. An unfamiliar young man bowed his head low, and then shouted that for the highest will he was ready to give his heart and soul, and would not even regret life. He will fight to the last drop of blood and protect the adherents of his faith from the invasion of evil demons and monsters. In Seoul, evening came quietly. Kim and his younger sister returned home from the amusement park, where they spent almost the whole day. Sienna said that she liked to ride a boat most of all. This reminded her of the time when they all lived together. Suddenly, in Kim's pocket, he vibrated the phone. He did not expect any calls, as it was Sunday, but he still picked up the phone. A familiar voice was heard on the phone, which belonged to the head of the department for Donchik's abilities. He had urgent news for the guy, and he was heading straight to Kim's house. Kim led his sister home and headed to the department, where the Donchik was already waiting for him and immediately invited him to his office. The man thanked the guy for his work in the Abyss dungeon and said that there were so many events in the department that they were all in a state of readiness. But then the man decided to go directly to the matter. He showed the guy a video that had already become a viral in MidTube. A rite of initiation took place on him. The video already familiar to Kima took place. The young guy was dedicated to the Knights of the Order, where he would have to serve in the name of the great faith of the mysterious clan. This clan will fight real monsters, ghosts, and monsters. The video already visible a huge monster with burning eyes that steps on the order. Kim Siva carefully reviewed the video several times, and the head of the department at that time carefully watched the guy's reaction and then asked what Kim was thinking about this. For several minutes, the guy voiced his opinion. He was 100% sure that it was some kind of prohibited sect or a cult, and the boss was completely agreeing with him. But the guy did not understand what the point of showing it to him. The boss really wants Kim to stop his work on the creation of one of these crazy cults. But the man shook his head. Religion does not prohibit their country in their country, but in the case of the Order of the White Longja, the situation is several. The Order of the White Lights is called the organization that Kim Siva saw a few minutes ago on the video. It is they who are behind all the incidents that the department had to deal with. Further, the boss showed the guy an electronic card, where the appearance of a sudden magic gate was indicated in red points, and it was simply impossible to determine their type and complexity. Sudden gates, like sudden dungeons, are an infrequent phenomenon in South Korea. They are generally quite rare, but over the past 2 days, a similar situation has already happened 4 times. In most cases, regional guilds came to the rescue and reserve troops, however, the Order of the White Shongs took care of them before the department managed to do anything. According to the boss, this happened with all the gates, with the exception of those that Kim Siva figured out, personally being in the epicenter of events. The Order is a new religious sect, and it appeared 6 months ago. Its members say that they can cope with the dungeons before the police, the military, and the abilities management department. They also argue that their deity gave them the opportunity to foresee the future, and they also increased in force that the department can no longer ignore them. And this video on the tablet is only the first step to disclose themselves to the people. Kim decided to directly ask the man if the head of the department wants to personally figure out the Order of the White Light, but he negatively turned his head. In fact, the department wants the force to officially cooperate. The order has an impact on politics and economics, so the department will be difficult to investigate this cult. Kim will have to be introduced into groups of the order and act from the inside. It is extremely important for the department to receive third-party assistance from someone like Siva. Considering that MidTube actively uses, it seems that they intend to invade the territory of Seoul. But this time the government is on the side of Kim, and he will make this sect regret that they were released. Kim smiled slightly and said that he was ready to actively cooperate with the department, and since the order and sudden dungeons can be somehow connected, he will conduct his personal investigation. The boss also smiled and exhaled with relief. Let Korea do not know the whole strength of the guy and the power, but his residence appeared in South Korea for a happy future. For a second, Kim thought that maybe he was in vain in this whole story. He only returned to his relatives and again begins to fight with some dubious forces. In the evening, Kim spent most of his time with his brother and sister. This was very missing all the years. But before going to bed, the guy decided to look on the internet, in particular to the Minso channel. On the channel, thousands of people commented on the situation in the last video, and Minus promised to invite a mysterious player to shoot and prove to everyone that he owns magical abilities. The system sent a message that thanks to the actions of Minsk, many people expressed their interest in Kim Siva, so he receives an additional 10 divine glasses. His plan was very simple. To the Ministry of Society attracts attention to the mysterious player, and Kim asks the department to arrange an anomalies with incredible abilities in order to put the Riemann order for public display. Thromi noticed how his brother entered his room. Inva said that the plan was unlikely to work because he was not fully thought out and not structured. But their conversation was interrupted by a sudden message. It turned out that a sudden gate appeared in one of the districts, and the department announced an extraordinary incident. It turned out that the sudden gates opened precisely in the area where the hospital was located, and Mituber was still in a hospital bed, and this was very suspicious. The next message read about another sudden gates, which were already located near Kim Siva's house, and this did not seem at all a banal accident. After 5 minutes, Inva and Cien were completely readiness and were going to go to the shelter, and Kim continued to stay in place and decided how to act further. From his thoughts, he was pulled out by Inva, who said that his brother should immediately gather and oppose the magic gate, his obligation to protect his hometown. A few minutes later, the apartments knocked on the door, and soldiers of the department appeared on the threshold. They said that they would take his native Kim to a safe place, and he should personally come to the department. The head of the department is very waiting for the guy to agree with him all further actions, so the soldier said that an office car was already waiting for Kim's house. The guy quickly gathered and went down to the car. The core of the sudden gate has not yet been discovered, so the department limited access to the highest rank hunters. Everyone was afraid that the sudden gates would not appear right in the middle of the city. The guy got to the department in a matter of minutes. A real chaos was happening around the building, but the soldiers led Kim to the head of the department in a short way. The players were already divided into rescue teams and were preparing to enter the dungeons. People crowded around, who tried to get into the shelter faster in the walls of the department. Suddenly, the system reported terrible news. Ominous energy was discovered near the gate, and every minute it becomes more and more. Kim went to the courtyard of the department, where several groups of players had already gathered. He came closer and decided to find out more about the situation. It seemed that the players were not particularly worried and were tuned to victory. Most of them were young and strong guys who knew how to fight well. In total, I realized that these units were sent by the guild, and in the courtyard everything is not like the outside. But if he get out of here, as he would hear the screams and crying of people again. Donchik said that they always divide the territory into separate zones, and only then they begin a combat exit, especially for urgent situations. For ordinary people, the gates of chaos are real disaster, but for professional players, this is a good way to earn money with caviar. So now representatives of guilds must divide the gates into responsibility zones. What carefully followed what was happening, and thought to himself that during his absence in South Korea, the world became much more interesting, and he to study again some things. Therefore, now he reminded the commander that they were discussing yesterday regarding Kim's actions and support the actions of Kim if he would help the department deal with the order. The man nodded in agreement, and then Kim said that he wants to deal with these damned gates single-handedly and let the rest focus on the search and salvation of the survivors. He does not need assistance. Everything he needs, he can get it himself. He himself can also take care of his safety. Without losing a minute to wait for an answer from the head of the department, Kim turned around and resolutely headed for the exit from the organization. He had to begin to act. At the courtyard began. The turmoil began. No one understood that with this guy, because a strange energy began to come from him, which acted on everything around. The warriors began to be indignant, but on the other hand, they even became curious who this young guy is in a strange suit and how he was going to save the city. People at the gate paid attention to the sky. There was something similar to the northern lights, and then a strange cloud of energy fell to the roof of the department. Kim understood what was actually happening. This active lighting skill returned the original appearance to the earth. From the outside, it looked strange enough, and many were frightened. Being active, the lighting affects the nearest earth. The earth level of demon forces and undead is much lower, and the weak undead is immediately destroyed. The system told the guy that the leadership carefully observes him, so you need to clearly think out each of the actions. Kim immediately fell to his knee and turned to his patroness, the goddess Riemann. He asked her to bring down the divine punishment for those who were trying to break the peace of this land. The situation in the city was heated with every minute. There were more and more monsters, and they tried to break into the city center. There were a lot of them in the central hospital where Minzu was still located. The guy with the team desperately tried to keep the defense. Minsk asked his partner why he still did not find out where the lord of the dungeon was located. He said that the group had gone to track him down, but still had not returned. Mituber was not ready to just wait in the hospital. He must find the boss on his own. The situation is already difficult. If the power of the gate is still increasing, then they will lose the battle. There was no end to the influx of monsters, and the guys fought as best they could. They no longer counted on help from the guild. Hope remained only on the department for management of abilities. The Minsk was encouraging himself. He believed that the department would not leave them to the mercy of fate, and someone would certainly come to their aid. Suddenly, the door opened and someone from the team ran up to them. The stranger shouted that he had to quickly climb the roof. Only this is how they could be saved. But as it turned out, after 5 minutes, it was just a trap. Opening the door to the roof, Minso saw many ferocious monsters there. It seemed that these monsters were specially waiting for the guys here and now. They would simply tear them apart and throw them down under the central door of the department. A mysterious horror was approaching. The system reported the appearance of a Lich Lasius, a follower of pride, which meant that the core of the Gate of Chaos was discovered. Minsk, even in the worst dreams, could not see such terrifying monsters. The guy was simply not ready for such a turn of events. The monsters came closer. The most dangerous undead of the existing ones was a lich. Its very existence was already called a source of horror. Even being a hunter of the highest rank, Minsk could not do anything with him. The partner from the team even burst into tears. He had already managed to say goodbye to Minsk and his beautiful Korea, because it was not possible to defeat the lich with his bare hands. But to Minzu himself hoped for a miracle, and then he remembered the goddess Riemann and began to actively pray to her and ask for any help in the fight against the lich. And the goddess merged over Mituber, because she sent him to the assistance of Kim Sevu himself. He appeared on the roof from nowhere. The guy was dressed in the same strange costume. He was absolutely calm and asked the guys to leave everything to him and not to interfere in the battle. It seemed that Ming and his partners were speechless for a moment. They looked at Kim and could not believe their happiness. Kim, in turn, smiled at the guys and asked to come to their senses faster and find a safe place if possible. Only due to the fact that Minsky prayed to the goddess, Kim was able to accumulate this energy and in a matter of minutes get to the roof of the department. The system wrote that the measurement of the earth proceeds to the exam for the consistency of causality. The gates of chaos now violate the laws of causality. It seemed that this evil spirit simply would not be the end, but the system gave completely different results and worked for Kim. The monster hissed that Kim has a rather annoying force. It does not know who it comes from, but it will definitely not be enough to win the demons. This country will become a victim of great pride. Absolute darkness will soon come here, and no one can dispel and destroy demonic forces. But fortunately, Kim, the information about the sacred pact about non-aggression was synchronized between the earth and the Edom, and now this category has been activated. As a result, the system destroys all demonic energy in a certain radius, and this energy was now in the hands of Kim. The monster could not understand where the guy takes such a force that allowed him to destroy the whole army of demons with such ease. Nobody in the universe has yet humiliated the Great Lich in this way, and this guy, without making special efforts, was able to deal with demons in 3 scores. Lich warned that he was not going to leave any person in this city alive, and Kim could not resist him. He could not do it. In total, he understood that the Lich would use the advanced dark spell, which stains everything around with a curse, and creates a place exclusively for the dead, and this curse is located right in the center of Seoul. Lich laughed that the helpless goddess Riemann could not save either Kim or his stupid people from imminent death. This city would soon become the city of the dead. The words of this demon already decently began to annoy the guy, who he was to tell him about Seoul, his dear and beloved city. But if you are inactive, then at such a pace, this place will become a hell on the ground and will endlessly produce different undead. But for such a situation, Kim also had a skill, the one that he never wanted to use because he was too noticeable and cringe off. At one of the moments, Kim has already become doubt about whether he had enough strength to combat this evil spirits, because there was too much of it. He had already dealt with almost an entire army, but it is not clear from where the dead demons came from where more and more, so he had to act quickly and clearly. The guy decided to apply all his skills that he learned during his stay in Eden, and this slightly leveled the situation on the battlefield. For a second, Kim did not forget about his patroness, the goddess Riemann, and firmly believed that she would not leave him in trouble and at the right time would come to the rescue. If you recall his past life over the past 5 years, then he has been in situations and worse, but never gave up and did not lose his composure. So now he should go to the end, because the life of the whole city depends on his actions. He was entrusted with the salvation of Seoul himself. Suddenly the guy heard strange sounds with his back and turned to see what was happening there, but when he turned his head, he was just dumbfounded. Behind him were representatives of the Order of the White Long, strange people without a face and in long white hoodies with deep hoods. And then the guy got in earnest and promised this evil spirits and then activated the function of the wings of purification. And after a second later, snow, white huge wings appeared in the sky above the city, which radiated pure bright light. It was a real miracle. The children stopped crying and screeched with joy, and the adults sighed with relief. The most terrible danger has passed, and there was a chance of salvation. Minsk and his partner appeared around the corner. The guy was extremely excited about what he saw and could not fully believe his eyes, because Kim worked real miracles. The system notified that the number of followers of the goddess Riemann increased hundreds of times and has already reached several thousand. Everyone who watched the situation from the courtyard of the department could not believe what was happening in the sky. A huge white bird, similar to an angel, flew right above their heads. A lot of people also gathered inside the department, and the administration said that in a few minutes, a press conference will begin in which the main persons will participate. Donchik climbed the stage and introduced himself to the present. As the head of the Department for Management of Abilities, he began his detailed report. The man told reporters that the danger to the city passed, and all thanks to the awakened Kim Siva, who arrived in time at the scene and destroyed the Lich, which was the core of the Gates of Chaos. Then Donchik decided to introduce the hero himself, and called him on the stage. He decided that people should know in the face of his savior, and Kimu could have something to tell the public. The guy climbed the stage, and the battlefield began to shine before the flashes of cameras. Some reporters were directed directly from the meeting room. Journalists broadcast that Kim Siva was the secret player whom the last days are actively discussing on the internet, and now he proved to everyone that he is really capable of. Donchik, looking at what was happening, reflected that the chief director should be informed of Kim, because the guy is an anomaly, and it is simply impossible to measure his abilities. Kim will become their most important weapon in the struggle against monstrous otherworldly enemies, and Korea must officially declare the presence of a returning irregular. At this time, Kim Siva began to communicate with reporters. He introduced himself not as returning from parallel reality, but as the leader of the great order of the powerful goddess Riemann. From what they heard, the journalists damaged their mouths and listened carefully to the story of Eden, about how Kim was a dad there, and how, after the salvation of the paradise, he returned to the ground. Further, dozens of questions rained down, which the guy simply did not have time to answer. Journalists were interested in whether the guy would continue to manage the order here on Earth. The eldest journalist was interested in the question of whether the Korean government would support the order of the goddess Riemann in the country, because different cults are not welcome here. The guy once again began to explain that, like the majority of the population of Korea, he does not support dubious cults, but the order of Riemann is completely different. He already spoke, and once again repeats that he does not call for anyone to support the order. People themselves will see everything according to his actions, and then make a decision whether to believe him or not. But he promises if the dark forces once again find himself in his native country, then without any doubt, he will save the inhabitants from any monsters. A young director of the Russian stood aside. Because of his inexperience, he was embarrassed to ask his question, but Kim noticed him and decided to listen. It turned out that this guy was so delighted with the order of the goddess Riemann that in the near future he wants to join him, but does not know how to do it. When Kim explained the procedure for joining the Riemann order, the guy shone directly with happiness. He thanked Siva several times and called him a real fan. Further, Kim said that the order plans to actively expand, and to attract the audience they will launch a channel on YouTube. However, they have not yet come up with a name for the channel, the boy thought. And Siva realized that he was actively thinking about the name of the channel for the goddess Riemann. He was clearly deeply interested in this project. The next day was sunny. The sun was shining outside the window and birds sang loudly. But for some reason, Kima Siva did not want to get out of bed from the word at all. The guy decided that until no one from the Department of Development of Abilities touches him, that is, a great chance to just sit at home and enjoy the home atmosphere at least one day. He checked the social networks and read the news about yesterday's event, and was surprised that the opinions of people were divided. Some supported him, while others believed that he was an ordinary dummery face. The idea that over the past day, more than 10,000 followers have entered the order did not give him rest for a minute, but he is not perceived as a leader of the Holy Order. Inva said that the image of Kim simply does not have people, because his clothes are not like the decoration of a religious leader who should lead the masses. And the truth, except for the wings that he used yesterday and spread behind him, then otherwise he really does not look so saints. The brother again gave his next unnecessary advice. He suggested again to wave their wings in front of the public, and it would be in the hat. Several thousand people will become his adherents. But the catch was in one small problem. The fact is that Kim Siva could not use the wings for no reason, because before using his skills, it was necessary to agree on causality. Last time, he worked a lot to withstand the exam for the coordination of causality, and now he is under the constant control of the higher forces. The causality is very similar to the scales of justice, and if Kim Siva overdo it with the use of miracles that no one needs, then he will undergo a rigid test. If the guy does not pass the exam, he will be seriously punished by the system. As a result, he will not be able to use his skills as he wants, so the wings should be held until better times. Inva was generally surprised at the calmness of his brother. How can you be so calm if a bunch of negative comments appeared on the web about the fact that the Order of Riemann is a cult? But who was sure that through his actions, trust in him would increase every day, and over time, the image of the Order of Riemann will be perceived as one of the main guilds in the country, and prejudice against the new religion will gradually disappear. Let the order are still weak, but these are just the first steps. Everything happens much better than Kim Siva planned. It is most optimistic as possible after returning from the other world. The system again gave a sign about the presence of new messages, and Kim found out that the store was updated, and new items were added there. The profession of a missionary appeared in the store, which Kim has been waiting for so long, because the missionary is much more important than the inquisitor that appeared during the last update of the store. But there was one condition. For its acquisition, you need to have the skill of understanding the teachings of level 10, which means he needs to learn how to preach the ideas of the order among the population. The guy perfectly understood that the teaching is the essence of any religion, and missionaries who spread the teachings play the most important role in expanding the community. These people now need Kima Siva. He thought that it would no longer be worse, but here it came, and the Inva still could not calm down and asked his brother, as the last time, just to take and use his magical wings. The system again sent a message that reported that due to an increase in the number of believers in Riemann, the capabilities of the goddess expanded quite. The goddess is happy and gives Tin Oracle. Suddenly, the phone himself jumped out of the hands of Kim, and the voice of the goddess Riemann was heard from the speaker, and the guys literally screeched with joy, especially the Inva, who still could not get used to what was happening. In order to seriously talk with Riemann, Kim decided to leave the house. The goddess said that thanks to the guy's deeds, the number of believers increased so much that now she has the opportunity to communicate directly with him. Kim exhaled in relief. Now Riemann will be able to help him with the management of the order on Earth, and she will tell him everything about the teachings of her order. Riemann decided to calm the guy a little and said that from now on, she would constantly get in touch with him and help in difficult situations, because the good he did Edom cannot be forgotten. The guy smiled. Now his life will change for the better, because the patronage of the goddess itself means a lot, and he will be able to cope with all the difficulties. Riemann, it turns out, agreed with causality and measurement. She passed the causality exam, so that soon in front of Kim Siva, system alerts should appear. And it appeared after a few seconds. Having bought a special profession of a missionary, the guy will be able to additionally spend 1,000 coins to send a missionary to the land from the measurement of Eden. That is, the goddess wanted the guy to bring the missionaries from the Paradise Garden to his country, as well as she brought him to Eden at one time. That is, representatives of otherworldly civilization will appear on Earth. It turned out that Riemann chose them from among the most worthy volunteers. Then the goddess said that the missionaries of the volunteers should arrive on Earth, or rather in Seoul, through the gates of chaos, and this will happen tomorrow. Kim thought for a second that all this was acting, like fast pizza delivery. Well, the missionary could not just take and cross the measurements in such a short time, but at the same time he pressed the buy button. The guy spent 500 points on the purchase of a missionary. Now it was necessary to confirm the coordinates of the chosen gates of chaos, and Kim did not think at all that the problem with missionary work would be solved so simply. But then his face acquired a puzzled look. He realized that he did not know the missionary who would arrive in Seoul, how he should recognize him, and suddenly they would not be converged with characters. But from the phone there was a cheerful laughter of the goddess. She said that the surprise is the best gift, so let Kim not worry about this. But the guy could still calm down. Whoever the missionary was, he was very tormented by vague doubts. He did not like situations at all that he did not understand something. How he will generally know how to handle these personalities. And Kim already painted terrible and not very friendly missionaries in his imagination. It was not possible to avoid the appearance in the department in manifestation of abilities. I had to appear in the eye of the head of Donshik and talk a little. They talked about the gates of the S-51 that appeared in Anjan, and the boss said that unfortunately they were already assigned, and if they were given to Kim, the reaction of the remaining alliances in the country will be negative. Kim smiled sadly, said that it was very sorry, because he hoped that everything would go smoothly since the goddess Riemann herself sent her missionaries from Eden here. Donshik recalled that the Yusun group sponsored these gates, and to persuade them to leave these gates, and consequently, the money will be problematic. Kim realized that the money was involved here, and the gates would be used as a training site, and to tell Donshika why he needed these gates, he could not. But there was nothing to do. I had to explain that it was through these S-51 gates that the missionary from the goddess Riemann should go to the ground. For the boss, this turned out to be bad news, because when representatives of the guild and representatives from otherworldly worlds are faced, real problems begin. During all this time, all the humanoid monsters that appeared in Korea were extremely strong and had deep hatred of people, but the reward for their destruction was great. In other words, Donshik tried to explain to Kim Siva that if the Goblin Guild was accidentally met at a missionary, then a war may even begin. But the guy already had an idea. He asked the boss to try to arrange a meeting with the Goblin Guild. He would do it personally. Donshik only nodded, and after an hour, Kim and the head of the department were in the territory of the high school of the city of Anyan, near the S51 gate. The place was rather strange. Even people here were not like the inhabitants of Seoul, and Kim for some reason strained and alarming at the same time. Kim sat down on a bench near the school building. He was worried about a strange purple shade of air, which testified to the presence of the Gate of Chaos. Behind his back, the guy heard steps and felt the presence of a stranger. He looked around and saw a stranger who asked for forgiveness for being late. The man introduced himself. His name was Chve Sichzin, and he was the leader of the Goblins Guild. He looked impressive, beaten like a huge block of trained muscles. Kim Siva also introduced himself and noted to himself that this person radiates an incredible amount of mana, which is why Choi is the strongest of the players of the highest rank. Siva thanked the hunter for agreeing to meet with him in such a short time, and he held out his hand for shaking and said that he was very pleased to meet the Black Priest, as Kim had already called. It so happened that not one of them felt confusion or awkwardness. Kim was generally pleased that the situation was in such a successful way. But the system stubbornly issued only one message, which said that mana of the opponent was too strong and puts pressure on him with terrible force. According to his feelings, Kim understood that due to the high level of resistance, the pressure of Mancho Sejin had no effect on him. The man came close to the guy and said that the order of the goddess Riemann was very interested in him. He did not mind joining her followers and serve her faith. Kim smiled happily and replied that they were always happy with the new followers in the order, especially so influential, strong, and madly bold. It turned out that Choi was already aware that Kim wanted to use the S51 gate, and he is ready to do everything to fulfill the request of such a person. This is still just the gates of the C rank. But Siva perfectly understood that this person did not know the main thing, why the guy needed these gates. He simply suspects that it should be important. He accelerated the pace, and this gave out the fact that Choi began to get nervous and angry. This man clearly did not like understatement, and was used to keeping the situation under his control. The situation was heating up. Choi thought that this guy behaved too brazenly. Did he think that the guild would really refuse the gate only because someone asked? According to the man, this guy thinks that he can afford everything that will embroider in the head, only because he was recognized as abnormal and awakened. Kim only now remembered the warning of Donshik that Choi is a fairly quick-tempered person, and his mood could change sharply. But the boss gave him a hint how to behave with Choi, so as not to wake the beast in him and hold constructive negotiations. In this way, experienced employees of the department used. Therefore, Kim, seeing changes in the mood of a man, folded his hands in a prayer and began to ask him to demonstrate his great power, which everyone is talking about. Then the words of the skillful flattery were poured that the Goblin Guild was a real legend in Korea, and he never saw how its representatives fight. They did not have time to finish and agree on something, because the air around began to thicken and became almost purple, which indicated that the gates of chaos would open soon. The words of flattery really acted exactly as Kim wanted it. Choi began to smile again, and even patted Siva in a friendly way on the shoulder. So far, everything went exactly according to plan, and the guy would not care how the leader of the goblins would react. The main thing for him was to get into the gates of chaos at all costs. Representatives of the guild gathered in a circle and expected the opening of the gate, but Kim was not sure that they were really ready for such an event. Choi began to boast of the combat skills of his guys from the guild, but Kim perfectly saw which of them was really prepared for the emergence of representatives of a different world. When asked if there are players responsible for the healing of others in the guilds, Choi replied that there are very few players, and all of them are worth its weight in gold because they are considered a rag. This information was very valuable, and Kim thought, since there are not enough healers on Earth, then maybe this is a chance for the Riemann Order to take his niche here. While Kim was thinking, the system notified that the missionary descends to the ground through the gate, but he needs to be secured from the goblins that protect these gates. Kim looked at the goblins, and a slight frost ran through his skin. These creatures were really terrible. Their eyes burned with anger, and a real poison oozed from the fangs. Choi gave the order to his guys. They aimed the monster right into the head, but as it turned out, representatives of the guild were very panicked and could not concentrate. Kim Siva offered his help, but the legionnaire immediately refused and assured the guy that the best players work in the detachment and they should resolve the situation. Kim decided to trust people Choi and simply watch the situation. As it turned out, the guild commander was a good player who was interested in not only money, but also preserving the lives of his people. The system said that the gates of chaos expanded to the maximum level, and then Choi ordered his soldiers to be alert and prepare for a difficult battle. But the battle was not destined to happen because the trolls suddenly changed their tactics. It was clear that they were very afraid of something and are confused. The next minute, the monsters simply turned around and began to quickly run away, but the guild representatives did not let them do this. The fact is that the legionnaires had a clear tactic, which consisted of surrounding the enemy from all sides and not letting him leave the battlefield alive. Even the experienced warrior of Choi was discouraged. He did not understand why the monster behaved in such a strange way. There is definitely something wrong here. According to the behavior of monsters, Choi guessed that they were haunted by some strange, but very powerful power. But so far, he did not understand where it came from. The man himself also shook a wave of strange energy, and despite his mother, Choi 8 could stand on his feet. Kim also decided to go aside to evaluate the situation well. He understood that Choi would claim the role of the winner in this battle and wanted to take the missionary to himself. But the guy could not allow such a turn of events, and already invented the options for what would do if he had to beat the missionary from the legionnaires. While the guy was in deep thought, the heads of the trolls in different directions, but not the legionnaires dealt with them. It was some other force. And finally, he saw this power, which, as it turned out, was concentrated in one single person. His name was Leo Rubin, and he was a missionary sent to Earth from Edom. Leo was an incredibly straightforward leader of the Order of the Study of Doctrines Riemann, as well as a person who became an archbishop of only 29 years old. For the eyes of Leo Rubin in Eden, this man was called the frantic dog of the order, and he could control the consciousness of all the subjects of the Order of the Goddess Riemann. On the face of Kim, bewilderment was depicted, and only one question knocked in her head: why the goddess Riemann chose him as a missionary. But here, Chvi intervened in the situation, who decided to demonstrate his skills of the best player and send Leo back beyond the earth. Then a real battle ensued, during which the legionnaire decided that this stranger, if he did not go back to Eden, would certainly become a legionnaire. Kimu only remained that he simply did not dare to stand on the sidelines and simply observe the situation, to intervene in the battle of such strong opponents. He was simply covered by a tantrum, and a crazy smile played on his face. Now he was in a situation that he would not even wish even the worst enemy. The situation directly got out of control. In this turmoil, it was no longer possible to make out what was happening in the courtyard of a simple, ordinary school. The legionnaires were generally in deep shock. They could not believe that one person could have such a huge force. It is many times larger than their commander Choi. And the head of the legionnaires still could not calm down, and continued to continue the battle with the alien from the other world. Even let him be from Eden. Leo Rubin no longer wanted to continue this meaningless activity, so he shouted that it was time to stop this lesson, which would still lead to anything. The alien in a clear and calm voice said that he did not intend to fight anymore, because the goddess Riemann, whom he serves, upset such actions. Kim approached Leo. A smile played on his face. He was really ridiculous, because the representative of Eden trampled into the land of the leader of the legionnaires, Kohir Saizan. Rubin decided that he had to officially introduce himself. He was a missionary sent from Eden to Earth, is the head of the Society for the Study of the Doctrines, and the bishop of the Second Church. Then he turned directly to Kim Siva, calling him the Papal Holiness, the first apostle of the goddess Riemann, and said that he had appeared here for his entirely support. Kim was immediately surprised by the fact that the man speaks in Korean, as in his native language, but he said that the great goddess granted him all. It was Riemann who ordered him to use this great and beautiful language in order to spread her faith and her sacred word in an entire country. Now Siva mentally thanked the goddess for the fact that she at least removed the problem with the language barrier. Then he will somehow figure it out. We will have to resolve the situation and put all the points over, and he somehow will have to make excuses for this idea to the head of the department Donshik. While the guys were transferred with greetings, the leader of the legionnaires Choi himself came to his senses. He still did not understand what happened to him and why he was waist deep in the ground. Such as Leon were ideal representatives of the Riemann order. He remained faithful to the doctrine in any situation and is ready to sacrifice his benefits for the order. But in fact, the missionary was not as simple as it seemed at first glance, because the fact is that he belonged to the direction of the so-called military priests, and this meant a lot. The guy's conversation was suddenly interrupted by the head of the legionnaires. He approached to put an end to the conflict with Leo and show who is the master here. The legionnaire decided that he would not leave this matter and prove to this alien who was the main one, and Kim could not get to Chuck that this was a missionary, a bishop of their order. Finally, Choi nodded in understanding, but did not back down, said that the dream of every legionnaire was a battle with a truly worthy opponent. And Kim with chagrin realized that right now Choi decided to fulfill his dream and defeat the enemy. But Leo only smiled mysteriously, saying that his dream would never come true. But Leo can demonstrate his power to the representative of the earth and fight with him. But first you need to ask permission from His Grace Kim Siva. Cho Sichin directly jumped up from indignation. She both are excellent warriors in his worlds, so why from the permission of some boy? This is complete nonsense. It seemed to Kim that he was in some kind of surreal world, and he really did not understand how to behave in this situation, which seemed as stupid as possible. After a few seconds, it was obvious that the head of the Legionnaires decided not to wait for the permission of Kim and wanted to spit on all the rules of the Order of the Goddess Riemann. He pounced on Leo Rumen with lightning speed. It seemed that he was just waiting for such a reaction of the Legionnaire, because he reacted simply from the first second. Well, Kim decided to prevent all the consequences and applied his strength to these two men who still could not calm down. After a small brawl in the middle of the courtyard, there was a bunch of garbage, stones, some fragments, and erased earth. But another fight was avoided. Donshik was angry to the core, because Kim promised him that he was going to just talk to the commander of the Legionnaires, but it turned out quite the opposite. There was nothing to do. The man invited all of them to pretend that there was none of this, and that all of these gates was the property of the Goblin Guild. Looking at Choi, one would think that the guy was completely satisfied with the situation. He smiled and offered Kim to create an alliance between the Goblin Guild and the Order of the Goddess. But Kim did not consider such a deal possible, as an alliance from the hooligan warriors and the religious order of the powerful goddess could turn out. In addition, the order was not at all simple, because its composition consisted of 2 awakened who were able to defeat S-rank. Cho Sitjin did not calm down and asked the guys to think about his proposal well. In his opinion, they should get good cooperation. He once again expressed his admiration for the guys, saying that he had not felt such vivid emotions for a long time as today during the fight. Then the man said goodbye to all those present, jumped into his car, and sharply pressed the gas, causing a lot of smoke from the exhaust pipe. Donshik said that they immediately begin to register Leo as awakened and do everything necessary for the quick design of his documents, and Kim can still be free. The man thought to himself that this guy is very useful for the department, but constantly creates a lot of problems, not wanting it himself. Kim got to his apartment closer to the night, a clear thing that Leo Rumen went with him, since he did not have his own housing on Earth. A brother and sister were waiting for them at home. The younger ones prepared a delicious dinner, and Leo was pleasantly surprised by such a warm and spiritual technique. Sienna tried fame and prepared a great dish for her brother and his guest. It was a delicious stew with meat and many vegetables, as well as branded grandmother's fish. Kim carefully watched the guest and understood that Leo really liked both food and the situation in their apartment. If he knew that the missionary would suit their house, he would probably just order a chicken and did not bother, as Sien did. Kim's sister decided to learn more about the Gasta from otherworldly civilization, and also asked if Leon had heard anything about her. Lion Rumen smiled and replied that he had heard a lot about his sister of his grace, because Kim often told Eden about his family. Siva exhaled calmly. It seems the situation becomes more relaxed, the guest feels comfortable, and the brother and sister behave culturally and unobtrusively. Further, Leo went to the soup, which was not prepared, but Inva, and this soup simply delighted the guest with his taste and aroma. And the bath even became somehow inconvenient, because he was not used to hearing compliments in his direction, especially those that concerned his culinary abilities. The boy said that he would be happy to share a recipe with Leo, and if desired he could even teach a guy to cook this dish, and not only that. For quiet conversations and delicious food, young people did not notice how they sat in the kitchen almost before dawn, and they absolutely did not want to disperse. 2 families of Kim Siva from Seoul and Edam are now reunited, and it was decided to give the grandmother's room for Leo so as not to bother with the search for housing. In the morning, Kim Sevu took out a symbol of Riemann from the box, a necklace with a memorable stone, which was one of the representative holy relics, blessed by the goddess herself. It was this relic by Leo Rumen who brought with him to the earth, and the intentions of the goddess, who transferred the relic through a missionary, were marginal dreams. New information was opened regarding the main task, the expansion of the community, and Ryman asked to put in the church for the followers of its sacred order. Kim himself had been thinking about this recently, because it was a good idea. In the temple, adherents of the religion of the goddess Riemann could gather. It will be a great place, bright and spacious, and the followers of the goddess will gather there to pray to her, as well as deepen the understanding of her teaching. If Riemann gave him just such a task, then the order moves in the right direction, and the goddess will expand its boundaries of power. While Kim was thinking about creating a temple, Leo had already managed to get out in the apartment. He turned out to be a very good guy in ordinary human life. Kimu seemed strange to the fact that Leo Rumen, a resident of Eden, knows how to use a vacuum cleaner, but he simply replied that Sienna taught him all in the morning. And Inva kindly agreed to show the missionary how the washing machine works, and also taught him to correctly iron and fold clothes. A missionary who looks like a block of muscles and who could kill a bear with one finger looked extremely ridiculous in home clothes and with a vacuum cleaner in his hands. Kim smiled, looking at Leo Rumen, who is now saying that she was sent to the ground for the complete and all-centered service of His Papal Majesty. In Eden, Leo was his right hand and also unquestioningly followed all the orders of Kim Siva. Nothing changed on Earth, the conditions just changed. Kim asked the guy to finish with household chores and prepare to leave. By that time, Inva would return and bring normal human clothes for the missionary. An hour later, Leo and Kim Siva arrived in the large office building, which was located in the Kapchon area. They had an important meeting. Smiling Minsk came towards the guests and apologized for the fact that he himself did not come to his grace, but forced such important people to wander around the city. But Kim asked the guy to calm down. He is very pleased to walk around the city, see what has changed over the past 10 years. Kima was not even surprised that Mituber's office is in the most expensive area of Seoul, because absolutely all influential organizations, even the national level, sponsored his channel. It turned out that in addition to maintaining a channel on YouTube, the Minsk team is still engaged in stripping the dungeons, and also advises various guilds from which he also receives money. The Minkum offered the children of coffee. He seemed extremely hospitable and did not know how to please his dear guests, because not every day there is a dad in your office. Siva finally introduced to the Min his companion, Archbishop Edom, who was sent to the land of the goddess and will preach to the inhabitants of the city the teachings of Ryman. Leo Rumen turned out to be a great connoisseur of coffee, and it looked more than strange, because there was no such drink at all in the Garden of Paradise. Mituber still could not recover after what he heard. His office was visited by his dad and his right hand, the archbishop of the highest rank. Is it not a success? Leo Rumen also expressed his admiration for acquaintance with Mituber. He did not expect that such people could be adherents of the religious order. Then the missionary said that he was convinced that Minso had already met with the goddess Riemann, because in his heart, he can see her symbol that you will not confuse with anything. The Minsk said that at that moment he was unconscious, but the powerful goddess healed him with his sacred light and gave him his blessing. Kim decided, since the acquaintance passed successfully, then we can already move on to the main topic of the conversation, after which he pulled out of the pocket a symbol of Riemann, who kept a piece of her strength in himself. At the Ministry of Economics, his eyes climbed on his forehead. He again saw this symbol, and then they told him that the artifact should be installed in the temple for which it was necessary to choose a place, but forcibly captured Earth would not work. Further, Kim explained in more detail, they should build a temple that will serve as a place of worship of the sacred goddess Riemann, and we need his help. This was not a problem for the Ministry of Council. He said that he would immediately begin to raise funds from the financial department, because the creation of the temple is an important part of the religion. But Kim sighed sadly. The money is good, but the problem is another. They have not yet chosen a suitable place so that it was accessible to the public. Therefore, they turned to Mituber. He knows the whole city very well, and perhaps he will have ideas about a successful location for the temple. Mai wanted to be a useful order, but he admired the deeds of the goddess Riemann, and himself was her adherent, but the request of the guys made him think. He asked the guests to wait 10 minutes while he sketches some ideas, and after this time, Mituber presented a short report on the design of the temple. The guests were extremely surprised, but Tominska explained that he had long thought about building a huge temple in honor of the powerful goddess Riemann. On the day when the goddess saved his life in the dungeon, he completely vowed to serve this woman until the end of his days, and the temple is only a small thing he could do. And now the guy considers the construction of the Riemann temple in Seoul his sacred duty in front of the religion and before the goddess. Leo and Kim were extremely admired by the words of his friend. He planned all this only because she saved him with his life. Leo even jumped up from the table and began to applaud Mituber, because it was a completely free act of goodwill, and the goddess would be madly happy. Further, the archbishop was so sympathetic that he ran to hug the mines and promised the guy to pray for his success every day. An hour later, the guys poured information into the network and asked the subscribers to vote for the erection of the temple, which will serve the order of the Holy Riemann. The Ministry of Council was sure that the fact that the simple public would choose a place for the temple would mean that they are already far ahead of the other orders. And this was true. In this way, it will turn out to create an image of a religion that works for one with its followers. It remains only to choose a location. The Minsk suggested that the first temple, which will be erected in honor of the goddess in this world, should be located in some very special place. Then the guy scrolled the presentation and stopped it on the slide with the image of the 0 point of Gangvaman, and this was a really amazing place. Since Kim was absent for a very long time on Earth, he does not know the complete story of this mysterious place, which many call a 0 point. 5 years ago, it was here that a spatial gap was opened, a phenomenon at the first opening of the measurement, and it was from there that monsters climbed to the ground for the first time. Terrible destruction began, and the city was able to destroy the main core of the gate at the cost of countless losses, both human and material. But the people who were in the center of the gate were unable to avoid the poisoning of mana, after which new gates began to open up quickly, and the current government could not do anything about it, deciding to simply leave this zone. Kim listened and seemed to not even breathe. He could not believe that such terrible incidents took place in his native Seoul. The Minska explained that the dome consists of 5 different balls, including a layer of mithril, which is capable of absorbing mana, only hunters of the rank, and can also go inside, not afraid of mana poisoning. Kim understood that such a dense accumulation of mana was going against the principles of this world, and consequently, MANHUA pollution violates the status quo and destruction occurs. It was also clear that the earth, which was contaminated with a large amount of mana, is not able to support any organic life. It resembled a dead city. There were 2 0 points in Korea, however. Since the region of Pusana is considered the first 0 point in Korea, it remains a painful head in its history. Siva finally realized what he was talking about. He proposed to build the temple of the goddess Riemann in this place, but the idea seemed strange to him. Miduber explained that there was nothing strange. The order would give a lot, setting the temple at a 0 point. They will only win in this way. Salvation, hope, comfort, and of course will return to this place, and of course a new life that will only please. Kim asked if it is possible to erect a religious temple on dead and distorted land at all. It looks at least strange. But to the minute he assured him that for starters they would cleanse the earth from this malicious energy, but it would be necessary to ask the goddess Riemann for help. Leo Ruman liked such an idea to his liking. He fully supported Mituber's thought that the temple needed to be built in this location. Kim said that he would think about this idea and will definitely discuss it with the goddess, because the infected mannered land should be completely cleaned, and this is not so easy. But then he remembered that the Ministry of Council began voting on the network for choosing a place what they would do if subscribers choose a completely different location for the temple. But Mituber only smiled and brought the next site to the screen, where the voting results were already depicted, and his subscribers supported the location of the 0 point to create the temple. Kim could not believe his eyes. He did not even expect that the problem would be solved so quickly and in such a slight way. Then the guy looked at the monitor and read the updated task, which said that the artifact for the construction of the temple should be used at the 0 point of Seoul. As it turned out, a lot of ordinary residents of the city disappeared at the 0 point, and their relatives still do not know whether these people are alive or not. Kim was convinced that this place would really change the course of the story of Seoul, and he cannot disappoint the adherents of the order of the goddess Riemann. Hearing the news, the head of the Donchik department just rebelled. He did not want to endanger the guy and did not want to send him to a 0 point. And to whom this stupid idea came to mind? To erect a temple on the scorched and empty land? Moreover, the authorities still need. But Kim immediately tried to calm the man. Why such unrest? Because he is not a simple resident of Seoul. He is awakened, and he will succeed. The boss replied that he was not objecting, but there is one nuance. It turns out that at the 0 point of Seoul, there is a mine with high-quality magic stones. These magic stones are formed from special crystalline energy. We can say that it is a mineral that is unique in its kind. Kim found out that the mine was subsequently created a high concentration of magical energy when a spatial explosion opened. As a result, the earth was polluted. The boss said that a year ago, after the detection of a 0 point in Seoul, large guilds created a detachment of professionals for the extraction of these stones. Only recently, the department learned information that some guilds fought among themselves for mines in order to single-handedly own a mine. For Kim, this news seemed strange because the government could intervene and resolve the conflict between the guilds. But it turned out that the main part of those who can resist MANHUA pollution are members of large guilds. The Department of Development of Abilities was powerless here. As soon as Kim enters the 0 point, they will not be able to help him. Kim considered the words of the head of the department frankly stupid. How to object to his plan only because of some strange anxiety. Of course, he respected the fact that the boss was worried about him, but asked Donchik not to intervene because he could well solve the situation himself. The government is just in a rather difficult situation due to lawlessness at a 0 point, and Kim in a matter of days will solve this problem without much effort. If you live with wolves, then you need to go out of the wolf. And since there is a zone of lawlessness, then who will behave regardless of the rules and laws? The next minute, Kim Siva presented a document to the head of the department, which said that the government has no objections to visiting a 0 point. And already in the morning of the next day, Kim Siva, Leo Ruman, and the head of the department stood near the huge wall, behind which was hidden 0. The head of the department had a fear that these two guys want to enter the 0 zone only together, without any third-party help. He promised Donchik that they would not create conflict situations and would not be the instigators of the battle with the local inhabitants. Let the boss be calm. But to himself that he will never pass by if some other player wants to suddenly attack him. During the conversations, the men did not notice how a sufficient distance along the wall passed and approached a special door, which was the passage inside the 0 zone. Everything that Donchik asked the young people about is to be extremely careful and not to be excessive, but the guys assured the man that everything would be in order with them. Kim began this business and is definitely going to bring everything to a logical conclusion. The zone will again be a wonderful place with a living land. The guys went inside, and Leo immediately wary. He said that he was accurately feeling evil demonic energy. The system also hurried to give a clue to the guys, which indicated that the goddess Riemann also controls the situation and gives them the necessary information. The Donchik remained to wait from the inside, and being in his deep thoughts, he did not immediately see how the man came up to him. It turned out that it was the minister himself. The who came thanked the head of the department for his work and regretted that due to his duties, the Donchik spends a lot of personal time. But the boss was not offended by his life and at work. He had not been so inspired by any project for a long time as now. But the minister said that he had the information that Donchik very objected to the decision of the ministry to launch Kim in the zone. And now the minister has arrived here to find out from the first time the reason why the head of the department is so afraid of the zero zone. I had to tell the policy that 5 large guilds are fighting for a 0 point, so there are too many risk factors that cannot be calculated. The appearance of the manifested will cause unnecessary problems, sending the first abnormal to such a place. They expose him great danger. But the minister reassured him. The guilds have already requested confirmation of the status of the awakened Kim Siva as an anomalous, so the struggle has already begun. The guild said that there is a chance of deception, since both places of zero areas were under the control of the government, and all this happened due to the weakness of politicians. The only way to resist the illegal actions of large guilds is to force them to observe the law, but the fact is that they have already merged too much with political circles. And not so long ago, the National Assembly began to talk about the dissolution of the Department for Management of Abilities, because it is believed that its employees abuse the position of the nation. Donchik could not even say anything from deep indignation, because it was all untruthful. Someone wants to discredit them, and does it in a very vile way. That is why the minister allowed Kim to go to the 0 point and made sure that the locals would be attacked, and then everyone would see how this idea would end. Donchik was indignant because Kim Siva would feel used when he finds out about it, but the minister said that he had already concluded a deal with Kim. It turned out that days earlier the minister met Kim Siva for an important conversation. He laid him on a run in the park. He asked the guy for several minutes of time to tell that there was a cruel struggle between influential guilds behind the zero zone. The guy replied that he was already aware of this information. He was told about this by the head of the department Donchik, as well as the fact that the government is powerless here. The minister only took a deep breath and said that it seems the awakened will pester those who pay more. Such is the real situation. Therefore, the department will confirm the right to everything that the guys will receive at a 0 point, and in return, they will help the ministry a little. But the guy promised the minister that he would clean the 0 point, and in return, he wants to get a little land on this territory under the construction of the Temple of the Goddess. Of course, Kim will make this temple publicly available. Residents of Seoul will be able to come to this place, who lost their loved ones in the dead zone. With the building permission, the Order of the Goddess Riemann will significantly strengthen in the city his position of the present partner of the department. But the minister was even more sad and said that this zone has long been not under their control, and there is a real anarchy. The government could not do anything. On the other hand, the man confirmed that if they manage to clean the zero zone, then no one can challenge their right to a certain part of the liberated land. And Kim was a little cheerful. He will not depart from his decision and will certainly erect the temple of the goddess Riemann in the zero zone. Staying a little in the zero zone, Kim immediately felt hostility. There were about 30 people there. He did not expect that his modest life would encroach on this right away, and Leo suggested trying to solve the problem with the help of a conversation. The high priest was deeply sure that any conflict, even the most difficult, can be solved using correctly selected words. There was nothing to do. Kim decided to listen to the advice of his partner and turned to the players, calling for solving the problem peacefully. Siva very culturally asked the militants to get out of shelters and talk heart to heart. While he still has the mood to talk, let him not be shy. Then the guy smiled ominously and said that he had come in peace, for he wants to build a temple in this territory in the name of a powerful goddess. At first, Kim even for a while thought that the representatives of the players listened to his words and would go to peace negotiations. At least it seemed to him that way. But there was only one player with a formidable expression on his face and said that he expected more when they were asked to get rid of the leader of some funny cult. And Kim was called a child, but he only laughed in response and asked if a warrior feels good, since he was already at an age. Then the warriors warned that the conversation in a peaceful man would not work, because they were asked to simply tear their feet with 2 impudent youngsters and throw them behind the wall. Here, Leo began to doubt that the constructive conversation would be the best solution in this situation. He changed his opinion. Therefore, the high priest did not think for a long time and desperately rushed into battle. The players began to fly in different directions with shouts of mercy. The man was not even going to give one of them at least a little chance to repent. He simply grabbed the players one after another and without the twinge of his religious conscience dealt with them once and for all. The leader of the players had not yet quite assessed the situation and believed that they could well cope with 2 boys, so he encouraged players in the hope that they would win. But after some time, the man began to doubt the strength and power in his gang. These 2 turned out to be with those strong nuts and did not give themselves offense. He knew about the hero from Eden, who filled the entire Mitub, but who his partner was in the strange appearance of the archbishop, he had no idea. He was not warned that someone else would be with Kim Siva, and this someone had just bowed his head before this newly made awakened. Kim Siva generally stood aside and thought that if he grabbed this defenseless freak and would take it hostage, who could somehow get out later. The player flew right on him, and his eyes sparkled with fierce hatred of the guy, but this hatred in a change in hell, because Kim applied his strength and not much trying. All that he needed was to activate his abilities and take advantage of the special skill of victory over evil, and the enemy was plunged at a moment. And for several minutes now, the fierce player Sepul lay at Kim Siva's feet and thought how to ask this guy to save his life. There was nothing to do. Still, I had to beg an uninvited guest about mercy. It was difficult and shameful for the player of such a rank. Kim, in turn, replied that Siberia does not hope for a quick and painless death. He cannot make such a generous gift to the player, too dishonest. The guy slowly stepped on the fingers of the lying player and asked to slowly and clearly tell who hired his gang to kill him and his friend. Sepia had no choice but to tell Kim that the Guild of Youngcock paid them so that the gang coped with uninvited guests. They agreed because the amount was not small. It was obvious that this gang of players was sent here in order to experience Kim, and Sepul, as an experienced person, had to understand this, but unfortunately, he did not think about it. Sepul once again asked for mercy. He did not think that everything would turn into this way, and that he would lose a lot of his best people. But Kim replied that forgiving people is not his work, but he was going to send Sepul to the Libra of Justice before God. Further, the system announced the update, but the guy, having viewed all the information, realized that nothing really changed, only the panel with its characteristics was added. But not everything was so bad, because the information came that the restriction of causality was removed, and the second update had to be carried out, and this was very alarming the guy. Leo turned to Kim and said that the arrivals were awakened and would have to fight again. But Kim noticed that the arrivals were not at all tuned to the battle. These people just wanted to know the truth. But why Kim Siva appeared in this place? Did he and his partner send the government here? Leaving the awakened behind, the young people began to look for a mine. She was definitely nearby, because they both felt a strange stream of energy. A medium-sized magic tower uses approximately 700 kilograms of magic crystals per year. According to Siva, this will be an excellent resource. Kim understood that magic stones are clots of pure mana. These stones are like pure water, and in combination with divine force, they would turn into divine stones. But suddenly the guy felt the same demonic energy that he felt from the lich in this mine. She belonged to the demon, the king of pride. It was this energy that he felt at the 0 point. The guy stopped as if dug and asked the awakened if anyone had recently entered this mine, but people refused to explain anything. Kim tried to explain to the players that being in a terrible struggle for power, they did not notice the obvious, and fighting with each other, miss important news. He knows that the land of lawlessness is located here, which means that if Kim get rid of these gangs of players and influential guilds, then without any problems will take the mine into his possession. The players took a little. It was clear from their faces that they had excitement. The players did not fully understand which side Kim plays on. But he said that he was not going to fight them at all. He was simply interested in this lawless land, like a location, nothing more. He is wondering if he could really do everything he wants here. In Kim's pocket, the symbol of the goddess Riemann began to vibrate, and this meant that the relic began to react to the presence of demonic energy. Then a message came from a system that informed that Siva could announce the creation of a sanctuary using the relic of the goddess. All those present at a moment raised their eyes up to look at the bright light, which radiated the relic in the hands of Tim Siva. And then something completely strange began to happen. The old houses collapsed, and green grass and flowers began to germinate from the ground. The air became completely different. Already in a calmer voice, the awakened Kim Siva once again informed the players that from now on, he devotes this earth, the almighty goddess Riemann. The goddess herself chose this earth, and he, as its faithful minister, cannot sit back. He will act so that life blooms here. He does a good deed and gathered around him an excellent team of reliable people, who are also absolutely faithful to the goddess Riemann. And Riemann made sure to clear the territory of the 0 zone of the negative energy of mana, and the contaminated land again became the same. Breathing in this territory became many times easier, the air became clean and fresh, and Kim admired the deeds of the goddess, to whom he would serve. The guy felt the presence of divine energy, which he could not confuse with anything. For sure, the goddess Riemann arrived again to the earth. Already a second before Kim Siva, the goddess Riemann appeared in all its glory. She was truly delightful, even breathtaking. The girl looked around, noting that the place here is not particularly attractive, but she will surely take care of its change. She vaguely saw them, her dreams that remained on these lands, but now everything has changed, and her strength will be enough to revive this land. She thanked Kim for taking care of the relic that she passed from Edom through Leo Rumen, calling that beautiful child. This expression began to anger Kim because, as one can call this demon, exposed to the mountain of muscles, some kind of children, he is a real killer. But Riemann decided to soften the situation and said that in any situation, she likes Kim Siva much more than Archbishop Leo Rumen. When asked by the guy why she went down to the ground, the goddess replied that she had a special gift for Kim, which she wants to hand over to him personally. While the guy still did not really understand what the almighty goddess was driving at, but he already felt that the air around was becoming much warmer. They, along with the goddess, approached the already green lawn. The guy saw a small rostrum carved from a block of some stone. Looking at her, Kim understood everything, but he could not say a word from the surging emotions. He could not accept this as a regular gift. And the almighty goddess hoped that the dream left here finally had a great place where she could stay. She was sure that everyone who missed this place would perceive it as a miracle. Then the goddess asked the guy to look back, and when he did it, he simply froze in surprise and admiration. A beautiful, majestic temple stood in front of him. While Kim Siva gradually came to his senses, the goddess, looking at him, smiled sweetly and for the third time asked if the guy liked her gift. Kimu didn't like it. He was deeply delighted and was sure that all the adherents of the Order of Riemann would also like this temple. After a few more minutes, Kim began to suspect that the goddess visited Seoul, not only to present him with the temple of her order. Indeed, she said that the last Kimin king of demons, Lucifer, transferred pieces of souls of other kings of demons to the nearest dimension. And it turned out that the nearest dimension is precisely the Earth. Most likely its system allowed contact with an outsider, namely with Kim. Since the land is not in the jurisdiction of the goddess, it cannot affect the course of the main events here and control them. Therefore, like the past times, she asks Kim to take care of this world and find out all the details on her own. She, if anything, helps. After a few minutes, the image of the goddess began to dissolve in the air. She again left this planet, leaving Kim with a bunch of new worries. Well, since the guy fulfilled the task of expanding the community, you can take on new things, and Leo and Ming will help him. The system said that the creation of the first temple on Earth brought the order of the goddess Riemann closer to the fact that its religion will become the main in this world. From now on, they will control the temple with a whole team, and thanks to the contract between dimensions, it is possible to seriously expand. The next day, Kim and Leo decided to show the temple to the Ministry of Council and hold a small meeting on the account of how they are further. The Minsk immediately organized the presentation of the temple for his subscribers, not forgetting to recall that it is all thanks to Kim. Siva appeared in the frame and politely bowed, then introduced himself. He is the first awakened in Korea and the leader of the Riemann order. Immediately on the network, a bunch of comments rained down that score of Kim's performance, and they were completely different. Someone supported him, others hated. Leo did not understand what was happening at all, because in Eden there is no YouTube. He did not believe that one could negatively relate to his high priesthood. Further, the Ministry of Council once again thanked his audience on the internet and said that thanks to the donates of followers, they were able to build a temple in the Zero Zone. Kim also sincerely thanked the inhabitants of Seoul, who joined the order of the goddess Riemann, as well as to Minsk and Leo. The guy said that now everyone can go to the application on the phone and get an official permission to visit a 0 point. Finally, the shootings were over, and the guys decided to walk a little around the territory, examine everything around the temple. And the most curious subscribers of the channel to Minsk decided to launch a drone and look at Kim Siva from a bird's eye view. When everyone had already dispersed, the minister himself appeared on the territory of the temple. There was a bouquet of flowers in his hands. The man decided to congratulate Kim with the purification of the Zero Zone personally. Kim led the minister to the garden and showed a small tombstone that he put here in memory of those who died for this territory. The minister was completely agreeing with such a wonderful idea and said that a kind memory of these people should not disappear. The man proposed to make on this plate the inscription, "The place where the dreams lie," and Kim was completely agreeing with him. Even despite the fact that Riemann took him for 10 years from his usual life, he could not be offended by her, because she revived life on the dead land, his land. Kim decided to read a message on the network once again. It seems that there are still a lot of people who considered him a real fraudster. The Minds was generally outraged by reading some of them. He could not believe that they still had to make their team to finally believe them. How can you not believe them? Because thanks to the goddess Riemann and the efforts of Kim, they turned the Zero Zone almost into a heavenly place. Kim only nodded his head, because this is exactly what the happy earth should be in Korea. This is not only his opinion, but also the opinion of the goddess. In order to follow the intentions of the omnipotent Riemann, he is going to open this place to the people and allow families to visit their loved ones who have suffered losses. The Minsk was sure that everyone sincerely thanking Kim and the goddess Riemann, it simply cannot be otherwise. On the way to the garden by whom I decided to ask Minsk about the so-called guilds of the blue collar, perhaps Mituber can tell more information about them. Mituber already realized that Kim had some new ideas. He had many friends who were in different guilds, so the guy promised to find out more information. The fact is that Kim Siva decided to find out more about magic stones, because most of the magical energy of Riemann was absorbed in these stones, which gave them the status of saints. Based on this, it can be assumed that somewhere on the territory of the Zero Zone, there is in the sanctuary in which the mine of holy stones is located. The guy had the idea to sell his merchant, because using the holy stone, you can create holy relics, and thanks to them, the order will be able to get a stable source of income. While the guys were talking, Leo approached them, whose face was visible. The archbishop said that the guests arrived at them. Wu came up, a middle-aged man, and introduced himself. It was Can Benz, the managing director of the National Coalition Awakened. The man said that he was glad to meet Kim live, and for him, it is a great honor to visit the territory of the temple built by Kim. The guy realized that the director of the coalition has a conversation for him. Otherwise, such a busy man would not have arrived in this place to just look at the temple. Kang admiration for the combat abilities of Leo Riemann, saying that he would like to see out of love with how the archbishop behaves in battle. Kim joked that if the director decides to attack someone from the community of times, then Leo can easily demonstrate his skills again. Further, the director said that he would like to pray to the goddess Riemann for the fact that she came forward and cleaned the territories that the coalition once defended. Kim decided not to pretend anymore and asked the guest not to arrange scenes. He perfectly understands for what purpose the man arrived here. His coalition did not protect the 0 point at all. They defended the mine here, and Khan definitely liked the situation at that time. And he hastened to upset the man, said that there were no more magic stones. Now these are holy stones, and at that moment, they are in the temple. Khan was sure that Kim received information about magic stones from the Department for Management of Abilities, so he believes that the guy entered the 0 point to pick up these stones. For such an alliance of the guild as they, magic stones are a key resource for growth, and the Kang is upset that Kim selected them from the coalition. The guy realized that they wanted to blame him for undermining the well-being of the country, but wasn't the alliance inserted sticks into the works of the department because the mines did not work at all for the needs of the country, but for the benefit of the coalition. And Kim could forgive this man and begin cooperation if he had begun with an apology, but instead brought destruction and dared to hire a criminal to kill him. But the man decided to act differently. He said that this time he arrived for negotiations and asked to leave all the discord in the past. Guarantees the Order of Riemann half of the mining from the mines of mana stones and will also access their mining infrastructure. In addition, it donates money to the Order of the Order. But Kim sharply took the sheet with the contract and immediately crushed it in his hand. Does this eccentric really think that some kind of piece of paper will be enough to conclude peace? At first, Khan tried to kill him, and now smiles in the face and brings some funny papers with Linden agreements. But this does not work in this way. This arrogant and vile man so angry Kim that he grabbed him by the throat, and while in a polite tone he asked Khan not to play with him in such games. He has not yet fully understood the tragedy of his situation, and still scared Kim, saying that the coalition has the strength to confront him. And this was the last point for the guy. He lifted the man above his head and threw out that there was strength, said that he was not afraid of such scoundrels as the director of the coalition. Then the guy asked the man to leave and convey to his accomplices that it was better for them to come here and apologize. Otherwise, he himself would come for apologies and will definitely receive them. After these events, the National Coalition of the Awakened created a team to investigate the actions of Kim Siva, but this did not scare the guy, because the Order of Riemann attracted the attention of the whole world after cleansing the 0 point. Arriving home, Kim found his brother in the wrong condition, but he explained that he was working a lot on the launch of the Riemann Order channel. Zion regretted that Leo no longer lives with them and spends all her time in the temple of the goddess Riemann. The girl asked permission to visit the archbishop. Kim agreed to take his sister to a 0 point to visit Leo Riemann, but only on condition that he has enough time. The sister, in turn, asked Kim not to consider her little fool. She knows very well that her brother is a dad, and it was he who cleared the 0 point. Inva laughed and reminded Kim that his sister also has a telephone with the internet, and Zion also monitors the channel minus. Inva said that CN, albeit small, is not stupid at all and in any case will support Kim in his endeavors. Further, the younger brother said that their grandmother called and warned of her return to Korea. She would be here after 2 weeks. It turned out that the department has given the woman a private plane, and now everyone is watching her, so she is very angry with Kim for her popularity. The next day, the channel of the goddess Riemann was launched, and just an hour after the launch, they already had more than 40,000 subscribers. The guys decided to check the comments that poured hundreds per minute, and they were collected more than 20,000, where subscribers expressed prayers for the fulfillment of desires. Leo Rumen confirmed that the goddess likes such comments, because she always supports those, gives birth to her desires and prayers. Kim was also glad to these news. He solved many problems of ordinary people, and was sure that over time they had even more followers of the order. Suddenly, a virtual tablet picked, on which a message appeared that Kim Siva received another task. It was necessary to continue to expand the order. The understanding that this message about the expansion of the order was sent to all the Earth measurement players was unusual. And the system confirmed the fulfillment of special conditions and decided to remove all the restrictions from the Earth's measurement. It pleased and scared at the same time. All players on planet Earth had to prepare for new serious trials, but first they need to be prepared for future changes. Here on Earth, no one heard about other players, except Kim, who could use divine glasses, and now he was going to call on 500 followers, as he had made earlier on the left. Morning news also did not please. A cataclysm showed on Earth. In preparation to change peace to the studio was invited by a professor of Korean University and the bishop of the Order of the White Light. Among the faith separating them, there were many players who successfully awakened only thanks to the blessing of their deity. Now that divine forces have become available to many, the bishop was sure that religion would occupy a more important place in the life of every inhabitant of Korea. Since the country of Korea decided to admit the Order of Ryman in these strange times on Earth, then it will be honest if the state recognizes the religion of White Radiance by official faith. The presenters began to ask how the awakening system works in the Order of the White Longia, and their representative replied that there was absolutely nothing special in their method. Everything is as simple as possible, and usually, only a faith in their deity is needed. The Order does not require anything more. Kim realized that real divine players from the Order of the White Light could not use demonic forces. This was excluded. The White Radiance constantly uploaded the video on their channels, where they showed battles with demons, and they never claimed that they were on the same side with dark forces. The guy began to reflect on and came to the conclusion that he had never felt demonic energy from the adherents of the Order of the White Lights when he was in Guro. At first glance, this order seemed absolutely neutral. He did not use shadow schemes, but simply protected his territory from different types of evil spirits. So it turns out that other organizations that are not related to White Radiance are functioning in the city, but they are directly related to demonic forces. Before the eyes of Tim Siva, the image of the goddess Riemann again appeared. She, as always, appeared in front of him in difficult times. Kim was worried that the whole Earth is now in some kind of chaos, and apparently, some players now have a divine type, but he does not understand whether it is good or bad. What is divinity is not only the power that the followers of Riemann can use, but the force that makes it possible to create miracles. The stronger the faith, the stronger the deity. In turn, the stronger the deity, the more by force it can bless its followers. This is the law that works in all dimensions. Just like the will of players directly affects their magical abilities, the divinity itself is closely connected with the power of the faith of the followers of the deity, and the awakened can use this force to create miracles. The goddess explained that the strength of the deity depends on the level of faith on which it can encourage its followers. The deity without believers will simply disappear. Kim dawned that the era of order was referring to the gods, but he was interested in why there was no divine forces on Earth at all. Probably the system imposed restrictions on the potential of people. He also did not understand why the system simply did not remove all the restrictions 5 years ago, but only allowed the existence and use of mana. Well, now the goddess replied that time has changed, and now she blesses him and raises all the features by one level by as much as 90 days. In simple words speaking, the goddess needs Siva in order to preach her faith on Earth and strengthen their divine laws here. Well, Kim asked for a favor. He wanted the goddess to send people from Eden, because large guilds are already trying to monopolize the players of the divine type. If Riemann does not send reinforcement on time, then the strength will have to exploit the Archbishop Leo Rumen even more. So far, the guy has not fully understood how it was better for him to influence the era of order in his country, and whom to attract to his aid. If the message from the system was sent to all players, then the measurement of the Earth really expects great changes. That he can definitely do well now, how to manage the temple of the goddess and continue the sermons, but he did not know where to go further. 5 years ago, when he disappeared, North Korea ceased to exist as a nation due to interspatial breaks, and according to the INV, now it is a real land of monsters, and now the system notified that the Orc tribes are located near Pyongyang and are going to move south. A meeting was immediately scheduled, where the main representatives of the guild were called, including Choi Sizin, who was only glad of new adventures. It was necessary to soberly assess the situation and come to a general decision on how to proceed further in order to protect your country. To Kim's great surprise, Choi said that he would not cooperate with the National Coalition because he is not doing business with the bandits. But the head of the Guild of Goblin only built himself a carefree warrior. In fact, he had many questions for Kim regarding divine forces, because it was he who possesses them best. Kan Bensu, who was also present at the meeting, did not like Choi's behavior at all, and he decided to make a remark to the head of the guild. Kim, in turn, understood that the director of the Coalition of the Awakened and continues to annoy people around him and set up everyone against his team. Then Khan decided to offend Choi, discrediting him in the eyes of other guild chiefs, calling the man absolutely irresponsible. The clear thing is that the head of the guild goblin was not going to listen to the accusations against him, so he got angry in earnest and wanted to start a fight. But Kim stopped the man in time, recalling that they were gathered here, not in order to find out their personal relations. They have more important things to do. Suddenly, the door to the meeting room opened, and the Minister of Department for Managing the Abilities of Yu San-ho appeared on the threshold. Choi immediately jumped up and kindly invited the minister to sit down at the table, while saying that the politician is in very good physical shape. Further, the minister decided not to joke and got down to business immediately, because they were all gathering here to discuss plans regarding the orc horde on Korea. The orcs were night creatures that acted in the tribe, and their capabilities could not be underestimated. Also, usually orcs from different clans are hostile to each other, but now for some reason, all the orc tribes have united in one gang. This is happening for the first time from their appearance on Earth. Kim Siva guessed that he agreed to reconnaissance reports, something forces the orcs to hold together. This was not there on Earth, but he had already encountered this in Eden. The orc, who was born with force to suppress other orcs, is a real monster that can direct rampant anger in his brothers in a single direction. At the moment, the lord of all the orcs is the so-called young men, and agree this monster to reports to his command of about 100,000 orcs. Now it became clear to everyone why an alarm was declared in the country as high as possible. The jokes ended, and you need to start to fight. The special difference between these monsters is that they cut a tattoo on their hands with the image of their tribe. Intelligence already knows about 7 different tattoos. The Great Lord significantly exceeds any orc for all the main characteristics. Kim has already fought with such one. At the time of his appearance, the Lord destroys the tribal hierarchy, so the orcs follow him and soon swear allegiance to him. Kan has infuriated the fact that Kim, who recently arrived to Earth, knows much more about the orcs, or maybe he deceives them, and everything is not so scary. Kim decided not to courteous, and asked Khan if he regrets that he had lost his illegally captured 0 point, and is now losing in illegal money. Kan calmed down and said that the orcs really became a great threat to the country, so he is not going to quarrel. It is necessary to act. Choi and Kim burned with a great desire to just take this over his throat and to emblay him well. He earned only such an attitude. If the minister had not intervened in their skirmish, then probably a real fight would have occurred, but the man sharply asked everyone to calm down. Everyone turned to Kim Siva with one question of how they should act, and he calmly replied that it was simply necessary to destroy the Lord of the Orcs. But you need to understand that their team will also have to make some victims to stop this horde, so the easiest way out is to kill the Lord. Everything is extremely simple. As soon as the main orc is destroyed, the rest will again begin to be at enmity with each other and their clans. Khan jumped up and called such an idea to Siva with a real delirium, because the Lord of the Orcs is surrounded by 100,000th army of terrible monsters. And even if the assumption of Kim is true, then the Korean army will have to break through the whole wall of the orcs in order to get to the leader. But Kim explained that it is not necessary to fight the orcs from the ground. You can throw their army with air bombs. One of the members of the committee objected, because there are no guarantees that the murder of the Lord will stop the monsters, so this plan needs to be considered well. Kim realized that they did not want to listen to his words, because they believe that he simply wants to be fed on this difficult situation. The representative of one of the guilds said that Kiev has no specific sentences and decisions. He simply wants to express his unnecessary opinion. But the guy only smiled and asked for a minute of attention, then announced that he would go alone to fight the orcs. He no longer needed no one. He heard that some channels allegedly fake and overestimate his strength, and now he will use this chance to unconditionally refute these statements. And if someone has at least some objections, then they need to be voiced right now, and if not, then just let them prepare a helicopter for him. An hour later, a helicopter went down to the office where the meeting was held, and Kim was about to fly out of here alone. He did not even want to take pilots with him. He said that he himself would cope, because earlier he had experience managing such devices. Then the guy slowly walked around the helicopter from all sides. It seemed that he touches this machine, and with the help of his hands passes the helicopter some important information. In fact, Kim applied the active skill of the House of Consecration, and at a certain time put on the object the strong blessing of the Order of Riemann. The effect should have turned out to be simply breathtaking, because even the monsters themselves do not want to run towards the faithful death. Semyon also appeared near the helicopter. By order of the Minsk, he, as the last time in the cave, will have to shoot everything. Previously, at a 0 point, it was impossible to shoot due to infection by mana, but now there will be no problems, except for the monsters themselves. Given the hot competition, it was important for Kim to gain views of a direct broadcast, so there was no reason to refuse the reasons for the services of Semyon. Then he will be able to give a video a name like, "He fought from 100,000 orcs alone," or "Flew by helicopter into the lost lands." Kim saw that Semyon was scared. The guy was trembling all right, because he had to reassure the young operator and say that he was in the safest place next to his dad. Semyon even blushed and said that it was a great honor for him to fulfill this duty, and he thanks Kim for his honor to be present here. This situation slightly strained Kim Siva because he believed that now it was not the time to express gratitude and admire the deeds of the Pope. After all the preparations, the helicopter abruptly climbed into the air and began to head to the zone. From there they will see the direction of the army of the orcs. It was not long to fly. Only Kim and Semyon were in the cab. Only 5 minutes remained before arrival. As Kim Siva and suggested, the orc army did not expect at all that she would be observed from a great height. They were not ready for such a turn of events. Semyon was just delighted. He could not even think that he could broadcast on the air an air attack on Mitub. The minister was also slightly tense due to this broadcast. He did not understand whether the broadcast helps to control the situation, or on the contrary, everything exacerbates. But then the man calmed down slightly. Remember that Kim insisted on broadcasting to prove room in his skills. But on the other hand, if the awakened Kim fails this task, then the government will have to take on the burden of a direct broadcast of a failed operation. And if such a situation happens, then the crystal pure reputation of the Department for Management of Abilities will be absolutely tarnished. Well, the minister believed that the work of the department is already discredited. Its members are not capable of anything. So the situation with the broadcast would absolutely not change anything. A lot of time has already passed since the awakened private large guild surpassed the country's army and continued to serve it correctly. But the minister replied that the country did not have the strength to control the national coalition of the awakened, as well as there is no strength to avoid the coalition. Then he turned to Donchik and asked if he knew why each country independently classifies those who return to the ground. Returning, who relate to the rank of disasters, are people who played a large role in their worlds before their return. They are so strong that they can influence the world order. It's clear that such people are unlikely to obey the local authorities, so the situation is quite sensitive. But the forces of the catastrophe that return from a number can still be measured, but as for the abnormal returning, their power is simply without borders. Therefore, according to the minister, the conflict here is inevitable. It is necessary to send this situation into the direction of the interests of the country and the ordinary population. That is, they will turn to the help of Kim Siva in order to control the national coalition of the awakened. Here, politicians are powerless, and simply in this situation should be trusted in the awakened Kim Siva and his superpowers. Judging by the comments under the direct broadcast, many subscribers did not believe that Kim would be able to resolve this business on their own. But Kim was not worried about this. Just at that time, he arrived in the operation zone, so it did not make sense to be distracted by comments. Kim Siva handed over to the central point that he had already managed to discover his main enemy, the Lord of the Orcs. The leader of the monster's army looked like a huge block of meat. In his hands, he held a bat and was very aggressively configured. To the great surprise and fear of Semyon, Kim opened the helicopter hatch and was going to bend down, right where the main orc stood. Further, Kim simply on the air handed the hello to the subscribers and asked not to leave the broadcast until the end of the battle with the evil orcs. Finally, the army of the orcs decided to see what was happening above their heads and slightly strained, seeing a strange picture. After a few seconds, Kim had already landed on the surface. In fact, he did not even have a clear plan. He decided to act instinctively. The leader of the orcs approached him right. Kim thought to himself that this monster was much higher than it seemed from a height, but it did not scare the guy. Somewhere he already saw such an orc, and knows for sure that last time the monster was lying at his feet last time. All that irritated Kim was a disgusting energy that directly poured from the orc, and this energy was as hostile as possible. It seems that the internships of the orcs do not appear by themselves. They are created by someone else's demonic energy. At first there was a wyvern, then a lich, and a doppelganger. The next leader of the orcs became the next. His demonic energy was definitely from Lucifer. He was the first king of pride demons, but now he is called the king of demons of anger. But the leader of the orcs decided not to listen to the stories of this strange guy. He had a clear order for destruction, and he followed him at all costs. The orc was ordered to kill Kim Siva, regardless of any circumstances, but he did not think that it would be difficult to fulfill the order. Kim vigorously evaded from the axe, which the leader of the orcs very much knew how very much. So far, everything went as he wanted all. But the guy also did not think that the orc would use the maximum amount of negative energy so strong. I had to act fraudulently and attract more and more magical skills that the goddess Riemann endowed him, because the orc did not want to give up. The lord of the orcs blocked the blows of Kim much better than the guy thought. It seems to have to ask for help from the rank hunters. But the leader of the monsters said that their work has long begun. and now no human power is able to stop them. The war has begun. The monster shouted to her army so that everyone followed him. Now they will show this arrogant guy all their strength. Siva understood that the decision should be made as quickly as possible. He was told that demonic energy is related to despair from life, but even better, he will be able to get rid of the army of the orcs and their boss before they become even more dangerous. Kim hoped that subscribers would like a video broadcast. He planned to get at least 10 million views from it. While the leader of the orcs threatened the guy with brutal reprisal, he just laughed and asked the monster to run a little slower, because he wants to take a photo as a keepsake. Kim allowed himself to joke about the army of monsters and said that they only spoil the rear background with their presence. In addition, he has nothing against cowardice, because if you figure it out, then he in the end is not a real warrior. The system notified that the use of Kim's skills begin to exceed causality, so some of their functions have been changed. Then the guy decided to apply all his abilities and activated a special skill called the Tomb of the Holy Spear. This was supposed to help in battle. Everything happened like in an epic cinema. From the sky, like needles, luminous spears began to fall, and it looked completely amazing. On the other side of the screens, everyone watched what this crazy Kim Siva was doing. His brother Inva was no exception. The entire territory of the battlefield was strewn with luminous fiery spears. Everyone had to understand that they were equal in the face of superior strength. No one still could believe that the former resident of Seoul Kim Siva in real time was fighting with orcs to save his hometown. He even forgot for a second about what was unlike the rest of Korea. He awakened, and even anomalous. Looking through the screen at his brother, and you just admired him. Even if you take the strongest heroes of Korea, Kim will still be stronger. He was proud that he was a brother of a man who, in the shortest possible time, has saved their city several times. The leader of the orcs crashed to the ground and was no longer able to take a vertical position again. He was defeated. But Inva doubted that this monster was not pretending, because the guy saw how the orc moved his terrible fingers. Kim was also extremely irritated from the fact that he could not take the life of the orc directly from the first blow. It seems that he loses his form. The guy did not suit this state of affairs. Everything was not bad, but he worried about Riemann and views so that they would not be disappointed in him. Although everyone was completely delighted with Kim's actions, he was praised, admired, he was simply idolized. Inva realized that Kim was very worried about that to look on the air as cool as possible, because he already had a whole army of fans. The Minsk broadcast on the air that after the Lord of the Orcs was defeated, the rest of the Crusts began to fight each other. Their army fell apart. The Department of Management of Abilities thanks Kim Siva, and the National Coalition of the Awakened, as always, is silent. Inva entered the office, holding a phone with an open newsfeed in his hand. They already wrote about Kim Siva as a national hero and the savior. He was also interested in reading the news. The opinion of people about his activities in Seoul were very different, and the guy could not concentrate in any way. The system notified that the causality limit has been exhausted, so Kim should haste to accumulate all his strength and act further. In the command post, no one could understand what was happening now. It was like an exploding volcano that would destroy everything around. The minister now realized why the abilities of the abnormal awakened were compared with the use of the most powerful nuclear weapon. All this time, they underestimated the power of Kim Siva, and now it became clear why he decided to conduct a stream during the battle with the orcs. Right on the air, the guy handed it to the minister and the head of the department, Donshika, standing next to him. Later, already sitting in the car, Donchik gained Kim and honestly admitted that he was simply delighted with the abilities of his subordinate. Donchik said that he was now going to China for negotiations and would like Kim Siva to look outside the city during his absence. For some reason, Kim smiled right into the phone. He was pleased that people like the minister and the head of the department completely trust him. Then the guy ran through the news and found out that the group of orcs, which lost its leader, went to the north, closer to China. Immediately, comments sailed that Kim Siva was inactive in such a difficult situation. He was prompted and hid in a calm place. He could not believe his eyes. Only yesterday he defeated the leader of the orcs and did it live. And today the channel's subscribers call him a coward. Inva chuckled and also called Kim an ordinary resident of Korea, but he did not even want to hear the jokes of such jokes in his direction. In order to cheer up his brother, Inva decided to cook Kim's favorite dish and fried a delicious potato. At the same time, Inva said that he heard that the gates on which the Goblin Guild bet on also have their own horde of monsters. Most likely they will be occupied by them. But Kim thought that the circumstances are formed as it is profitable for him. Now he should prepare the temple for visits by adherents of the order. There was a lot of hard work, but he coped and protected the land from Navala monsters, thereby supporting his allies. Now, when he looked at the line of the state, he saw that the limit of divine power was exhausted and suspended for 24 Earth hours. According to statistics, another 255 followers of the goddess joined their order, but 50,000 were still insanely far away. While Kim Siva solved the problem with the increase in believers, Archbishop Leo decided to simply go to the people and talk about the goddess Riemann. As it turned out, after the horde of the monsters, many people appeared in the city who wanted to become the official followers of the goddess Riemann. Leo Rumen simply shone with happiness. He was proud that now their order has real brothers and sisters on Earth. Kim Siva also decided to join the Archbishop and talk with the people. He was met very warmly and friendly. It turned out that hundreds of people are grateful to Kim and the goddess Riemann for the cleansing of the 0 point, because their relatives and friends are buried here. Kim thought that it was for the sake of such a moment that he brought Leo Rumen to the ground, because he would become an excellent preacher. Everyone already knew that Leo is the Archbishop of the Order of Riemann, and from now on he will teach the adherents of the Order of the Covenant. Just in case, Kim asked if Leo could preach. He nodded his head, but complained that there were too many followers. He just smiled at such words and warned the Archbishop that from now on he would have a lot of work with the spread of the laws of the goddess Riemann. But the Archbishop still could not put this information in his head. He alone is most likely not to cope with so many people. Kim decided to reassure a friend and said that the goddess Riemann decided to send more people from Edom to help with the teachings of new believers. Inva watched this whole situation and thought that he could also become useful in such a matter. He also knows a lot and knows. Inva was also interested in whether the order had money, more and more new people who need to be kept. A lot of money will need a lot of money for life and worthy management. To hope only for Mitub would be too frivolous. The brother asked if Kim would collect donations, as other religions do, to which Siva nodded in the affirmative. He had already made this decision. Further, Inva lowered his head and decided to talk about the painful. He told his brother that the studies of Cien were very expensive. He had almost no money. Kim carefully looked at these words at his brother and then approached him and whispered something in his ear. He was very surprised. Then Inva shouted that it was actually illegal because it was already a business, not a religion, even rather a cult. The brother asked the Inv not to be indignant and be a little quieter. If Leo hears them, then their conversation would be incorrectly. The guy decided to check the system, which said that at the moment there was an active construction of the lighting house, which had been spent 5,000 points. Then Kim ran his brother into the lighting house, and Inva finally saw where Siva would produce magic stones. Inva smiled sweetly. These stones were not like any others. They had many faces and radiated a pleasant light purple color. The head of the craft guild, Mr. Kang, said that this is a completely new mineral. They are very interested in starting to work with it. Kim was glad of such words. The guy understood that cooperation with Mr. Kang would be very effective. It was necessary to start work faster. The man said that for him the honor to work with the Order of Riemann, and he can process 100, 200 stones in one day. Both men had no doubt that each of them would gain great benefit from this cooperation, so they quickly signed the contract. Inva was very skeptical of this situation. It seemed to him that this activity had nothing to do with religion. The master said that he plans to create a decoration with a sacred stone. This will be a delightful bracelet indicating membership in the order. Although Inva did not approve of this idea, he said that he would help to advertise this decoration on the channel. He would learn more about it. But if the Riemann religion will sell these bracelets to improve health and well-being, but it will look like fraud, Kim objected. Their bracelets will really give the desired effect. It is simply necessary that they be blessed by a religious priest. Siva informed the Inva that he could draw up his sister at any educational institution of the country. He will pay everything for the full course. Inva surrendered. He agreed to advertise bracelets, but first you need to show a video on the air where the priest blesses jewelry. Since Kim could not use his sacred energy now, he spent it during the battle with the orcs. Leo will do it for him. Mentally, Inva had already begun to turn to the goddess Riemann with a request to reason Kim, because he has already played decently. A notification came from the system that the oracle was sent to Earth from the goddess, and Inva was insanely glad of such news, because Leo could relax a bit. Riemann reported that she would send help to the ground in the same way as the last time, but Kima was not at all pleasing at all. The magic forces of Siva were still blocked, and the store offered the purchase of a special role, the commander of the Paladinov. Kima was surprised by only one thing: why in the virtual store such high prices, the Paladin commander costs as much as the new building. But there was no way out. Kim Siva could not allow his friend, Archbishop Leo, to die from exhaustion, so he quickly pressed the purchase button. He again lost 5,000 points, but acquired an important player. The commander of the Paladins did not take the whole purchase for 2 minutes. The guy asked the goddess Riemann to inform in advance where the gates would appear so that he could properly prepare for this event. Without hesitation for a long time, the goddess Riemann replied that the commander of the Paladinov was already on the way to the ground. From this information, Kim's eyes climbed on the forehead. Riemann said that she was very ashamed that she had not sent help to her friends for so long. So this time, she did it immediately. It was logical, because the world is already immersed in chaos because of the strange gates and phenomenon of the dungeons, so you need to prepare to meet the guest. Kim looked at the channel and almost fainted. There was a live broadcast from the operation to close the gate. Some girl fought with the monster. After a few minutes, the girls managed to defeat the terrible monster, and now she stood and looked at him down. The soldiers of the department could not determine whether it was a red-haired girl by an enemy or a friend. They tried to figure it out. Representatives from different guilds immediately flew to her. Everyone wanted to demonstrate their strength and skills in front of this fragile girl. But her skills were too incredible. While the soldiers were approaching, the girl jumped up and took off several meters over them. Further, from somewhere from a height, she shouted that the guild soldiers attacked her first, and now her turn came. Nobody expected such a turn of events, especially since the representatives of the department did not think that they would attack them. A general panic began. Kim watched the broadcast and did not understand anything either. This girl did real miracles, and before attacking someone, she winked at him. The guy wanted to ask the goddess Riemann what this idea was, but Riemann referred to a very great employment and simply disappeared from the network. At a moment, the connection with the oracle was simply interrupted, and Kim continued to stand like a pillar for some time, not knowing what to do next. Finally, with red hair, she decided to introduce herself. Her name is Luna Leventon, and she is the third commander of the Paladins of the Order of Riemann. She still offered all the legionnaires to surrender kindly, otherwise they were all awaiting a very sad finale. Kim realized that they were in a difficult situation because the moon was considered one of the strongest fighters of the order. With this girl, the jokes always ended very poorly. If Leo Rumen was called a crazy dog, then the moon also had a nickname. In Eden, she was called a bloody saint. She received such a nickname because on the battlefield, the girl always found herself in the blood of her enemies. Her beloved weapon was an iron mace. The girl turned to Kim and expressed her joy about arriving at him to the ground, said that she had already bored with Siva. In addition to its main combat abilities, the moon could boast of her enormous influence in the order of the goddess, and besides strength and mind, she had a delightful appearance. Speaking of the terms of the earthly world, the moon could be called a real idol, and having such a girl in her team was just wonderful. But Kim was now worried about completely different. Why did the moon Leventon began a fight with representatives of the guild? Why did these warriors not please her? Leo replied that the legionnaires did not like strangers, and from other dimensions. Therefore, they were the first to attack the moon, and she was not at a loss and gave a serious response. The guy was completely angry. He did not understand why it was impossible to conduct human negotiations, but immediately start a fight. They positioned themselves as a religious community and not as bandits. But the archbishop filled Kimu that it was he who behaved like that in Eden and taught all warriors in martial art in order to confront dark forces. Looking again at the tablet screen, the guy saw the information that the new gates of chaos were opening in the ancient area, and it was no longer a joke. Representatives of the department immediately appeared near the gate and tried to prevent the press, explaining that a military operation was being carried out. But it was very difficult to lag behind annoying journalists. They all crowded near the fence and threw the military hundreds of questions. Kim decided that people should know the truth. The Guild of Dho was one of the most influential in South Korea. They not only disgraced during stream, but also the moon made the stage to understand that she was from the order of the goddess Riemann. The guy was interested in what would happen if he now appears on the screens. He would probably be torn to pieces if they could. But Leo suggested entering the barrier created by the Guild of Dho to stop the moon and quietly pick it up from there, because she herself would not want to leave kindly. Kima was surprised by the fact that they could pass through. This meant that the passive skill of divine protection was activated, and the integrity of the barrier was significantly reduced. The moon continued to atrocity, and near the gate of chaos, she already managed to take the lives of many representatives of different guilds, but was not going to stop. Kim for a second thought that this girl would look just amazing if he had not succeeded here. There were still daredevils who could not calm down and wanted to demonstrate their strength to the moon, but all this was in vain. Leo and Kim watched the fight from afar. One of the guild representatives, the S-rank hunter, still held on his feet. It seems he was the strongest. But unfortunately, the hunter, as well as unfortunately the archbishop and Kim, this legionnaire could not even hurt the girl. Finally, Kim decided to intervene in a fight and calm the insatiable moon Leventon and a stupid legionnaire who was a step away from death. It was urgent to stop this girl, because as Kim believed, some misunderstanding. Finally, the moon itself froze for a second and realized that Dad himself came to stop the battle, His Grace Kim Siva. The girl was very happy, and a beautiful smile began to play on her face. She bowed to Kim, said that she was very missing. Then Kim listened to endless explanations, apologies, and the fact that she arrived at Earth at the request of Vic and the goddess Riemann. The girl warrior stood on one knee and lowered her head, at the same time said that she was ready to completely obey the orders of His Grace. It was not even noticeable on the moon that she only fired a cruel battle with representatives of the guild and scattered them around a couple of minutes ago. She did not even translate the spirit, and it was not noticeable on her that she was tired, or something else it seemed. Her body looked like a robot. Kim decided to greet the girl, but smiling as sincerely as she could not, and yes, he actually did not get bored, there was no time. The girl again leaned her knee when she saw Archbishop Leo Rumen near Kim. She was also extremely glad to see him. It was necessary to somehow resolve the situation, and Kim apologized that he could not meet the guest as expected. She had to wait, but she did not lose time in vain. He delicately asked the girl why she beat the legionnaires to such a state of legionnaires, and how he will now correct this stupid situation. The girl replied that this is all thanks to his lessons, but life does not always go according to the plan, but sometimes unplanned things improve the situation. Kim overheard the conversation of the legionnaires who fought with the moon, but remained intact that they should take part of the responsibility. One of the warriors was indignant. He was not going to apologize because they received an order to attack an unknown essence, and they simply did their work. Another warrior objected because they decided to attack the girl first, despite a few warnings, which is why they should apologize. The situation seemed very funny because Kim Siva planned to apologize in the same way, but fortunately, this was not needed. It seems that the girl during the battle managed to rinse the brains of the soldiers. As a result, they still had to make excuses and had to apologize to her. But the moon laughed again and said that she simply had no brainwashing skill. She completely does not know how to do this. Then the girl grabbed Kim's hands and said that she had too weak muscles. He needs to engage in physical activity more, because leaders should always be in shape. The moon liked to call Kima a brother, she believed, because they are all saints, employees of Ryman. This automatically makes them all relatives. Further, the girl concentrated all her attention on Leo Rumen and began to pester the archbishop with her sharp and often stupid issues. The leader of the group O, who was the right hand of the head of the guild, apologized and was ready to make any punishment for his erroneous decision to join the battle with the moon. The girl turned her gaze to the young assistant to the head of the guild and smiled maliciously. She really waited for an apology from the guy. He slowly came up, bowed his head, apologized, and thanked the Moon Leviton for having learned a lot during the fight with her. Then the guy invited the girl to meet again, but not for competition in battle, but simply to talk and learn more about each other. The girl broke into a smile. Such words were clearly flattered by her, so she gave some advice to the guy regarding mistakes in fencing. Kim immediately arrived in time and invited the guy to the temple of the goddess Riemann. There Luna Leviton will be able to teach him several fencing lessons and make it great joy. The guy's face became red as a tomato. He once again bowed and assured those present that he would definitely come to the temple of the goddess. According to Kim and his strategies, she worked, and he was sure that in the person of this guy he received another follower of the faith of the goddess Riemann. Upon returning home, Kim decided to read the news of his channel. It turned out that many subscribers were asking for more information about the newly arrived from Edom Luna Leviton. It was amazing that almost all subscribers considered the moon a very beautiful girl. Besides, everyone admired her combat skills. Beauty that no one can deny, as well as the ability to plunge even the strongest from the guild Daho, made the moon a huge advantage for the order of the goddess Riemann. However, there was one problem, and it consisted in the disgusting and rebellious character of the Luna Leviton. This girl was truly unbearable. Appearing in Kim's apartment, the moon immediately fell on the Inva with a phone in her hands and asked to cook her something to eat. Every time Kim rejected her attention in Eden, she thought that the earth was completely different in beauty, but it turned out to be mistaken. Today she saw that everyone around was admired by her appearance, and the girl was insanely glad of this. She decided to once again reconsider the video of her appearance on Earth. When asked by Kim where she learned to use a mobile phone, the moon replied that this was all thanks to the goddess Riemann, who blessed her earthly skills. The guy realized that the problems with this girl could not be avoided, and since the goddess blessed her for any skills, she could manage not only the phone, and this was scared by the guy. The Luna Levington was only interested in one question, whether Kim Siva was missing her while on Earth, because she was very missing him. You knew me how to answer the moon's question so as not to cause negative emotions in it, of course. It is pleasant for him that she appeared in Seoul, but that's all. If he shall try to evade a direct answer, then the moon will simply continue to waste his free time. Therefore, the guy said that he was madly bored and glad to see the moon, and they also need to go to the military base to find out if the girl's blessing on helicopters and planes is working. After the girl said that when Kim left Eden, demonic animals began to appear again in the northern part of the continent. They even reached the news that the king of demons was seen somewhere on the southern archipelago. Kim immediately became sad because the guy thought that he got rid of all demonic animals. Now he understood why Riemann was so busy. Then he had a logical question, why the goddess sent the moon to the ground, if in Eden such a tense situation? Well, the girl already more calmly replied that her duty is to help Dad, because it was he who saved Eden, so there is no need to feel guilty. Such words were very pleasant to hear, especially when they were from the beautiful girl of a warrior. Kim even smiled with pleasure and thanked the moon. The girl offered to relax a bit and drink some strong drinks. She terribly wanted to get acquainted with earthly Korean alcohol. Suddenly, Zion went into the room and greeted the guests quietly. The girl also immediately noticed that the moon was insanely beautiful. Inva, who entered Zion, immediately attacked Kim and began to scream at him, as one could not warn that the moon would have to visit them. The girl immediately called Inva Malaka, but Kimu was not to Kim, because only little Zion could be called Malaka. On these words, the moon only laughed and said that Kim also looks very cute when she begins to be jealous. The girl smiled radiantly again and said that she was very glad to meet the whole family of His Grace, and also asked to call her sister. Inva did not really want to call the moon a sister. He immediately liked this girl, and he did not plan to record her in his relatives. Sien, on the contrary, was insanely glad that she would have an older sister because living with two brothers was still the test for the girl. The moon promised the baby that they would definitely look and spend a lot of time together, like real sisters. Kim exhaled in relief, so that significant day came when his family met from the ground with Luna Levinton and Leo Ruman. I wanted such an idol to last longer, but this happens only in fairy tales. Demonic aliens again approached Seoul to turn the city into ashes. The soldiers could not defeat the monster that appeared in one of the regions of the country. It was necessary to call the help from the Department for Management of Abilities. At the scene was Chvi Sichin, an experienced warrior, how he could not cope with this evil spirits. If this continues further, then the influential and popular Goblin Guild will simply be destroyed, so it was urgent to ask for help to the Pope of the Order of the Goddess Riemann. Choi shouted that the soldiers retreated and informed the department faster, as well as Kim Siva about the attack of the monsters, and so far he tried to keep them. He considered himself an experienced warrior and understood that his duty to protect his team and only then think about his own interests. The only thing that was now needed was to hold out as long as possible until the help from the Pope in the department. At this time, there were many religions on Earth, but even those that no one had heard about before, such as the Order of the White Light, began to report about players who were able to use holy power. The Order of Riemann began to make a lot of efforts in the recruitment of players of the divine type, who chose Riemann as his deity. The Moon Levinton thanked the new arrivals for the fact that, or just a unit to the Holy Order of the Goddess Riemann. Kim was thinking that it was time to start the training of new members of their order for martial arts. In the crowd among the new arrivals, there was a boy named Sonwa. He arrived at the temple with his father and really wanted to get acquainted with the moon. The little boy approached Kim and Leo and completely expressed gratitude for the fact that they figured out magical gates. Kim Sevu looked for a long time at a boy who prayed and was not distracted for anything and thought that a good prophet would make him. The story of the Order of the Goddess Riemann on Earth is not too long, so Kim did not expect to see someone in the order of someone with such a pure faith. Leo approached the guy and asked to say at least a few welcoming words to the parishioners, because they really wanted to see Dad and hear his holy word. Kim, of course, agreed and read the whole sermon, which pleasantly surprised and pleased all those present in the temple. Then the guy went to the boy to get to know him better. He decided that he would not give false promises similar to other orders, but would act honestly. Instead of various deceptions and manipulations, they will teach the followers of the goddess to use and develop holy power in the temple. His Grace told those present that he was not here to show a miracle before them, but to show that he can help them once, because I am a miracle. If everyone will adhere to the laws and canons of the religion of the goddess Riemann, then the adherents of the order are waiting for happy and rich days. While Kim spoke a sermon, several warriors burst into the temple. They immediately ran to the Pope and said that they had to urgently talk. The frightened warrior approached Kim, and according to the tattoo on his shoulder, Siva realized that he was from the Guild of Goblins. The guy immediately fell to Kim and began to ask for help. He said that the leader of Choi was fighting monsters and is in a very difficult situation. Now Choi is in great danger because he is at the 0 point of Busan, and perhaps he was already saying goodbye to life, so the guy begs to help save his commander. There are 3 0 points on the territory of the Republic of Korea. One of them was in the temple, but it is already cleaned. There are 2 more left, the Devonian 0 point and another in Busan, which was the result of a large breakthrough. Right now, Kim Luna and soldiers from the Guild of Goblins were heading to a breakthrough point in Busan, which was very dangerous because it was in the city center. After they found out that the 0 point is connected with the dungeons located in other worlds, it appeared several times in Busan, and the Goblin Guilds allowed to choose which gates they would go to explore. It was not possible to close those gates, as it cost colossal money and human resources, which were already very few. Experienced players should have noticed that after the announcement of the update of the script, such gates began to open around the world, so they opened in Busan. But everyone was already accustomed to this and did not worry too much. About 2 days after arriving at the 0 point of bubbling at the Guild of Goblins, began with a problem. They received a message from Cho Sejin from the inside of the gates of the dungeon, reporting a problem that even a hunter of the highest rank could not cope with. The moon could not understand why the people of the earth drive these strange carriages. She would also like to ride such, but a little later. Kim noticed that the girl looked very much like an ordinary earthly resident. She bought herself a lot of fashionable clothes and even cosmetics. Leaving the car, Kim asked the soldier to lead him to the gates mentioned because it was necessary to rush in order to have time to save Choi. I didn't have to go for a long time. After a few minutes, they already approached the entrance to the dungeon. It was impossible to confuse it with something else. Kim had a familiar, but at the same time a new feeling. Now he understood why the head of the Guild of Goblin asked Kim Siva. The guy and the girl came close to the gate. They both understood what was happening now and what they had to face. As she did not want to admit what she sees now, but there was no other way out. In front of them was the holy land of heretics. Kim Siva already felt an unpleasant holy power from there, and he could not say anything good about this force. He would have to be definitely not easy. It seems that they were waiting for a rich night. Because new gates of chaos called the Holy Land of the Fallen Faith were discovered, it was necessary to go inside. The new task was quite complicated, but Kim understood that for its implementation he would receive a huge number of additional points, so he only went forward. Inside, the situation was not at all the same as he expected. It was not like Earth or Eden, it was like a different dimension. Kim became interested in what the world would be if someone had only one devastation on his mind. The warriors explained that this is how the dungeons opened by the guild, since this is a pseudo-space. The place here is much more than we could expect. The guild warriors were interested in whether Kim could quickly determine at what point of the dungeon their leader Choi Sichin is located. The guy's guy understood that if local holy power was based on the strength of the goddess Riemann, then it would be easy to find the head of the Goblin Guild. Well, this place was controlled by a completely different order. The moon was also puzzled, even temporarily stopped joking and was looking for any ideas that would help in the search for HVI. On Earth, there were no existing religions with such temples. Such young people saw for the first time, and this structure looked quite mysteriously. Siva thought that most likely it was the Holy Land of God from a different dimension. Someone who no longer has a name. And the guy was absolutely right. This monster had long lost his name. Everyone has long forgotten about him. It decided to return. Kim reflected that the holy power is the power of the true faith of a living being in someone or in something, so it cannot exist without life. But why holy power is felt in this place? And if they take this equation and attach to the current situation, they will receive an answer. Somewhere there is life here. Believer in God from a different dimension. Well, the guy did not have to think for a long time. Since terrible things began to happen in the dungeon, the young people were surrounded by ghosts with burning eyes. At that moment, the moon decided to joke and said that their worst fears are always embodied next to Kim. She did not hope for another. With every minute, the ghosts became more and more. It seemed that they were soaring in the air around the temple, but they were afraid to get closer to people. It seemed to Kim that he had already experienced such events in his life, and he was right, because this first happened 3 years after his arrival in Eden, when endless battles and an inexorable desire to go back to their family began to put pressure on him. Then the guy was worst. He, as then, thought whether the essence that is like the real God can simply take and die in an instant. Once in Eden, the goddess Riemann asked him if Kim Siva could kill her, and then he said nothing, not answering the question of his benefactor. Siva was offended by the goddess for the fact that for a long time she took him from the family, and of the most difficult moments accused her of everything. Then Riemann said that the gods such as her can exist only on condition that people like Kimu believe in them, and when they forget about them, they die. More than 7 years have already passed since that strange conversation, but Siva still could not understand at what stage such divinity ends. Now, being inside the gate of chaos, he thought that probably these ghosts at some stage failed their completion of divinity. The moon was slightly preoccupied with the situation. She had never seen monsters before, from which divine energy emanated. Kim has always adhered to the golden rule that it was impossible to judge the book on the cover. It was necessary to get to the bottom of the essence of the problem. He remembered the words of the goddess that absolutely everyone needs to show compassion, even to such monsters that they are in front of them. The guy began to get confused in his own departments. He no longer understood whether the saint could be called this energy, or is it a good deception. The moon Levanton came to her senses. She shouted that it was time to deal with these monsters, otherwise they would be able to get to the ground. She decided not to wait until Kim Siva gathering her thoughts and began to act independently, immediately using her mace. A little later, she nevertheless asked permission from His Grace to deal with monsters using her personal methods. Kim decided to leave the monsters to the moon and the soldiers' legionnaires, and he himself went in search of the head of the goblins Choi Sijin. But the girl drove off the soldiers and ordered them to accompany Kim. She did not like when outsiders interfered with her during the fights. Siva understood that it was simply useless to object to this girl, so he took the guys and went to the very center of the dungeon in search of Chua. Having a little going inside the cave, the soldiers suspected something was amiss. A crater appeared in front of them, and after it, the traces of Chue simply disappeared. Given the size of this crater, one could understand that the battle was cruel, and Kim felt the energy of the leader of the goblins here. Since there were no more traces, Kim decided to leave the guys near the crater and continue to go alone. without enduring anyone. He categorically refused the requests of the guys to take them with him, where he is sent. You can't enter the usual players, it is too dangerous. The passive skill of divine protection was neutralized by the holy barrier, and it turned out that there was a subspace in these gates. The guy warned the warriors so that they would not dare to follow him. He would find their leader Choi, figure out problems, and return after a few hours. It seemed that Siva fell into space without the power of attraction. The system said that the guy entered the barrier zone. His holy energy has now resisted the phenomenon of distortion, but it could well feel the presence of the energy of Choi Sijin. Finally, Kim saw the leader of the goblins, and he was not in his best condition. The man smiled and quarreled that Dad was not in a hurry. Siva also decided to defuse the situation a little and said that only desperate idiots can go into such a battle alone, and even joke at the same time. Then he rushed to free Choi Sijin, thinking that if he had been late for at least 10 minutes, then the man would not be saved. And all his vaunted by the best warriors of the guilds could not protect their commander, which is not the same in the best, to be honest. Choi began to make excuses. He could not subject the young players who had the first task, such a danger, and therefore ordered them to retreat. Kim noted that the resistance of the character and the level of nobleness of this person could only be envied. But now there was no time for praise. It was necessary to quickly solve the problem. Kim asked the man whether the one he was fighting against. Choi replied that he had heard only a voice who ordered him to obey him and serve only him. But the man, of course, did not listen. But other players listened, and now Choi is asking to save not him, but those who went to the call of this strange voice. The guild commander Goblin promised that he would give Kim the most valuable, his life, if he saves his stupid guys from imminent oblivion. Kim even laughed from such words. He did not need other people's lives. Then Choi said that he would become his most faithful servant for the rest of his life. The guy was simply amazed at this strong, bold, and slightly crazy person. Since he is here, he must save everyone. They will talk about payment for such a service later, and now it was necessary to move directly on the action, which Kim took up. The monster forcibly called on the dungeon's boss in the hope that this is how it could cope with the situation. They attacked a monster with a terrible cry that this is a cultist spawn for nonsense, how it dares to wash the brains, forcing people to trust himself. All that the monster wanted was to make people heretics that will serve him, and all this in order to preserve their divinity. People from the planet Earth, who have never encountered holy energy, cannot resist such terrible power, and therefore succumb to the monster. Choi shouted Siva so that he would not dare to kill this octopus yet, because it is not clear whether his warriors would be able to return to normal if he kills this creature. But the guy answered the leader of the goblin that so that people stop believing in the leaders of the cult, and their gods are quite simple, and he knows this method as his 5 fingers. You just need to use the overwhelming amount of holy power in order to be able to forever erase their existence from reality. While the leader of the Guild of Goblin tried to hold all kinds of demons and ghosts, Kim dealt with their leader and did it quite successfully. He encouraged Choi Sijin, saying that he was just a little left. He must find the root cause of the discovery and chaos and give her. After another 15 minutes of fierce battle, Kim Siva finally shouted that he had found a holy artifact, which was a symbol of divinity. It was a strong birthstone containing the birth of a certain god. Then the core of the dungeon of the Holy Land of the Fallen Faith was found. As a result, with the destruction of the nucleus, the terrible land of the Fallen Faith was forever purified. The task was completed successfully. Kim Siva received the promised award for completing the assignment. The holy artifact was updated, and the opportunity to use its points was obtained. This meant that he could exchange artifacts of other measurements for artifacts of the Remen order. Koseksin all this time tried to return to the norm of his warriors, who still continued to behave like real zombies. It was necessary to wake up. In Kim's head, the image of a little girl appeared, who stood near the mountain of stones and asked them to be happy. A little prayer for the girl did not come out of the guy from her head. Probably this was the very moment of the emergence of the god in whom she believed. Finally, the goblin warriors gradually began to recover. The guys did not understand what happened to them and where they were. Also, they could not remember what task they had to complete. And they were also frightened by the appearance of the leader of the guild, which looked mildly torn. He decided to mock the guys and pretended to be on the verge of life and death, which even scared the poor warriors even more. Kima was surprised by the fact that even in such difficult situations as this, the leader of the goblin does not lose his acute sense of humor and continues to joke as abnormal. The moon and soldiers who stayed with her did not force themselves to wait long. They did not endure, and after waiting, went after Kim. The girl with such force attacked his highway that she knocked the guy off her feet, but she did not even betray this, repeating all the time that she was glad to meet. I sent an urgent message that exactly 1 hour later this dungeon would disappear, and all players need to hurry to leave this location. Kimu was not as interesting as the god of a different dimension was born, but the fact that this place was once a holy land, complete hopes and dreams, this is too hard the end for them. Upon returning to the temple, the company decided to relax a bit and eat normally over the past 2 days, all damn tired of recent events. The leader of the Goblin Guild was in a good mood. Today he drank for his 2nd birthday and thanked his dad. Kim also managed to relax a bit and let go of the situation. He also tried to joke and listened with pleasure to the jokes of the Moon and Choi. The leader of the Goblin thanked his dad, because only thanks to him, all his warriors were able to leave the gates of chaos living. This is only the merit of Kim. But the guy replied that he simply did his work, freeing people from the fight of the cultist god, and he would save any other player who would be in the place of the leader. A few hours later, a dozen empty bottles of alcohol were left on the table, because the leader of Cho drank with huge doses. Kim even made a remark to him, because a man has a lot of injuries, and he is not treated, but simply floods his body with alcohol. Therefore, a new number of deities should arrive on the earth, and they need to be prepared to meet them. Kim had no doubt that among the arriving deities there would be those who would come to their measurement not with pure intentions. Evil gods are called, as a rule, those who carry devastation and harm earthly mortal people, but even in a fallen state they retain holy power. Holy and demonic energy cannot be united, so Kim has become really scary from the consequences when they all arrive to Earth. A player from the Goblin Guild ran to Kim. The guy was slightly excited and said that people from the Order of the White Longi had arrived at the dad. As it turned out, internecine wars were not going to end. Representatives of the Order wanted to talk with Choi Sijin. The leader of the Order immediately warned that if they are not listened to and begin to attack, then they will definitely strike a response. The leader of the Goblin Guild did not force himself to wait long and went forward, asking representatives of someone else's order why he needed him. Oddly enough, the leader of the Order of the White Lights was quite peacefully configured and said that he was very glad to meet such a hero as Choi. The guy introduced himself. His name was Shim Jinho. He is the vicar of the Pusan branch of the Order, and here he is in order to prevent a catastrophe. And when the guy asked Choi to reduce the hostility a bit, he immediately flared up. He was not used to solving problems peacefully. Kim was still standing and carefully watched the situation. He decided that he would intervene if the leader of the goblins began a real fight with the guests. As always, the situation was complicated by the moon, which came from nowhere. In her hands, she held her mace and was ready to enter into a fight at any moment. The girl warned the bold guest that jokes were bad, and one should courtly address both Chaiviva and the rest of their teams, not to mention the dad. From the arrivals, Kim felt a huge amount of holy energy. Each of them possessed impressive reserves of holy power. Considering the fact that holy power appeared on Earth not so long ago, it was obvious that each of them was a sincerely believing person. Finally, the guy said that they have information that the god of some unknown origin is again trying to attack the Earth. For some reason, Choi decided to joke about this situation and said that representatives of the White Radiance are almost seer. To which the guy replied that there was nothing ridiculous in this. Their god does not want anyone evil, therefore he awarded his followers the gift of foresight. The leader of the goblins still could not calm down. Now he did not like that there were so many representatives of someone else's order to meet with the dad. The young leader said that they did not want to quarrel, but only came to warn about danger and also offer cooperation. Kim did not like this. These people pretended to be in the world, but why was there so many representatives who own holy strength? If he and the moon had not ripened in time in the dungeon, then the leader of the goblins with all his team would disappear in this mysterious place. Cho Sitchin, in turn, reminded Vicar that only invited guests can take place on the territory of the operations conducted by the Order. The eyes of the head of the guild began to burn with unkind fire, and this meant that a little more, and a stupid, unnecessary fight would begin. Choi claimed that this brotherhood encroaches on the territory of his guild, and they do it very openly and illegally. They have already confirmed that the Dungeon of the Abyss was safely cleaned, that's all. They can turn around and go back. To avoid a brewing conflict, the young vicar said that probably the conversation would not work out, and they will come another time. Then the guy thanked Kim for his calm and constructivism, and then said that their diocese was very interested in his grace. Kim replied that he did not need excess attention. He has his own team and his own goddess. He is not interested in other faiths. But Vicarism insisted. He said that his Gperkia would be very happy if his grace accepted the invitation and paid a visit to his leadership. The next morning, the news came about both Riemann groups hated by the Order. The Coalition of the Awakened reported that the Order of the White Radiance would receive many advantages from it. Kim suggested anything, but he could not even fantasize such a nonsense. The coalition union with the Order of the White Longi was not part of his plans. Now Kim Siva was supposed to clearly think through the subsequent steps so as not to expose the followers of the Order of the Goddess of any danger. Choi recalled that after his salvation, he would faithfully serve the Pope and suggested better to find out about the Order of the White Longia. Kim, somewhere deep down, he had already regretted a little that he had saved the leader of the goblins. Although the man was excellent warriors, his obsession was already annoying. Cho Sitchin decided that now it was necessary to create an alliance between the Guild of Goblins and the Eagle of the Goddess Riemann. When asked by Kim why you need to do this and what the main function of this alliance will be, the man has not yet been able to answer exactly. When Choi left Kim's office, his secretary immediately knocked on him and smiled slyly. It seems he had a new business idea. Siva guessed, because the guy offered to create an alliance with goblins. This will help them sell a large number of bracelets with a magic stone. But the secretary argued that Choi Sitchin did not have to tell all the details and devote this vile man to all the details of the transaction. The guy also asked the Pope whether he was familiar with the activities of Yuseon, which is the largest conglomerate in the field of electronics. It turned out that the grandfather of the secretary is led by this company, and his younger brother is the head of the logistics department. Therefore, if you need to sell something or to crank up some dark fraud, then they are always happy to help. Since the company Yuseon beat one of the 5 largest in the country, such information was very tempting for Kim Siva. And the next minute, the guy said that the leader of Cho Sitchin was his younger brother and part-time member of the Yuseon family. From such information, Kim Siva climbed the eyes on the forehead. This mountain of muscles is one of the richest men in the country and even listed in Forbes. Choi did not deny the help from his family, but asked him to notice that he created the Goblin Guild, not asking Rodney. Kim already realized that it was necessary to deal with such a person, otherwise it could not be, so he immediately offered a man to cooperate. Like it or not, the leader of the Goblin Guild was the most strange millionaire, which Kim had to see in his life on Earth in Eden. His Grace decided to gather everyone in his office to hold a small meeting and discuss the most important current problems. Leo was the first at the meeting. Kim greeted all his subordinates and decided not to delay for a long time and immediately move on to the main issues. No one had a concept of what would be discussed, but all those present were extremely attentive and tuned to a constructive conversation. Finally, Kim announced his decision. He for a long time weighed all the pros and cons, but now, as a dad of the order, it plans to declare the Order of the White Lonja by their enemy. As the word heretic implies, this is the one whose beliefs go against their own. There were many gods in Eden. With some, the Order of Riemann was even in the Union. But then, in Eden, they had a common enemy, the King of Demons, and they fought with this monster with the goddess, uniting their strength. But now the goddess claims that faith is born not at fear, but at fidelity, and she does not want her children to go through suffering. Therefore, the Order of the Goddess decided that the coexistence with other orders, with the exception of some aggressive heretics, would be better for everyone. However, the heretics who harm ordinary residents of the earth were forced to stop the inquisitors of the Central Curia, and the goddess tells, this is a story for a reason. The moon immediately came into indignation, she asked, and where their headquarters is, she and Leo will burst there and wipe the floor with these heretics. But Leo was against such actions, because it went against the teachings of the order. Who wants to be respected, should respect others. The verbal skirmish between the moon and the archbishop began. The girl tried to convince the man and prove that these people did not deserve a living because they tried to kill the Pope. As Leo did not try to convince the girl, she nevertheless asked the dad to declare a sacred campaign on heretics to destroy them on an honest battlefield. Choi intervened in the conversation, who asked to join the holy war. In his opinion, it was a great chance to destroy stupid heretics. Kima began to mix this situation. His team probably played too much and forgot that it was a well-known religious organization. Therefore, Kim finally got up and said that, being the leader of the Order of Riemann, he has so far only announces the Order of the White Birth to the enemy. No one is going to unleash wars. When only to the Ministry of Council remained in Kim's office, he asked if they had made a hasty decision. Perhaps a misunderstanding occurred with the Order of the White Long. Indeed, the actions of the Order of the White Radiance were absolutely simple, but very suspicious for Kim, but they did not have clear evidence of their misconduct. However, if you think well what happened, we will not be Kim and the moon in the right place during the incident with enemies in Busan. The guys understood that if this happened, then people from the Order of the White Light would not have left. They would destroy the members of the Goblin Guild to achieve their goals. Let Kim even be sure that the organization was suspicious when it turned out that they knew about the gods from other dimensions. And what will happen if it turns out that the mysterious god of the Order of the White Lighting is the same hostile creature from a different dimension? The moon only nodded, let them have no evidence. But if His Grace considers these people its threat, then the whole team will follow its wise word. Good Evening was in some confusion. He was ashamed of his actions because he believed that it was the maintenance of the neutrality that would be the best option for its future channel. The girl decided to cheer up a little to Minsk because he had nothing to be ashamed of. On the contrary, his caution will soon bring them great benefit. While the moon reassured Mituber, Kim made a decision that he would no longer arrange group meetings with the participation of Minsk. He is too panicked. He repeated once again that the Order of the White Radiance is an enemy. They will stop all the contacts with him, including trading ones. The same applies to any organizations allied with him. Each of the team members had his opinion on the account of this decision, but in the end, everyone reconciled with the final decision of His Grace. The order must be recruited, so now you need to actively engage in the sale of magic bracelets. Leo said that they have about 500 such bracelets in their warehouse, so these reserves should be sold as soon as possible. Kim decided to show the jewelry of Choi Sejin, because it was with the help of his company that they were going to spread this product. This wonderful bracelet can help eliminate any chronic disease. Besides, it looks very presentable. But Choi is not used to believing the words, even if these are the words of the Pope himself. He decided to check the action of the bracelet right in Kim's office. The next moment, he took out his knife and made a small incision on his hand. Blood immediately came out of the wound. The bracelet had to solve this problem. Putting a bracelet into his hands, Choi began to watch how the wound was healed, and even a shram was left on his hand for a minute. The bracelet only strengthened the body's ability to self-enforcement, and after the exhaustion of magical energy, it would be just a beautiful decoration. Choi said that this is an invaluable find for his guild, because these bracelets will help his team recover after the battles. The increase in the survival of players has always been a big problem for any guild, because often the players died even from small injuries. The leader of Goblins said that he was interested in acquiring all the bracelets that are available, and no matter how much it will cost. Kim thought a little. He never set a price for bracelets, but decided that this was a great chance to earn, so he called the maximum. He told Choi that it would be nice if the leader of the Goblins bought all these bracelets. Everyone will cost 100,000 there. For Chu, the money was not a problem, so the man immediately agreed to such a price and said that he would like to quickly get his goods. As soon as the bracelets are with him, he will immediately transfer the entire amount entirely to the account of the Order of the Goddess Riemann and will wait for a new batch. Kim asked if this jewelry was not too high, to which Choi replied that it was even low. You can pay more if you want to survive after a serious wound. And then Kim decided that he would no longer be shy. He would significantly raise the price for the next batch of bracelets. Why didn't he think about the sale of bracelets before? Because he started such a business before, the guilds would have already made it a multimillionaire. Men shook hands on each other in concluding a profitable transaction for both parties and discussed subsequent transactions. When the leader of Choi left the office, Kim told the rest of the team about a favorable transaction. The Moon was amazed. It seems that they accidentally were able to solve all their financial problems in one fell swoop, thanks to bracelets. Leo gave good advice. He believed that it is impossible to send all the magic stones to the manufacture of bracelets. They will be useful for other purposes. And Kim thought that they should hire a special person who would manage their finances, otherwise they will soon be confused. The Ministry of Council will be supported by Kim's decision, recalling that their channel is also at the peak of prosperity. They really have a lot of money. After they launched a live broadcast of the Moon's battle with the Grand Tiger Guild, the ratings of the channel are simply stunning. Such a person as the Moon easily beat all the records for ratings and views, because she was not only an excellent warrior, but also a damn beautiful girl. Soon they will become much more popular than the Order of the White Radiance. They will soon simply give up this miserable organization on the internet. Kim said that he was going to arrange a stream on the official channel of the Order of the Goddess Riemann, and on it he will officially introduce the Moon and Leo. It would also be excellent on the air to show a joint training with the Department for Management of Abilities. This will attract new subscribers. But as soon as the Ministry of Ministers wrote an ad on the network, something terrible happened. The department was attacked by unknown forces. Someone decided to attack the department, and it seems their intentions were very serious. Kim realized that they had another problem. On the roof of one of the skyscrapers of Busan stood a man in a long, dark cloak. He expected a visitor. In his opinion, the situation in Busan was resolved. He was sure that they were all aware of the existence of a divine being from another dimension. The man suggested that on the 38th floor of the Department of Management of Abilities is someone who can become a new reincarnation of the King of Demons, and he wants to see him. He gives him strength, even more than those that he owns now, and he will reach a level that he could not achieve on his own, since the Order of the White Lines was able to provoke Kim Siva. Now it is time for them to make their move. Kim dawned that the moment of the explosion in the department was broadcast on their live, but it was on their hands. The followers of Raymond love this. The Ministry of Council said that the department was reliably protected, and this is the first incident in history when such a building was attacked. This news was a real shock not only for Minsk, but for the whole team. No one could believe that some terrorists could attack the department. The next moment, the news appeared that the second building of the department was attacked by an unknown organization, and it was no longer a joke at all. Someone seriously wanted to harm the reputation of the department, and Kim was very worried about Donchik's condition. On the phone, the head of the department said that high-ranking players of the magic class participate in the attack and asked Siva to help with the evacuation of civilian. But Donchik did not have time to finish. He was suddenly interrupted in half a word, and Kim realized that a man was in real danger. In the tube, he heard someone grab the Donchik. Then it was heard how the man's phone fell to the ground and the connection was simply interrupted. For some reason, Kim was 100% sure that the commander of the Donshik was attacked by some woman. There was definitely female energy near him. Minsk suggested that it could be Sika. It was a high-ranking awakened one, which always uses blue flame as a weapon. She is a monster of the highest rank. She received this status 3 years ago. This woman destroyed the whole guild during the raid and then fled to another country. It seems that it was she who arranged a terrorist attack. For some reason, the moon was only pleasing. Perhaps the girl wanted to measure her strength with her new rival. Leo said that there are some strange things. He feels Manu emanating from the second building of the Department for Management of Abilities, and this could not be. Kim listened to his sensations, a little weakly, but he also felt the presence of mana, but they could not be mistaken with Leo. At first he thought that behind all this terrorist attack is the Order of the White Long, but when meeting with their people, he felt exclusively holy energy from them, which means someone else was involved here. Leo, along with the moon, decided that now the most important thing is to clear the way for his grace, and it is they who should do this. Both warriors knew the right choice, going to the ground. For a long time they did not stand in the forefront during the battle. Looking at this friendly couple, who was absolutely sure that he would be cleaned with the passage very quickly and without any problems. Then the guy gave the order to Minsk and asked him to help the department with the evacuation of the residents of the district. He also asked his friend to be vigilant and protect himself. On the upper floors of the Department for Management of Abilities, a real chaos was created. There were many wounded employees in the corridor. All of them needed help. An unknown girl with blue hair lay on the floor, and a strange blue light poured around her. The stranger went to the Commander Donshik and looked contemptuously at the man, said that she was very bored. There is no fun. If she initially knew that there were exceptionally ordinary people here, then she would never have appeared in such a place. Her partner said that in this building there are more ordinary people than awakened, but government aroused there are almost no those who could compete with her. The girl reminded that their goal is extremely sleeping. They need to take a vessel from the imprisonment room on the top floor. This is their whole task. But Lee Psyche once again reminded that it was all too banal. She would like some show, or a normal fight with a worthy opponent. She did not see anything bad in craziness, because it is better to be crazy than a weakling, and all this happens only because her partner is very weak. Then the girl raised the Donshik's certificate from the ground and smiled slightly. It was strange that the department commander was not in the main building. But she was interested in completely different. Since this man is the boss, he must definitely know where Kan Chie Khan and was one of the last hunters of the highest rank, serving exclusively to the government. Donshik did not understand why this crazy player was needed. Donshik said that he has no idea where this player is located, how to know information about high-ranking hunters to an ordinary government worker. The girl definitely did not believe him and threatened the murder, but the man explained that most of the officials know nothing of their department. Lee Sika laughed in the face of a man and said that then she had no reason to leave the head of the department. She no longer needs him. Donshik understood that this crazy one was not joking at all and was already preparing to say goodbye to life and be somewhere in a different beautiful dimension. But then something unimaginable happened. It turned out that Lee Sika did not affect the Donshik at all, and the girl could not do anything about it. From hopelessness, the girl said that in this case, she would take this man for interrogation. They already attacked the department, so that the abduction of the civil servant would not change anything. The guy recalled that they have no free time. They need to take a vessel from the 39th floor, so this man is just better to pick up with him. The guy also said that Kim Siva was already right in front of the department's building, and it is better for them to finish all their affairs before his arrival. But the girl was only pleasing to the girl. Suddenly, a terrible sound sounded, and a sharp blow followed him. The guy fell and released from the hands of Donshik. Leo and Luna appeared in the corridor. The archbishop calmly said that Dad ordered to kill everyone who would resist. The moon laughed. She only expected that someone would begin to resist, and she could even children her energy somewhere. Leo, as a real minister of the church, said that he would give everyone the opportunity to repent, but then he would kill him anyway. Finally, Sika was able to see the friends of Kim Siva. These two managed to bypass all the warriors whom she left on the lower floors. The girl's eyes burned with crazy fire. She was tuned in a colossal battle, and of course she was sure that she would definitely win. She began to accumulate her blue fire. He was so powerful that she easily melted any iron. Now she will apply it on the representatives of the order. But the bad luck, the archbishop and his companion remained alive and healthy. The flame of blue fire simply did not act on them. Outside, whether she remained calm, she did not want to show her panic. She had never had to disgrace like that. In response to a blue fire, the moon raised its hand and released a clot of divine energy right in the direction of an abnormal girl. She flew straight to the wall. She did not expect at all that the moon had so much strength to cope with her blue flame. Now she simply did not know what to do next. The moon laughed because she warned this impudent girl that her very first natural action was to be distance. And why did that idiot who gave Lee Sika man did not warn her about how the holy power of other gods acts on her? For so many years, it was already necessary to learn one simple truth, that the holy divine power and mana are poorly combined in one space. And now the moon is ready to hear how this stupid girl screams and asks her for mercy, but she will still think about her mercy well. Lee Siki was simply discouraged. She received a blessing, as then ordinary hunters of the highest rank could defeat her so quickly. In addition, this healthy man in the priest's clothes is already that time continues to pursue them, and even the most trained warriors cannot do anything with him. But there was no time for thought, so the stranger went to the cloak on the 39th floor to pick up what they arrived here for. There was a special detention camera before sending the detainees awakened to prison. They were brought here for investigation. Given the circumstances that were not in their favor, it was important for him to get this vessel at all costs. His guys were already waiting at the entrance to the desired floor. The guy understood that they already had a vessel. Now he just needed to go back through an open portal. The team said that some problems had appeared. The fact is that an emergency shutdown system was suddenly activated. The leader asked if they managed to find and take the vessel, and after a second, he already saw him, but he was in a terrible state. He felt a strong malice that emanated from a guy vascular. Now it was necessary to use a teleport sweat to deliver it to the leader. The leader sent all the others to the roof of the department, where they will be able to take advantage of the magical circle and return back to their reality. The leader simply forgot to tell his guys that he had prepared a small surprise for them, and they will receive it after a few minutes. The surprise was that the magic circle on the roof was a circle of self-destruction. As soon as it would enter it, a powerful explosion would occur. Only he should survive, and Lee Sika. But it seems that this arrogant girl could not cope with the task and did not stop the friends of Kim Siva. However, now he needs to think about the guy on his shoulders, but not about Sai. If he can escape, then he will take care of everything later. The order of the goddess Riemann remained an obstacle in his way, but he will do everything possible so as not to hear Siva about Kima anymore, not about his team. Kim Siva himself appeared on the path of the villain. The guy asked if the leader of his people, who will simply explode on the roof, and everything only for the opportunity to escape. Now Kim finally realized that the guy on the back of the leader is the vessel of the King of Demons, who allows him to call the King of Demons to Earth. Siva continued to laugh. These fools spent so much effort, time, and people, and everything turned out to be in vain. Suddenly, the guy on his back raised his head, and the next moment he began to behave like a real zombie. It turned out that the vessels of the King of Demons usually received their strength by devouring their relatives. Kim was generally surprised why such a dangerous creature as the vessel of the King of Demons was kept in the building of the department, where there are a lot of peaceful people. The next minute, the king's vessel generally brutally and attacked Kim. Terrible claws appeared on his fingers, and madness shone in his eyes. There was a process of reincarnation of the King of Demons. A mortal creature close to the demons, influenced by the king, contributed to this. In order to correctly start the process of reincarnation, the vessel of the King of Demons must begin to demonstrate signs of humanity loss. One of these signs was cannibalism. As the vessel performs evil deeds, it becomes more and more. The regeneration of the vessel took place very terribly. It looked like a real monster. But Kim did not scare at all. This guy did not kill enough people to become a real demon. It seems he could not even control his thoughts properly. The passive skill of the will of destruction defined this goal as an evil one. So Kim will not be surprised at all if this guy shines a life sentence. Siva played with this boy. Like with a child, he could stop him using only one left hand. It seemed to the guy that in this bastard there was still a small drop of humanity, because holy power usually acts on demons much stronger. Kim told the guy that he had to run away when he still had the opportunity, but now everything was lost. But to surprise, the guy was much smarter and more agile than he thought, had to apply more strength. The vessel could not calm down in any way. He understood that he was already going to an end for him, but he was still not going to give up. The fact that this guy was a vessel of the King of Demons too much motivated him. In rare moments, he considered himself immortal. The battle was too fierce. None of the parties wanted to give up, but both of them understood who would be the winner. Kim warned the guy that his fragile claws would not even be able to scratch the holy barrier of the Pope, even if he was not trying. Holy energy is the opposite of mana. Moreover, a significant difference in strength was between Kim and the vessel. And now His Grace Kim Siva decided that it was time to teach a good lesson to this stupid and arrogant boy. Without unnecessary fluctuations, Kim approached the vessel directly and raised it with one hand above the ground. The vessel even stopped resisting. He did not have the strength to do so. Strange purple energy enveloped the whole body of the vessel from head to toe. It seemed that she simply wanted to strangle it. The vessel had to choose the opponent in his strength. This guy did not learn anything after Kim beat him in Eden. He will still have to get to the King of Demons because he will not forgive him the death of his vessel, but this will happen someday later. With an increase in the level of holy power, the passive skill of the holy fire was activated. It was this skill that Kim used to deal with the vessel. Standing near the department, Leo Ruman watched how mana began to gradually dissipate. It meant that Kim Siva solved the problem. Using the divine energy of the goddess Riemann, Kim made it clear to all the dark forces that over time they themselves would cause their fall. Leo decided to climb the floor to Kim and inform him that they and the moon were able to stop the heads on the roof, as well as deactivate the circles of dark magic. The magical circle used the human body to activate a powerful explosion. If they had not stopped them in time, then the explosion would destroy the entire building. It turned out that the King of Demons was too cruel. Leo also recalled the battle with the King of Demons in Eden. Such an event was difficult to erase from memory. Kim poured out a little ash from his palm, which contained a piece of reincarnation of the King of Demons of Anger. It was a way to call Satan to this world. The second edition of the Department for Management of Abilities was attacked precisely because of this, because of the reincarnation of the King of Demons. Leo's eyes climbed on the forehead. The reincarnation of the King of Demons appeared. This means only one thing, that there are many followers of demons on Earth. Reincarnation acts like the prophet of a religious order, and people often, in their inexperience, can confuse a believer with a demon. There are only 7 demons, and Satan is only one of them. At first, the Order of the White Longia, now the followers of the demons. In any case, Kim will need to find them all. Therefore, Kim began to ask the Archbishop in great detail about whether one of the attackers survived. If so, then they need to be interrogated. Leo replied that they managed to capture about 70% of the attackers, while the rest said goodbye to their lives due to the fragility of their bodies. Kim Siva once again reminded the Archbishop that he was a religious special and cannot simply take and break his enemies in half. The guy hoped that the Moon Leviton was also capable of capturing at least a few dozen prisoners. Besides, it was suspicious that the girl was nowhere. But only Kim remembered the moon, how she immediately appeared in the corridor of the building. On her shoulder she carried Lee Siki's well-known Lee. Stepping closer, the girl just threw Lee to the floor, like a doll, and said that she brought an interesting gift to the guys. Lee Sika was those whom Kim was looking for a very long time, because she was a real magician. The guy still did not believe that the moon was able to catch her. The girl lost her parents because of magicians. If Lee Sika disappointed her in battle, she killed. Kim Siva thanked the girl for the perfectly completed work, and she only nodded and said that it was fun and not at all difficult. She was generally interested to join the battle with the representative of the magical world. As a result, the moon was much stronger. Donchik finally joined the guys. He was slightly rumpled, but very joyful, because he was again saved his life. The head of the department thanked Kim personally for the fact that the guy reacted correctly and arrived in time with the team to the scene. But Kim replied that he was not necessary to thank him, because this is all the blessing of the goddess, and there would be nothing without faith in the members of the order in its strength. The Donchik simply does not yet realize that his faith in the goddess is so strong that it allows you to create miracles around. Lee Sika, lying on the floor, began to move. Then the girl began to make some strange sounds. At first no one could understand what she was talking about. When the guys listened, they realized that they did not leave the hope of killing all the representatives of the faith of the goddess Riemann, because he considers them real weaklings. She asked to stop standing in the way from the purifiers, because such religious boobs as the heirs of Riemann could not stop them. They simply have no chance. Kim just laughed a girl in the face, as some stupid band of bandits can call themselves cleaners. It sounds and really funny. The moon could not stand it. She grabbed this abnormal and threw her with such force that she did not even have time to figure out what happened. Kim shouted that he still wanted to ask this girl about a lot, as for the King of Demons. But the moon said that she really wanted to teach this fool. The guy thought that the moon was very reminiscent of someone well-known who was called Chve Sichin. When Lee Sika came to his senses, Kim asked a question. He was interested in who the cleaners are and what their true goals are. The answer was followed immediately. Their goal is civilian without abilities and players who do not use abilities. The girl said that they do not need a rabble that is not able to use abilities. In the current world, there is no need for such. That is why they call themselves cleaners. They were chosen, and therefore are the best in all dimensions. It was too unpleasant to listen to. These people sacrifice without problems those who are weaker and cannot arouse their abilities. Kim even felt sorry for this group of sick and miserable fanatics, in whom a complex of superiority simply sharpened. Donchik suggested that the department has a spy, since these villains learned from somewhere that the reincarnation of the King of Demons would happen here. The prisoner on the 38th floor was called Pak Dry. He was 16 years old, and he woke up in the last May. At the same time, he attacked and killed 2 other awakened students of the academy. They say that this guy is already guilty of many other crimes. The department received it only 2 days ago, after it became clear that the usual prison would not hold it. Probably then the information leak occurred. According to Kim, this boy was supposed to receive a lifelong prison for the awakened. Someone influential stood up for him. The order planned to tell the people that the prisoner on the 38th floor was a victim of an attack. This will become a real sensation. There was no way back to the vessel of the king of demons. Then it was a matter of Donshik, but he did not know what to do with the kid, who became the king of demons. Then it turned out that Lee Sich lost consciousness. Alona did not know what to do with this girl, but Kim offered to take her hostage. They will take all the hostages to the temple of the goddess Riemann, and there will already officially interrogate everyone. Finally, the minister himself came up with a connection, who reported that the demons or the forces on which they had an influence were behind this operation. It was difficult to believe everyone in this, but Kim Siva himself suspected that this was the real truth. 5 years ago, after the opening of interspatial gaps on Earth, absolutely everything became possible, so now you should not be surprised at such incidents. The minister said that they accepted this and continued to adapt, and those who could not simply became dust. This also concerned himself, who was surprised that a person without abilities was so adapted to the era of change. He has a certain aura that is very suitable for the position of the minister. Thanks to precisely people as the minister, the complex of superiority of stupid terrorists seemed even more funny to Kim. Then the guy told the man that their order plans to interrogate Lee Sika, one of the terrorists who participated in a recent attack. Then Kim was silent for a while. He did not know how to voice his most important request to the minister. It was too important and too delicately. From now on, if the Department for Management of Abilities receives information related to demons or King of Demons, he would ask to share such information with the order. The minister was not against such obligations, but warned that organizations could ask for information about the Riemann order in return. Who agreed to such a deal? If someone has information about the reincarnation of the King of Demons, then let this someone know that the Order of Riemann will always help at an hour of need. Maybe at least in this way, Kim Siva will be able to receive information before the problem goes too far. The minister promised that he would control this situation, but since the help of the order can cause unnecessary rumors, they plan to find another way to solve this problem. It seems that negotiations with the minister were structurally and quite positive for the order of the goddess Riemann, Kim. This reassured a little. Then the guy decided to dial the moon and ask the girl how the interrogation of the terrorist Lee Sika is moving. The network appeared that the recent terrorist attack of the otherworldly forces on the building of the department ended 12 dead and 52 people were injured. Kim thought they were just lucky that the shooting was carried out all this time. It was amazing how it was possible to minimize the number of victims and whether the goddess Riemann knew about it. For a minute, the guy stopped and tried to mentally call his patroness to the conversation. He concentrated all his energy and sent her to Eden. But Kim never received an answer. Perhaps the goddess Riemann at that time had things much more important than those that took place in Seoul. Having reached the room where the interrogations were held, Kim found out that Lee Sika was already ready to cooperate with the order of the goddess. Although she knows how to use magic with nested mana, she could not say anything useful. The one who was near her, the mask, is the head of the team. Kim informed the girl that her partner was gobbled up by the reincarnation of the King of Demons, so she better be more accommodating and tell the whole truth. Or mention that she received her abilities abroad. Most likely it was in China. There is a group from which the purifiers came out. They have supernatural abilities, but their names are not named. The moon was sure that even the heads of the branches did not know the location of this group, and the girl was ready in search. But Kim absolutely did not support the girl's decision. He could not imagine how she could cross the borders of neighboring countries with a weapon in her hands. Leo recalled that the 3 East Asian countries are always wary of each other, and they cannot go there physically. Kim made a decision until they are called. They will not be able to do anything because they equate to nuclear weapons, and they will lead the border to the cross. The moon was, and further protested, she did not understand why they could not equalize everything to the ground and thus get to another country. All hope was at the archbishop. It was he who could at least somehow influence the course of thoughts of this fearless red-haired furia. Kim carefully looked at Lee Sika, who pretended to be lost again, but in fact carefully listened to the conversation of friends. The guy informed the terrorists that henceforth all superpowers would be eliminated, and she will be transferred to the department. She did not expect such a cruel decision in relation to herself, because Kim is the leader of the religious order, so she must be able to forgive. The system said that, through the effect of the will to destroy evil, the player Sika will be condemned by fairness, that is, it will lose system rights. She told Kim that people without abilities are not needed on this earth. Well, now she herself would have to survive all this. Stupid Sich still could not believe that Kim was not joking at all. He cannot do this even with his enemies, because it is considered a dad. But gradually her terrible world plunged into impenetrable darkness and collapsed on small dark pieces, and then only the abyss awaited her. Leo complained that he had many more work on Earth than it was in Eden. At first the Order of the White Light, now here are cleaners. Kim could not even argue with a friend. If they continue to face different countries in the current state, then the Order will have problems. They definitely need to increase the influence. Soon the Order will have candidates for priests and knights. When the time comes, the moon will teach knights, and Leo will take care of priests. In order for more people to join the Order, something that will qualitatively accelerate the growth of forces. It is interesting whether it is possible to get something through abilities or objects. If you think carefully, that is, the artifact that the team received for the victory over God of a different dimension, for some reason everyone forgot about it. Using the team, the call of the holy artifact, the Order will be able to call one random artifact to the Earth, but the system chooses it itself. The Order of the Goddess Riemann had many holy artifacts, but in fact they did not bring any benefit, and Kimu very much would like to get something worthwhile this time. Therefore, the guy turned to the team and urged them that hour to start praying the goddess to take pity on them and send a normal artifact. All the three of us very much hoped that the prayer would work, and the goddess Riemann would finally pay attention to them, and the poor man would regret them. Finally, Kim pressed the button in choosing an artifact and hoped that he would fall out at least the bracelet of the covenant, which contains the power of the Pope, but not some nonsense. The goddess had not helped him for a long time, and the guy hoped greatly that at least this time she would not joke and would do what he actually asks. The system reported that the next artifact was sent to Earth, and a branch of the undertaking dropped into Kim's Siva, which looked like an ordinary stick. The moon generally asked Kim what kind of toothpick was and how they can use it in the fight against dark forces. Leo said that he feels a little holy power emanating from the branch, but it is too little, so this artifact is unlikely to help them much. But at the next moment, the branches began to proceed a bright and very strong energy radiance, and Leo realized how wrong he was. The archbishop immediately fell to his knees and began to pray to the goddess for the fact that she showed her kindness and sent a branch of initiative to the ground. As it turned out, this precious artifact, which the Order owned, disappeared about 500 years ago. Even the most experienced players could not find it. In the distant past, when Riemann only appeared in Eden, she promised mortals peace and prosperity in exchange for their faith, blessing them with one large tree. Later, it was this tree that became the sacred plant of the Order of the Goddess Riemann. Thousands of people came to him to pray. But once, about 500 years ago, the forces of the King of Demons were burned in a sacred tree during the war. Due to the surprise of the misfortune that had happened, everyone could only watch how it was burning. The defenders of the tree tried to extinguish the fire, but could not. But then one brave warrior broke off the still living branch of the sacred tree, and now it, undertakings. The sacred tree will cleanse the holy energy of the nearest land and make it more saturated, and also increase the regeneration of all nearby. They say that it was because of this effect that it once stole thieves that managed to get into a sacred place. Now the branches returned to the Order of the Goddess, and it had to be put in the garden near the temple. It was necessary to choose the right place. They walked around the building for a long time until they found, in their opinion, the most beautiful place for such an artifact as undertakings. Since Riemann owns the gift of foresight, maybe she knew that it would be exactly so. Kim could not resist this. As soon as the branch was placed in the ground and politically water, something incredible happened. An energy pillar formed around it, which went straight to the sky. And an hour later, a small tree grew out of a simple, ordinary branch, which also emitted energy light and was no longer like a strange stick. Now Leo understood why this tree was called sacred, although it was only a seedling so far. But the archbishop recalled that it seemed like a certain holy beast that would have to guard the sacred tree was still mentioned, and this beast finally appeared. It was a huge white cat with a fluffy fur coat and large blue eyes. The animal looked nice enough. The moon suggested that this cat must have been a holy beast. She liked this option. The system informed Kim that the holy beast recognized him as its master. Now he will grow along with the sacred tree. In other words, the sacred tree will grow with the Order, and this is very cool, and the cat can be taken to your home. Inva and Zion always said that they wanted to get a cat, but both were allergic to cats. Kim hoped that the sacred animal would not cause allergies. They still come to the temple every day, so there will be no problems if the cat will go there and back with them. The system again sent a message that 10,000 points were used to buy the Paladin Barracks building, thus the rank of Paladin was unlocked. There was no sense to wait anymore, so Kim told the team that they are already starting to teach knights and priests today. They do not have time for rest, they need to develop the Order, and Kim has a working day for today. He waved his friends with his hand, hugged a white fluffy cat, and headed for the exit from the territory of the temple. On the way, the guy decided to call his brother and sister and inform them that they were waiting for them at home, a very pleasant, soft, and fluffy surprise. But Inva was ahead of him, said that they also have a huge surprise, and to be precise, their grandmother is already on the plane and flies to Seoul. The attention of all subscribers was attracted by a certain huge building located in the independent city of Sijan. On one of the floors, there was a conversation between two men that in connection with the appearance of a monster of the rank of disaster, who is called Yamato Orochi, near the shores of Miyagi, you need to urgently send your awakened one. One of the men objected that the monster of the disaster class appeared in a foreign territory, and it is very strange that it was their help that they were requested. His interlocutor replied that America plans to send Aiden Howard, known under the pseudonym Barbarian, to perform the operation. It was a terrible warrior who had seen a lot in his path, returning to Earth 3 years ago, which spent 12 years in continuous battles. After the rank of an abnormal rank, charlatans began to appear everywhere on the planet, and Howard called to the battle of anyone who called himself an anomaly. Those who in their frivolity lied about their rank were immediately destroyed by Barber. It turned out that the Americans requested Barbara, Japan requested Kim Seva. Now they want to feel the first Korean abnormal awakened. And the opinion of these two people delivered, probably no one will ask. The government decided everything for them. Unlike China or America, they did not have ways to control Kim Seva, so they decided that you just need to ask directly. If it is not possible to control, it is necessary to conclude a deal, so the man decided that he should personally pay a visit to Dad. The minister had enough reason to say that he simply wants to express his gratitude to the hero who defends his people. One of the employees asked the minister who, in his opinion, would win if Aiden Howard fights Kim Seva. Without hesitation, he replied that, in his opinion, without any doubt and by a wide margin, the Pope of the Order of Riemann would win. Kim finally got home and in once decided to simply lie down on dongua and TV. He heard that yesterday on the banks of Japan, a monster of the rank of national disaster suddenly appeared. He was called Yamato Orochi. The Japanese government announced an urgent evacuation of coastal regions and sent a request for help to neighboring countries. America has already sent Aiden Howard to Japan, but all experts argue that these events gave the U.S. government the opportunity to test the real abilities of Kim Seva. The guy even moved to eat. Inva suggested that since the head of the department did not call Kim, so far everything is in order. But Kim would not be a dad of the Holy Order of the Goddess if he had not been sure that he had new serious problems. In order to at least somehow calm down, he called a cat to him, whom he called a Snowball, and began to stroke him gently. The animal quickly got used to the apartment, and now each of the family members fought for the cat to sleep with him in bed. Inva was insanely pleased that this sacred cat does not cause an allergic reaction, not from him, not with his sister. The cat could even eat with the guys from one plate. They allowed him to, since he was a sacred animal. Kim told his brother that, if necessary, the animal can protect them, because the cat is able to cope with any awakened, weaker than the rank of Seva. Because of all these events, the guys forgot about the main thing, that their grandmother was already on the way to Seoul. It would be necessary to meet her normally. Inva immediately warned that he would be at work. The channel requires a lot of attention, so the grandmother's meeting remains in Kim, so that his brother does not change his mind and does not force him to go to the airport. Inva decided to quickly run away from home to work. Kim noticed that after he returned to the ground, his brother became much happier. His eyes again began to shine with joy and optimism. It must have been very difficult for him, because he alone took care of his grandmother and sister. However, when she will return, there would be too little space left, so you need to prepare for the move. Gathering quickly, he went down to the car to go to the airport for his grandmother, but at the entrance he was waiting for a surprise. Below stood the head of the department and a bunch of incomprehensible people, and all of them were waiting for Kim Seva. Donshik said that they themselves could take Kim's grandmother home, and the guy should not take care of such trifles. In total, I realized that it would not be possible to refuse. Donshik and the escort team will go to the airport with him. The car on which the Donshik arrived looked strange enough, probably because it was super wide. Kim laughed and said that, judging by the car, there should be at least the president of the country inside. And the guy was not mistaken. In the back seat, the current president of the Korean people, Shinhwa, really sat. Kim was speechless for several seconds. He expected anyone, but not the president of the country, a man who occupies the highest position, which an official could be elected. Ordinary people can only dream of a meeting with the president, and Kim even managed to ride with him in the same car on the way to the airport. Kim understood that this whole situation was definitely not by chance. There were suspicions that this would somehow be connected with Japan. Indeed, the president himself said that their meeting is not accidental, and it will be good if he knows about her as few people as possible. The president turned out to be a very friendly and ordinary person. Thanks to his interesting sense of humor, he was able to receive support for a wide range of civil servants. The man briefly talked about what Kim already knew about from the news. The Japanese government needs the help of the Korean side. The U.S. government asked Korea to include the awakened Kim Seva in the list of soldiers they should send as reinforcements. But according to the law of the country of Korea, the abnormal awakened may be mobilized exclusively within the territory of his country of residence. It was extremely clear that according to the law, Kim could not participate in operations of other countries, but now the president is asking him about that. The president said that the United States sent its awakened Aiden Howard, who is called the Readers of the Anomalies. If Kim Seva, he will be able to defeat this player in battle, then he will rightfully be called one of the strongest anomalies in the world, approved by the U.S. government. Kim was even at hand. He knew very well that thousands of foreign spectators were watching his channel. The president encouraged Kim, said that the monster has no chance, since two strongest players on Earth are heading for him. And the president is also confident that it is precisely the representative of Korea, Kim Siva, that will receive the final victory. He will certainly destroy Barbara. He turned to Kim, because for a long time politics and religion went hand in hand, because both those and those receive power from the approval of the people. After the death of Grandmother Kim began to actively travel around the world, and what else was she to do? When he found out about this, he was not seriously scared, how his granny at that age could dangle around the world on his own. But when the woman heard about the death of her parents, she immediately returned to Korea to take care of the guys. By what I was waiting for the landing of the aircraft, bright memories from childhood associated with his beloved grandmother surfaced in his memory. The woman always told him that their family has a real talent to get into various kinds of troubles. And she also taught her grandchildren to never give up, said that even the most difficult problem has a solution. In other words, Kim's grandmother was still that unique person. If she decided to fly to the United States, nothing could stop her. In her youth, she took care of her grandfather. After an accident with her parents, she took care of chemistry and younger ones. She was always a busy person. While the guy was thinking, the grandmother finally appeared at the end of the corridor. She looked just stunning, and Kim did not immediately recognize her. She quietly approached the guy and greeted. Kim Marashka ran down his back when he heard such a native and forgotten voice. But the granny decided not to fall into sentiments. Unnecessary tears and emotions are not at all. Finally they met, and then everything will be as before. The woman even took off the sunglasses to better see her granddaughter, whom she had not seen for more than 10 years. After that, the woman gave a normal slap to her grandson and said that it was possible to convey at least some news from Adam and not be silent for 10 years. They suggested that the granny be hugged at least for the sake of decency, but she said that this was useless. It is better to get out of the airport and go home. The guy blurred in a smile. He recognized the habits of his grandmother. For so many years, the woman has not changed at all. Inva and Cien reacted to the return of Kim as a real miracle. But it was not worth thinking that the granny would react in the same way. She simply began to ask her grandson how he lived in a different dimension, how the life of Eden and earthly life differs. The guy specified a little about the features of the paradise garden and then said that he had finally found his place in religion. Kim told his grandmother that he had already built a temple in Seoul in honor of his goddess. If a woman wants, he would make an excursion for her. Grandmother nodded, said that she was proud of her grandson. She was aware that Kiev could finally clear the 0 point. It seems that since their last meeting, her grandson became a real great man, and this pleased the woman. Finally, she hugged him and said, they will assume that he finally paid for his disappearance and all her experiences. Kim exhaled with relief. Finally, the granny forgave him. She was not angry, and now everything will fall into place. The grandmother said that she had returned to Korea not alone. A friend flew with her, but the airport workers took her somewhere. Grandma's friend simply dreamed of getting to know the legendary Kim of everything, so the woman did not figure out anything better than to bring her to Korea. And then Kim remembered that the president said that he should also meet someone at the airport, and the granny's girlfriend increased the airport employees. He looked at his grandmother and once again asked her who her friend was and for what purpose she flew to Seoul. After the airport, the grandmother really asked Kim from the goddess Riemann to the temple of the goddess. She was interested in what a grandson built for the building. Already in the temple, the woman met with the Archbishop and Moon. She thanked Kim's friends for his all-purpose support. Both the Moon and the Archbishop were just delighted with Kim's grandmother. That's who the savior of Eden was a success. The girl said that a woman was more like Aunt His Grace than a grandmother. She looks very young and stylish. The woman immediately liked the friends of her grandson. These young people were kind and open. They blew a positive from them. The Moon said that they are trusted advisors to his overwhelming, and if a woman is not against it, they will also call her a grandmother. Kim reminded the granny that her friend actually flew with her, and she had to be in their temple for a long time. The woman remembered a friend and said that something would definitely come to the temple after she solves all her affairs. Then the woman went inside the temple to look at the statue of the great goddess, which her grandson served so correctly. The statue did not have a face, the idea of the goddess, because sometimes it has more meaning that we do not see. Since the faces of everyone who is considered close and expensive is completely different, the goddess conceived it as a way to take care of them. Suddenly, the granny had an acute desire to stay alone near the statue of the goddess and pray to her. Kim was only glad. Grandmother remembered that in childhood, her grandson did not show a special desire to go to church on Sundays and pray to any god. When the woman was left alone in the temple, she thanked the goddess, took care of her grandson, and returned him back. Also asked the goddess to help Film overcome all trials. The woman prayed so sincerely and for a long time, did not notice at all how her grandson entered the building. He overheard part of her prayer. The Archbishop was also extremely felt by the prayer of the grandmother and asked Kim to give a woman his blessing. Indeed, this must be done, because his grandmother deserves to get up part of the Reman's order and faithfully serve her. Therefore, the guy went to the woman, leaned toward her, and blessed her all her deeds and thoughts, passing on to her grandmother a part of his energy. After the blessing, the granny decided to walk through the territory of the temple and look at the wonderful garden, which the adherents of the goddess broke here. The woman also asked the Luna and Leo to go through the garden with her. She had many questions for these young people. The guy understood that now a woman would ask his friends a million questions, and all of them would concern him exclusively. Grandma left, told Kim that her friend would come to his visit now. She wants to talk, and this conversation will be useful to both of them. Kim had no idea who was the best friend of his granny, but she guessed that this woman was not at all simple. Already from afar, he felt the energy of mana. It was a rather clean and delicate source, but while the guy did not understand who he came from, they remembered the recent words of Donchik that his grandmother traveled a very important person for their country. So the girlfriend of his grandmother and the guest that the president was traveling to meet the airport is the same special. He knew that his beloved grandmother was hiding something important, and it happened. A woman of the older age entered the temple. She was called an oracle, and she was a famous prophetess. I saw the future. In addition, the woman was important awakened, and the president personally asked Kim Siva to take care of Madame Emma Miller. The woman went to the guy and greeted her, said that she was very pleased to meet Kim, and that the guy is very similar to his grandmother. She was short and very good-natured. You can't immediately say that this is a world-famous prophet. They still exchanged several compliments, but the woman said that she has a serious conversation for Kim. Stop talking about nonsense. The guy again remembered the Donchik. He once told him about Madame Emma and warned him that jokes were bad, and she did not meet people just like that. But Kim did not understand why the woman appeared in his temple, and what they should talk about so important. And in general, why this grandmother tells this to the left and right about him and his activities. He does not want more excess attention. All that he so far knew about Emma Miller is that she was awakened by the highest rank from America, but why did she appear in Korea? It seemed that this lady simply reads his thoughts because Emma said that she arrived in Korea at the request of her friend, President. And no, she now does not read his thoughts. She just thought that the guy was probably interested in knowing this, but he does not know how to ask. And Kimu was also interested in where his grandmother and seer could meet at all, who walks with a bunch of security and is friends with the presidents of different countries. The guy wanted to go as soon as possible to the essence of the conversation, so he decided to ask directly why he needed Mrs. Miller. Maybe she specially met his grandmother to make her a meeting with Kim Siva. But the woman replied that acquaintance with Madame Siva was absolutely accidental. She did not pursue any goals. It's just that now the system makes a reboot and sends him a new test, and it is here in order to help him cope with all this. Indeed, Kim had already guessed that very soon he could be sent to Japan so that he could help this country eliminate the demon. The woman explained that just like Kim is a representative of Riemann on Earth, so she is a representative of the system on Earth. But the woman warned that her abilities are not unlimited, and she spread only to those who are part of the system. That is why she turned to Kim, because he also sees the system and is awakened, so he will be able to restore order in Japan. She sees what is happening there now, and would like Kim to prevent unearthly creatures from destroying the coast of Japan. The goddess to whom he serves, and the system that Emma obeys here will work for one goal: defeat aliens from other dimensions. Kim asked if he met the expectation of a woman after she finally saw him. Can she trust him now? Emma nodded. She was impressed by what the guy was doing on Earth in the name of the goddess from Edom. He unites people around the faith. At first, the woman felt him. She wanted to find out more about his activity, but in the end, she stopped treating the guy hostilely and suspiciously. Of all the awakened she knew, but she knew many of them, Kim Siva seemed to her the most reliable option. To the question of Kim, Mrs. Miller returns to America after meeting with him. She replied that she would still want to travel along Korea. Kim only smiled politely and thought that this woman could easily unleash the war between Korea and America, if he really wanted to. When the seer said goodbye and headed for the exit, Kim thought about her grandmother, which connects Mrs. Kim with an awakened S-rank from America. Already being near the door, Emma Miller looked around and shouted that creatures from abroad were carrying continuous darkness for all peoples. Sveta, which radiates Siva and his goddess, should be enough so as not to allow the darkness to control the universe. In order not to confuse anything, the guy decided that it was time to turn to the omnipotent goddess. She should give him advice. When Kim returned home, his brother and sister reported that his grandmother visited them, but had already gone to her friend, who flew from America. The guy asked his sister. She would not want to spend time with her grandmother and her friend. They could take a walk together, and the sister could find out something about Emma. But the girl replied that this would look strange, because adults have a lot of boring topics to discuss why they had a child. And now Cian is going to remake his old jeans, so he goes into his room with a snowball and asks not to interfere with her. Kim asked Inva, who was also digging in his things, whether the one who was a grandmother who flew from her from the United States knows. Since Inva was not yet in the know, Kim said that the same friend was the awakened seer Emma Miller. Only recently they read about this woman in the magazine, and now Kim had already managed to meet her, and even showed her the temple of the goddess. Inva did not believe his brother, because the richest people ask for a saying about a meeting with this prophetess. But she refuses everyone, so why did not refuse Kim? But she came to him. The next news for Inva was that Kim met with President Korea and he asked him to fly to Japan on some working issues. But his brother only laughed. For some reason he did not believe a single word of Kim. The guy decided that his grace was slightly overheated in the sun. But the next minute, Inva read the news from the network that Kim Siva is going to Japan to help Yamato Orochi. And then the guy realized that his brother was not lying. He was flying to Japan as a representative of the department from Korea and will defend his national interests. Be that as it may, Inva decided to let this news on his channel, so the followers of the goddess will be able to be proud of their leader. In the morning, Kim headed to the department, where he agreed once again to see the president and discuss all the details of the operation. He planned to join the team already in Japan. The man was glad to hear such news and promised to fully help the team and do everything that depends on him. The team was already equipped. It was created to support Kim during the operation outside Korea. At the head of the team was the girl Kang Chi. In appearance, she seemed very fragile, but she was awakened and had an impressive track record. They flew to Japan the next morning. Kim asked for a separate zone on the plane so that no one was in the way to think. After watching the news, the guy realized that he is now in hearing. People are discussing his flight to Japan and the upcoming battle with Barber. The commander Donchik by truth and by crook also got permission to accompany Kim and was listed as part of the team. The rest of the representatives of the Korean team was in the next compartment. The members whispered among themselves. Everyone was also interested in the battle of Barber and Kim. Donchik told the guys that the Moon and Leo on arrival will conduct the main exercises with them, as well as the bracelets that heal the wounds. Kim saw that the man was slightly tense. He was worried about how the operation would pass, and also worried about Kim himself, because a lot depends on him. The guy did not understand why this Moon behaved so calmly. Her screams and a loud laughter were not heard. Maybe she was also worried. She was ready to train new followers for at least a day long, and all in order to get along with Kim in Japan. The plane was already landing, and Kim also caught himself thinking that he should do everything in the best possible way, because it was not for nothing that Riemann made him his dad in Eden. A girl entered the compartment and introduced herself. Her name was Kan Che, and she heads this operation. Before leaving, the girl decided to meet. She was also awakened, and the guy immediately felt strong energy emanating from the girl. The guy once again looked around the girl. In his soul, a feeling of some rivalry even arose, because Kan Che was not a timid dozen. It was evident that the boss also feels the power of the holy energy of Kim Siva, because she knew that he was the leader of the Holy Order. Then the girl was honored and thanked Kim for participating in an anti-terrorist operation on the banks of Japan. Kim thought that the whole set of positive qualities. This girl was also well educated. It was more than pleasant. This girl did everything in her power so that in the last 5 years, creatures from otherworldly worlds did not attack her land. It seemed to Kim that she was not behaving as a leader, but rather as a first-rate soldier, accustomed to comply with orders. As expected, the airport was a real crowd of journalists and reporters. Everyone wanted to see Kim. The team began to slowly move between crowds of people. There was a guard around, but even she could not do anything with annoying paparazzi. Donchik escaped forward and said that he had to check everything, because there is definitely a bunch of ill-wishers who want to harm Kim. He approached the Japanese representatives and introduced himself as the head of the Korean Department for Management of Abilities and would like to see his Japanese colleagues. A man came forward with a strange bandage on his head. In his face expression, he was not very happy about the guests from Korea. In Kim, fragments surfaced from the day when he coped with the gates of chaos near the Guro Hospital. Now something similar is happening. The guy began to enjoy this situation, and he was already thinking of using his new skills on these arrogant Japanese, which he held for heretics. The new skill that opened the system for him was a touch, but unusual, and using a sacred fire. But the highest mind played in favor of representatives of the Japanese department. One of his employees apologized for the cold reception. The guy introduced himself. His name was Ray Gyang, and he is the head of the Department of Emergency Situations. He also said that representatives of America, including Aiden Howard, have already arrived and are in a specially equipped camp. Already in the car, Ray apologized again, explained that the Japanese were not used to getting help from foreigners, and therefore they behaved slightly strangely. Those present in the car were still transferred by several phrases, then drove in silence, and everyone thought about his own. According to the conversation of Kan Che and Ray, the guy realized that these two have long been familiar. Moreover, their families are friends and very close to each other. Looking at them, Kim thought that he had missed something important, but what exactly he could not understand. These two behaved strangely. The girl in her soul hoped that Kim could resolve this terrible problem, and then she would ask him to take her and Ray to Korea. The car stopped at the school building. It turned out to be a camp. All the residents of the district were evacuated, and the building was empty. The manager explained that in a few minutes an official briefing would begin, and the Korean team needs to join the Americans. Kang-chae reported that she would not go to the meeting room, but will remain near the doors. Perhaps Kim-woo will be needed. She will be at the patch. Opening the door to the hall, the arrivals immediately realized that the atmosphere was very tense. They had been expected for a long time. Not wanting to immediately come into conflict, Siva smiled tightly and greeted the representatives of the American team sitting at the table. Kim's gaze immediately fell on a huge warrior sitting in the center of the table. This was no doubt and was famous throughout America, Aiden Howard. Neither the energy of mana or the energy of holiness came from him. There was just pure water physical strength. One of the employees said that the translator is now suitable, but Kim said that this is not necessary. He perfectly speaks English. Aiden Howard even got up from his chair. It seemed to him that Koreans were not able to learn any other language except his own, but Kim did not even have an accent. The guy said that thanks to his goddess, he can speak freely in any language and also understands anyone. The barbarian leaned directly to Kim's face and hissed that his goddess was too friendly, but this is for the time being. But Kim replied that Ryman is not always and far from everyone. Just now she wants to help him find a common language with someone else's team. Aiden Howard smiled maliciously. He did not believe in any gods, exclusively in his physical strength, and considered all the gods to be garbage.